Episode Nagi starts with Nagi being woken by the ringing of an alarm when he is deep in slumber. Rubbing his eyes and sitting up, Nagi surveys his room, then stands up and moves to his plant, Choki. With such prompt action, the spiky leaves poke his finger to wake him up as he says his good morning to them. Now, wide awake, he gets out of bed, retrieves his phone, and starts playing a game. As he enjoys the gameplay, he thinks about how much of an ordeal it has become to get up, but he still has to complete some of his everyday missions. Now it is time to go to school. His stomach rumbles. He is hungry but doesn't feel like eating. Drinking some water, he starts wondering why a human gets hungry. If they didn't, he would not have to eat, and if he didn't have to eat, he, therefore, wouldn't have to brush his teeth. Putting on his jacket, he laments that if it weren't for school, he could spend the whole day gaming. Life appears to be a weight on his shoulders. He says goodbye to his plant and exits the room, walking out onto the street to school. As he is strolling along, a car whizzes by and skids to a stop alongside him. A boy leans out of the car. It's Rio, a second-year student as well. Rio cheerfully tells Nagi to hop in, explaining that he came to pick him up. Nagi shrugs his shoulders at this and reminds Rio that he never asked him himself. Rio places a hand on Nagi's shoulder and reminds him of a promise to play soccer together. Nagi, slowly going back into his skull, hesitantly accepts the offer. Rio beams like a kid in candy and proclaims to him that his motto in life is to get everything he wants, proclaiming to Nagi that they are now officially partners. Then suddenly, a strange woman, Baya, who introduces herself as Rio's servant, bows and appeals for the service in whatever manner, leaving him speechless. In particular, he had to look at her long, witch-like nose. Sitting in the car, Nagi could not bring such a phenomenon to his mind. However, the mental suggestions are crossed by Rio as he asks him if he lives alone or not. Nagi explains he came to this prep school so that he could be given a good job and live a comfortable life in the future. Rio further presses, saying that he hears Nagi hates working and is effectively being driven out to fend for himself. Nagi nods in assent, explaining his ideal is to retire early and lead a slow-paced life of ease. Rio, saying maybe while it would take a guy working in some office until he's 100 years old to save enough for retirement, a stadium champion soccer player would earn billions of dollars a year. Nagi nods his head curiously, asking if that is indeed the case. Is that really right? Rio nods vigorously and starts humming a tune as he thinks of it. Nagi rolls his eyes and makes another face because, what a hassle, working with people, playing matches, even learning the rules. Rio is unmoved. He reassures him that everything will be well if he follows his lead. He raises his voice, excited, promising to win the World Cup together. Nagi, ever unwilling, concludes that it must be a tiring dream. Rio laughs again, saying from now on, Nagi will address him as boss. As they pull into school, Baya tells them that they arrived, and the minute they get out of the car, girls start swarming around Rio, whom they are also over the top excited to see in that early morning. One of them introduces herself and says she really had a great time at their study session the other day and wonders whether he's free for another one, but this time solely with her. But Rio, dismissing her, keeps his arm around Nagi, saying that he will be very busy playing soccer since we're going to tour the country and find a manager. The crowd is there staring at Nagi, confused, wondering who this new guy is and why Rio's so attached to him. Rio then tells Nagi that the first target is to win the nationals. Curious, Nagi asks Rio why he's so into soccer. Rio opens up and shares the story behind this dream of his. His family owns their own corporation, and his parents wish him to take over the company one day. He was given the best possible education and everything in life. Nagi, full of envy, comments that Rio must have had easy times having everything handed on a platter to him. But Rio sighs. That is why he resents all this and does not want to settle for a ready-made life. He wanted to carve his own path with his hands, and it was then that he discovered that he loved the World Cup. As Rio walks in his dream, Nagi silently tries to slip away unnoticed. Rio catches a glimpse of him and tells him to wait, but Nagi waves weakly goodbye at him, hoping to dissuade Rio from probing the matter any further. But Rio is already thinking of what he can say or do to encourage Nagi to continue involvement. Rio decides to investigate Nagi's life a bit, so he decides that his best bet is to ask others about Nagi. He goes to one boy and tells Rio that Nagi is called the 1,000 Years Netaro, since he slept through every class. A student quips that Nagi must be an odd one, and most likely spends all his time playing video games and probably has fewer friends than they do. One of the girls, however, whispered that she heard rumors that good things come when you are with him. Meanwhile, Rio keeps investigating Nagi, and also thanking the students for the insight. He confirms that Nagi is always alone, and with that information in hand, resolves to start watching him closely and initiate the next stage of his plan on how to bring Nagi into his dream. As the class starts, Nagi is sitting drowsily in his chair, fast asleep. Later, in the classroom, Ryo is sitting, watching Nagi. He knows that they don't share any other classes than this one, which is why he's got to investigate Nagi right here and now. He looks closely at Nagi, wondering if people like this could sleep all day long. He almost even suspected that Nagi was really dead. But then, in the most odd twist of all, Nagi suddenly stirs awake. Then the teacher calls on Nagi to answer a question. However, as he's been secretly sleeping and eating melon bread, he doesn't know the answer, so he just stands up a bit confused and instead asks the teacher if he's interested in some melon bread. The teacher is obviously unimpressed by this answer and tells Nagi that they should stand there for just a little longer as punishment before Nagi promptly disobediently sinks into the seat again. Ryo watches the scene, silently accusing him of sitting again, and decides that Nagi has neither any motivation in life nor common sense. His investigation is now over, and he only draws a puzzling conclusion. Nagi's moves are incomprehensible. Finally, with school well underway, Ryo comes over to Nagi and invites him to play some soccer. Nagi is astonished at Ryo's persistence and queries Ryo as to why he is being so persistent. With this said, Ryo is convinced that Nagi has some gift, as he remembers that the way Nagi handled his smartphone made him feel goosebumps. Confident that great things await Nagi, Ryo confidently declares that they will become the best soccer players in the world. For Ryo, this is destiny, and therefore should make Nagi proud that someone of his talent chose him. Nagi is irritated by Ryo's optimism and believes him to be a nuisance. He asks if it is because Ryo reads too much manga that he dreams too big. Ryo shrugs off the comment and continues to say without any shame that Nagi should go with him. Nagi refuses to go, asking if there is even a soccer club at their school. Ryo smiles knowingly, saying that such details have already been seen. He takes Nagi to the soccer club, where members truly warmly greet Ryo. Nagi is surprised by this. Ryo explains lightly that it's all about connections, and he made this happen by just using his network. One of the members boasts that if they are able to hold a nationwide tour, they are able to attend parties with idols. For one, in case they win, they can even go to Disneyland with an actress. Nagi now begins to realize that everything is because of the force of Ryo's corporation. Ryo calls the team on his way to them and tells them that they are presently top 8 in the regional qualifiers, but it's already near the end of their advance, and it's only important they should all try going for nationals with him and Nagi on board. The team responds with cheers of hope and determination. Suddenly, a club member rushes breathlessly into the room and excitedly declares that they have just received an application for a practice match. The team falls with the jaws dropped, asking who the challenger is. The member responds by saying that it is a famous team that regularly contests at the national level. This news will create waves of anxiety among the group, asking themselves how it comes that a school like Aomori Prefectural High School would come to challenge them. The answer, however, comes readily. It's all because of Ryo. With that revelation, the club members are mumbling over it when Baya, the servant of Ryo, enters the room to deliver a message from Ryo's father. The note declares that since Ryo is his son, it only makes sense that he is destined to win. It is framed as a present aimed at assisting Ryo in achieving his aim of becoming the soccer champion. Ryo reads the note and sucks in air hungrily, fist clenched in frustration. He realizes that his father is trying to play a trick on him, forcing him to the corner so that he will surrender. Ryo understands this gift as nothing but another attempt to control his destiny, only in order to make sure Ryo bends at the will of his father. Still, Ryo's resolve hardens. He knows the dream he has found in soccer and in the World Cup is the first treasure he's ever found alone, and he decides no one, not his father, will ever take that away from him. He says that he will make every effort to obtain it, but not only that, he is willing to bet everything he has on it. He takes Nagi by his shoulder and says that this is the debut match of their dreams, and with fiery eyes, he looks into Nagi's eyes as he asks Nagi to grant him his talent. Nagi is a bit taken off guard because he points out how Ryo grabbing his shoulder hurts, but for some reason he refuses to let go. Anyway, after that, we fast forward a bit as we go to the day of the practice match, where the players suddenly hear the door open up, and then right in there, a furious squad sent by Aomori Soccer Club came walking onto the pitch. One player, called Namioka Ryo, asked their coach why they were being forced to play against these weaklings, but he just told him that it was adult stuff and that last night was incredible. His assistant quickly notes that he definitely was bought off. Ryo is a bit angry that they are being forced to go along with the hobbies of the rich, But he still walks over to Ryo, determined as he tells him right to his face that he will shatter this naive rich kid's fantasies into tiny pieces in no time. And then out of nowhere he says, "Nice to meet you to Ryo." However, Ryo just tells them to shut up. He starts tying his hair back and says that they are the naive ones and calls them soccer meatheads. He continues and tells them not to talk about him at their insignificant caliber, which really gets them upset. But Ryo doesn't stop there, as he tells them that they still have no clue who the real genius is. After that, everyone from Aomori starts to laugh at Ryo. Ryo, while laughing, asks if Ryo is referring to himself, saying that it's funny hearing this greenhouse-bred kid speak with that spoon-fed self-confidence, and also saying that he has decided that he will crush Ryo with everything that he's got. Ryo just coldly tells him to try it, but also reminds him that the genius he was talking about wasn't Ryo himself, but that it's all of them. Ryo just chuckles as he says, whatever. After that, the referee tells everyone to get onto the practice field as the match is just about to start, which it does, as Aomori gets the kickoff. Ryo starts right away to try and break down their team, as he says that the opposing team's style has already been analyzed. Their basic tactic is to get the ball to their striker, Captain Namioka, and use his steel body, unlike any other high school students, in a power duel style to dominate the field, and because of that, they know that they can't stop him one-on-one, so they will instead make a triangle formation to cover his dribbling course. As Ryo sees this, he just laughs and says that Ryo's team plays using their numbers, and as he's trying to keep away another player from the ball, he says that Aomori isn't so naive and that they won't be torn down that easily. And he says that as he passes the ball over to his teammate, who traps it flawlessly, Ryo's team wasn't ready for this, and they start to panic as Aomori just keeps advancing with their passes, as Aomori has successfully broken their triangle strategy. The passes just keep on flooding them, and they say that they can't keep up with Aomori's press. Ryo just starts to laugh again, and tells everyone that they are all a bunch of nobodies, just like their sheltered school, and tells them that it was naive of them to think that they could beat them with just a single strategy. But just as the pass is heading back to Ryo, that's when Ryo sweeps in between them and steals away the ball. He looks Ryo straight into his eyes and says that it's going just as planned. Ryo can't believe it and is in shock, but Ryo continues and says that honestly, it'd be kind of a pain to get past Ryo alone and that it's easier to make use of others for that. Ryo, still in disbelief, wonders if this was what Ryo aimed for the entire time, saying that he assumed the strategy he taught his teammates would be read and then himself cut the pass that came to Ryo. Ryo then actually admits that Ryo is a better player than he gave him credit for and that he didn't believe Ryo to be such a great strategist. But after that, Ryo finally announces to everyone that it's their time to shine as he tells everyone to go. Ryo has the ball and thinks that if they switch up whenever he gets the ball, then both wings run forwards, spread out, and create a wide gap, which would leave the center wide open. And then with that space in the center, Ryo will use it and trade short distance passes to build up momentum with a low chance of losing the ball. The Aomori player screams that they are struggling and that they can't tell whatever the players will pass in or outside, and others are simply having trouble of catching up to the ball. Ryo can't believe this and asks what they are doing while calling them idiots and tells them to sandwich Ryo, which is exactly what they try to do. However, I don't know how Ryo manages to do this, but he just completely destroys both of them and even nutmegs. One of them, like this roulette turn, was so incredibly smooth. Ryo's plays leave the Aomori players in shock, especially Ryo, who says that Ryo's is much more than just a defender, as both his dribbles and his game making are first class, which makes Ryo wonder if Ryo is a genius or something. However, he can't let that happen as he tells everyone that they need to get him even if they die in the process. And then we see 3 players of Aomori going to try and stop Ryo, which will be really tough to get behind. However, before we see what actually happens, we get into a quick flashback. Ryo and Nagi have just finished their training, but Ryo tells Nagi to listen carefully, as he has one more rule to tell him. He looks at Nagi and tells him that he needs to be somewhere he can score goals from and wait for Ryo to pass there. Nagi is a bit confused and asks if football isn't a game you play with 11 players, and asks if it's really okay for them to do something so self-centered. Ryo cuts him off before he can finish and ensures him that it's fine, as he is going to prove to the world that Nagi is the best there is, so all Nagi has to do is play football while trusting only in Ryo. And then we get back into the game, where we see Ryo getting almost shut down by 3 players, but we also see Nagi on the right side as he sprints up. They make eye contact, and Ryo calls him a good boy, while Nagi just calls him boss. Anyway, with Nagi there, Ryo finds an opening between 2 of the guys to send away an amazing crossover to Nagi. The precision was perfect, and it was like Ryo was threading a needle. Anyway, Ryo looks at Nagi with excitement as he tells him to go genius. However, just then, someone else enters the picture again, and it's none other than Ryo, who bashes into Nagi and tells him that he won't let it happen. Ryo looks furious as he admits that they were actually pretty good at getting past their defense. However, he still has his amazing striker sense himself, and with that knowledge, he puts his hand on Nagi's back and kind of turns him around. He laughs and says that Nagi can't make a decent shot without the right positioning, especially if he's even facing away from the goal. He continues and says that it's such a waste of a pass from the genius Ryo, and that it's too bad that Nagi couldn't keep up with his trained body. But inside Nagi's mind, he is confused as he doesn't understand what Ryo is talking about, as he jumps up and with his left leg traps the ball right in the air, basically making a scorpion trap, which is just wild. But if you thought that it was everything, then you are in for a treat as he takes his other foot and leaps with it into the air to the spin around to meet the ball, and making an insane roulette volley, which for your very first game is out of this world. Anyway, Nagi's shot goes into the goal with no questions asked, as the goalkeeper is unable to do anything against it, and with that, they score the first goal, and everyone from their team storms into the pitch to celebrate with the two geniuses. Ryo jumps up on Nagi's shoulders as someone calls them a pair of abnormal monsters. Anyway, we then get this very cute panel with Ryo having a big smile while scratching Nagi's hair. However, if we look a bit closer in between some of the players, we can see a familiar face, and it's none other than Taeri Anri, who's making a phone call. She says that she came to observe the match for Aomori, but on the opposing team, she found an extraordinary pair. She says that one of them has the dexterity to go above the average in every role, which of course is Ryo, and then one with superhuman trapping ability and an incredible shot, which of course was Nagi. She then tells Ego that she really wants to invite these two to the Blue Lock project, as the text then says that this is the genius Nagi Seishiro and his story, which he does not know about yet, of earning himself an ego. And then we see the last panel of Ryo and Nagi, where Ryo with big glowing eyes tells Nagi that they will become the top of the world together, but Nagi secretly just thinks to himself how much of a pain this is, the usual Nagi, you know. The monster duo advances at an astonishing speed, their talents making waves and capturing the attention of the massive Blue Lock project. They single-handedly dominate their matches and rapidly gain popularity. One girl mentions that Ryo has been spending a lot of time with that guy lately, to which the other girl agrees, identifying him as Nagi. A third girl explains that they began playing soccer together, which could be the reason behind their closeness. She admits she never expected Ryo, who seems capable of excelling at anything, to become so obsessed with soccer, and reflects that this is what makes it appealing to him. When asked if she's referring to Nagi, she clarifies that she is, in fact, talking about soccer itself. Meanwhile, Ryo brings Nagi the shoes he had mentioned wanting, and while playing his game, Nagi thanks him absent-mindedly. Ryo urges him to take a proper look at the shoes, to which Nagi nonchalantly replies that he is going to die in the game. Ryo, switching gears, asks if Nagi wants any snacks, but Nagi declines, claiming that digestion is too much of a hassle. The two then go cycling together, with Nagi enjoying the sensation of the wind. When they later run laps, Ryo encourages him to do one more, but Nagi collapses, saying he's too exhausted to even walk. Dramatically, he claims that his legs are broken, his cells are dead, and his heart has stopped. Ryo chuckles, calling him a zombie, to which Nagi responds that he is Nagi of the dead. Annoyed but amused, Ryo lifts Nagi onto his back, complimenting him on his hard work for the day. Nagi remarks that Ryo is weird, to which Ryo replies that he doesn't need to be told that. Nagi, somewhat affectionately, admits that hanging out with Ryo doesn't bother him, which makes Ryo laugh. He says he can tolerate Nagi well enough, and that being together is fun, asking Nagi if he's also starting to enjoy himself. Nagi simply replies that he doesn't want to play soccer, but that being with Ryo isn't a hassle, so he doesn't mind. Ryo pushes for more, telling him he should at least say that he's having fun. Nagi, undeterred, insists that he's tired, and it's time to go home. Ryo acknowledges this, but still urges him to do one more lap, to which Nagi protests that he's already done more than usual today, calling it earnest. Ryo agrees, and then confesses that his father has declared he won't acknowledge him unless he leads Japan's national team. That's why, Ryo says, both participating in and winning the nationals are merely stepping stones. He then kicks the ball straight into the goal, declaring that he'll continue winning and ultimately represent Japan in the shortest time possible. Turning to Nagi, he asks him to join him on this journey until they win the World Cup. Nagi, in response, merely states that he's hungry. At that moment, Baya returns, praising Ryo and asking if she could have a word with him. Ryo, curious, asks what it's about. Baya reveals that she has a letter from the football union. Stunned, Ryo listens as Baya explains that there is a chance his father might have thrown the letter away, so she hid it and brought it to him instead. Grateful, Ryo thanks her. Nagi also shows Ryo a letter similar to the one he received, though he admits he hasn't opened it yet. Shocked, Ryo suggests they open their letters together. Upon reading his, Ryo discovers he has been selected for a special training program, leaving him amazed. Nagi, meanwhile, notes that his letter says the same, though it lacks details. Ryo wonders if it's an unexpected call for a Japanese training camp, or perhaps a U-18 delegation summons. Nagi, uninterested, complains that he hates training camps and only wants to play games and take naps. Frustrated, Ryo asks what Nagi is trying to say, insisting that this is a significant opportunity. If they can make an impact there, it would be the fastest route to joining the national team. Nagi, unfazed, asks Baya if she can intervene, but she laughs, saying she cannot. Baya reveals that she has cared for Nagi since he was born and can only respect his will. Nagi decides to leave for the moment and asks Baya for a favor. She inquires what it might be, and Nagi explains that he has a cactus named Choki. If he doesn't return for a while, he asks that she water it for him. Baya agrees to his simple request, understanding its importance. Ryo asks Nagi if he's really keeping a plant, to which Nagi responds that he likes having a companion in his room. He explains that he asked the shopkeeper for the least troublesome plant, and that's how he ended up with Choki. Ryo laughs, but Nagi calmly advises Baya not to overwater the plant, saying she only needs to water it once every 2 to 3 weeks, or essentially, she can just leave it alone. Baya nods, repeating his instructions, then adds with a hint of curiosity, asking if the same could be said about him. Confused, Nagi asks what she means. Baya brushes it off, telling him it's nothing, and he should forget about it, before requesting that Nagi take good care of Ryo for her. Nagi, nonchalant, replies that he'll do whatever works. Ryo then urges him to hurry. They arrive at the location, and Nagi asks if they are job hunting. Ryo scoffs, telling him that they aren't, though he admits that he has no idea what kind of people are inside. With excitement, he adds that he can't wait to kick their asses. Nagi, less enthused, asks what happens if someone better than him is inside, and teaming up with that person would be more advantageous. Ryo assures him that he wouldn't be that heartless, but Nagi simply says that he wouldn't mind if Ryo did. As Ryo opens the door, they are greeted by a room full of people. Ryo is amazed by the sheer number, while Nagi muses that it looks like they're trying to build an army. Ryo recognizes some familiar faces and points them out, explaining that they are from the same generation as many famous high schoolers, though Nagi, uninterested, continues to play his game. Shocked, Ryo tells Nagi to stand up, reminding him that they have a lot of rivals to defeat. At that moment, another familiar face appears, Kira Ryosuke. Ryo is stunned, as Kira is rumored to be part of the Japanese U-18 team. Nagi, however, feels underwhelmed by Japan's so-called jewel, and thinks that Kira is just an average-looking short guy. The person Nagi notices is Isagi Yoichi, the dark-haired man who is the main character of Blue Lock, but he dismisses him just as quickly. Ryo corrects Nagi, pointing out that Kira is the tall, handsome one, not the dark-haired guy, but Nagi remains indifferent. Suddenly, a microphone crackles to life, and the host, Igo Jinpachi, introduces himself. He declares that, based on his judgment and biases, the 300 players in the room are the best strikers under 18 in Japan. Igo reveals that he has been hired to make Japan a World Cup champion. Ryo is taken aback by the boldness of his words. Igo explains that the only thing Japan needs to become the best in the world is the birth of a revolutionary striker, and with these 300 players, he intends to conduct an experiment to create the world's best striker. He then introduces them to the facility built for this very purpose, called Blue Lock. Ryo is left in shock as Igo continues, explaining that from today onward, all of them will be living at Blue Lock, undergoing his special training. They will not be allowed to return home, marking the end of their previous soccer careers. Igo promises that the one who survives and outlasts the other 299 players will become the best striker in the world. With that, he concludes his speech, stating that this is all he has to say. Fired up, Ryo enthusiastically tells Nagi that they will become the best in the world. However, Nagi, uninterested, declares that he's going home. He points out that being 1 out of 300 is too tough, and he lacks the motivation, calling the task impossible for him. Ryo, taken aback, tells him to wait and argues that the two of them can do it. They should at least participate for now. Nagi, confused, reminds him that Ego said they'd be fighting until only one remains, meaning that one day he and Ryo will become enemies. Ryo is shaken by Nagi's words. Ego then speaks again, explaining that if they cannot become the world's top egoist, they cannot become the best striker. He poses one final question, asking them to imagine that they are in the final match of the World Cup with 80,000 spectators watching. The score is 0-0, and it's overtime in the second half. During the very last play, they receive a pass from a teammate. Nagi envisions the scenario as Ego continues, explaining that it's a 1v1 with the goalkeeper, and 6 meters to their right, a teammate is positioned for an almost certain goal if passed to. In such a moment, with all of Japan's expectations resting on them, Ego challenges them to shoot without hesitation. Only those crazy enough to make that selfish decision will be able to proceed. As he finishes speaking, the door behind him opens, and everyone looks amazed as there's smoke coming from the doors. Ego touches his glasses and says that he will say it once more. Soccer is a sport that exists for strikers, and for them all to think of everyone else on the field besides them as their supporting actors. He asks them to discard their common sense, as on the field they are the leading actors. His voice gets more and more intense as he tells them all to take pleasure in their own goals above all else, and for them to live only for that moment, as that's truly what being a striker is about. And after Ego said that Isagi Yoichi was the first one to start sprinting towards the goal, Nagi is in shock when he sees Isagi, whose eyes look hungrier than ever as he runs. Isagi's running creates a chemical reaction that makes everyone start to sprint for the door. Ego starts to smile as he is still standing right by the door and has floods of people running past him. After a while, everyone has entered, or everyone except 2, and those are Ryo and Nagi. Ego asks them what the matter is, and asks them if they aren't coming. They are quiet for a while before Ryo says that they are going, but before he can finish his sentence, Nagi cuts him off and says that he isn't going, as it sounds like a pain. He continues and says that Blue Lock really isn't for him, and that he would probably get bored and want to leave right away. Ryo is shocked as he hears this, but then Ego cuts in as he asks Nagi if he was bored by his explanation earlier. Nagi, with a furious and insane aura, says that he is, as after all, it was easy for him to achieve the winning goal of the World Cup. This sudden ego of Nagi shocks Ryo, as Nagi's eyes are legit glowing with excitement. Ego is quiet for a while before he says that Nagi won't make it. Nagi is confused, but Ego says that Nagi still doesn't understand his own ego. Ego continues and says that there are plenty of self-proclaimed geniuses like Nagi. They all grow up without a fight, and because of that, Ego turns away and says that he isn't interested in self-conscious, overgrown bastards who just want to live without getting hurt, and he tells Nagi to go and live in comfort while he slowly rots away. Nagi just says fine and is about to leave, but that's when Ryo starts to go at it. He screams at Ego that he's got to be kidding and says that Nagi isn't like any of those geniuses out there. He screams again that the 2 of them can make it. Ego catches Ryo's words and asks him what he means with the 2 of them, as there can't be 2 best in the world. Then suddenly, Ryo grabs Nagi's shirt and pulls him close as he tells Ego that he will make Nagi the best striker in the world and declares that it's his ego. Nagi asks him to wait and that he doesn't want to, but Ryo just tells him to shut up and to believe in Ryo. He pulls Nagi romantically close as he tells him that he will make Nagi's life more enthralling than any nap or game. He won't let Nagi feel bored ever. Nagi is still a bit hesitant, but finally says fine. However, he asks Ryo to promise him to stay with Nagi right until the end. Ryo asks if that's Nagi's ego, but he also says that he promises. With that, both of them walk inside Blue Lock, and as the door closes behind them, Ego sits down on the stairs and says that it's time to start the place where football is the hottest in the world. As they all entered the room, Henri welcomed them and informed the group that from that moment on, she would be collecting their phones and wallets. When she reached for Nagi's phone, he hesitated, clearly not ready to part with it. Ryo, noticing this, advised Nagi to give it up, and after a brief pause, Nagi reluctantly complied. Once Henri had taken his phone, Nagi turned to Ryo and asked him what number he had received on the bodysuit given by Henri. Ryo looked down at his shirt, examining the number printed on it, and stated that he had been given the number 250. He added that it seemed like they were supposed to change into the suits in their specific rooms. They made their way down the long corridor. Nagi glanced around, noting how expansive and complex the space seemed. He remarked that the place was massive, resembling a maze, and confessed that it reminded him of the Squid Game. As they walked further, they eventually found room V and entered. Ryo was slightly taken aback when Nagi reiterated that the setup reminded him of Squid Game, to which Ryo agreed. Their conversation was interrupted when a guy approached them with great enthusiasm. He loudly declared that they were the genius combo from a previous game and that it was fate they were together again. The guy ground his teeth in frustration, explaining that his team had lost because they underestimated Nagi and Ryo. He stated that today would be the day they determined who was truly stronger. Nagi, looking puzzled, asked Ryo if he knew who the guy was, to which Ryo casually replied that he had no idea and didn't remember him. This caused the guy to become visibly angry. He yelled at them, insisting that he was the ace of a powerhouse school they had miraculously defeated and that they should make sure to remember him. Nagi, still appearing confused, muttered something about a muddy yucca, which only served to further irritate the guy. Ryo, unfazed by the outburst, greeted the guy and then scanned the room, commenting that it looked like they had split up all 300 strikers into various rooms, which he found a bit confusing. His attention was soon drawn to another guy struggling with his clothing. Ryo pointed out that this guy seemed to be stuck in his shirt. The guy was frantically trying to free himself and shouted for help, complaining that his shirt was defective because it didn't have a hole in his head and he feared he might suffocate. Without hesitation, both Ryo and Nagi rushed to his aid. Ryo helped the guy remove the shirt, while Nagi went a step further and pulled off his pants. After being freed, the guy stood there awkwardly, and Ryo pointed out the obvious, that he had been wearing his pants as a shirt. Nagi agreed, noting that the guy had also been wearing his shirt as pants. The guy looked down at his clothes, finally realizing the mix-up, and sheepishly admitted that he knew it all along. Trying to brush it off, he claimed that it was a good brush-up for his release, though it was clear he was trying to sound more confident than he felt. Ryo, amused by the situation, laughed and teased the guy for trying to use English words but failing miserably. He pointed out that the guy's attempt at speaking English was all over the place. Nagi always bluntly chimed in by calling the guy an idiot, which caused the boy to protest, claiming he wasn't an idiot but rather naturally funny. Another person in the room, equally confused, asked what the guy was even talking about. At that moment, suddenly the TV screen in the room flickered on, immediately grabbing everyone's attention. Igo's face appeared on the screen, his cold, authoritative voice filling the room. He asked if they were all dressed, drawing their focus to him. Igo went on to explain that the people in the room with them were not only their roommates, but also their rivals, meant to push each other to greater heights. He then informed them that he had personally assessed their abilities and ranked them accordingly. Nagi, upon seeing his rank, was shocked at how low it was, while Ryo, less concerned about his own rank, thought about who might have received the highest ranking. Igo continued, explaining that the numbers on their uniforms represented their current ranks. He added that these rankings would change daily, fluctuating based on their performance in both training and games. Igo also warned them that only those who finished in the top 5 would automatically qualify for the upcoming tournament, which would take place in 6 months, the U20 World Cup. He stressed the importance of the tournament, as it would determine who would represent Japan as forwards. His warning was stern and clear, as those who failed at Blue Lock would lose their chance to ever represent Japan. The key to succeeding in this process, he emphasized, was their ego. After a brief pause, Igo announced that they would now begin a small entrance test to measure their aptitude. He then declared that it was time for a game of tag, causing a ripple of confusion and curiosity to spread through the room. Igo explained the rules. The time limit was set at 136 seconds, and whoever was it at the end of that time would be sent home. He further clarified that if they were hit with the ball, they would become it, and whoever was it when the time ran out would lose. Igo also added that they were not allowed to use their hands during the game. As he finished explaining the rules, the door to the room opened and a football rolled inside. The countdown began, and without hesitation, everyone scrambled into position, ready for the challenge ahead. Igo stated that even professional players use tag as part of their warm-up, but this was no ordinary warm-up. He called it an egotism test, something he had devised to determine who truly had the essence of a striker. The players were told to prepare themselves for battle. Meanwhile, in the control room, Igo explained that this wasn't just any game of tag. The clock showed the countdown, and the boys were in shock. They couldn't understand what was happening. To them, the idea of deciding their future through a game of tag seemed insane. They thought the whole thing was absurd, and even Nagi agreed with them. However, Ryo cringed, saying that this was the best opportunity they could ever have. He then pushed his hair back, reminding them that if they managed to make it into the top 5, they would automatically be on the U20 national team. This was the chance of a lifetime. Nagi, not missing the moment, told him that this was great, teasing Ryo about entering his protagonist mode. Suddenly, a guy ran toward them, claiming that the two of them would lose to him and be sent home. All the players dodged away from the football. The boy shouted, declaring that he would focus only on Rio and Nagi, planning to send one of them home and then crush the other half of the genius combo. As the boy closed in, Rio laughed while running, daring the boy to try if he could. The boy shot the football directly at Nagi's face, but Nagi dodged it effortlessly. While dodging, Nagi observed the room and noticed that it looked familiar. It had the same dimensions as a penalty area. At first, the other guys seemed confused, but they soon agreed, realizing that the limited time of 136 seconds was a clue. Nagi thought about how, in a 90-minute match, a player typically touches the ball for only about 136 seconds, meaning that any striker who couldn't make an impact within that time wasn't cut out for the job. The other guys were surprised, as they hadn't noticed this detail before, and they marveled at how Rio and Nagi had figured it all out. Rio turned to Nagi, telling him they would outlast the others. Nagi half-jokingly asked if losing on purpose was an option, to which Rio laughed, telling him that it would actually be easier to win against this guy. Nagi, smirking, casually agreed, deciding that in that case, he would just win. The boy, now enraged, charged at them with full force, declaring that they were dead. Nagi, seeing the boy's aggression, suggested he should target someone else, but Rio couldn't help laughing, telling the boy that if he kept focusing on them, he was only going to self-destruct. The boy ignored them, but then another guy caught everyone's attention with an explosive burst of speed, leaving both Nagi and Rio in shock. Nagi asked Zantetsu what he was doing, but the guy only responded with a cryptic remark that things were bad for them as he was going to be the one who won. He addressed the audience, stating that if he could steal the ball, he could win since the game would stop when someone else became it. Both Nagi and Rio were taken aback by his logic. The guy then waved at the monitor, calling out to Ego, asking if he could see him. The other guy, furious, demanded that he give the ball back, reminding everyone that the person who was it at the end of the game would lose. Zantetsu just laughed at him, adjusting his glasses as if everything was under control. He confirmed with the boy that the player who was it had to hit another player with the ball to make them it, and smugly remarked that this was his type of tag. Rio burst out laughing, praising the guy for being an absolute fool. He commented that the guy was a natural-born idiot, and Nagi couldn't help but agree, adding that the way he tried to sound smart while using complicated words only made him look and talk like a fool. The other players chimed in, all calling him an idiot. Zantetsu, visibly annoyed by the taunting, ran at them, shooting the football while angrily shouting that only idiots called other people idiots. As he targeted them, Rio told Nagi to start running in a zigzag pattern, suggesting that it would make it harder for their opponent to chase them. Everyone began dodging and avoiding Zantetsu as best they could, and Rio started feeling the pressure. Zantetsu was surprisingly good at changing directions even while dribbling, and his unpredictability made things tense for Rio. Zantetsu shot the ball. Rio was startled, shocked by how the ball curved wickedly. Zantetsu then revealed that he hadn't even been aiming at Rio in the first place, instead targeting Nagi. When Nagi stood up again, Zantetsu complimented him, when Nagi mentioned that it was a drag to deal with him. He asked Rio if everyone was fair game. The Namioka, watching the chaos unfold, said that the game was finally getting serious as the timer ticked down. With only a few seconds left, Ego's voice echoed in the room, asking them what they were going to do. He called on the self-proclaimed geniuses to show their true egos. Namioka shouts that only 40 seconds are left. He mocks Nagi, daring him to bring it on. Nagi, with a slight tap, pushes the ball back with his foot, leaving everyone shocked and confused. He then sits down, leaning against the wardrobe, and casually asks Rio if it can be anyone. Mentioning that he's going to do nothing, Nagi adds that he'll just let the time run out, lose, and go home. Everyone is shocked by his words, asking him what's wrong and stating that he has no motivation. Rio, angry, yells at Nagi, calling him a bastard and demanding that he fight. Rio declares that he won't allow Nagi to lose like that. Nagi, unfazed, replies that it's a drag since this is just the first stage, which means it's only going to get harder from here. So he decides to pass. Nagi questions why he should bother doing something so tiresome, calling it stupid and boring, so he quits. Rio then tells him to shut up, rolling the ball away from Nagi and admitting that he really is a pain. Nagi smirks and says that he knew Rio was going to say that, leaving the rest to him. Everyone freaks out as Rio starts running toward them. Rio thinks that he only has 20 seconds left and can't afford to waste time, so anyone will do. The other boys begin forming a group, and one of them shouts for them to disperse. Rio's only mission is to hit one person and survive. He makes his final move, launching the ball, but everyone dodges the attack. They laugh, saying he's panicking because he missed the shot. Ryo, undeterred, tells them to shut up, explaining that it's all part of his plan. He ricochets the ball off the wall, gathers them into one group, traps them in a corner, and slams it again. This time, the ball hits one of the guys square on the head. Ryo clenches his teeth, commenting that the guy in front of him is the idiot who fell first. It's Zantetsu. Nagi tells Ryo that it was expected of him, and Ryo laughs. But Zantetsu stands up, noting that there are still 12 seconds left. He starts running, calling them all idiots. Panic sets in, and someone shouts that only 10 seconds remain. They all freak out, thinking one of them will be eliminated. They run for their lives. The glasses guy makes a fake shot, and Ryo can't figure him out. He hasn't shot yet, so what's he planning? He yells that he could just hit someone at random. As the ball heads toward Ryo, he freaks out, thinking he's going to lose. But at the last moment, Nagi steps in and kicks the ball with his leg, telling Ryo that if he gets eliminated, it'll be a problem for him too. At the very last second, Nagi shoots the ball, telling Ryo that they'll continue playing together. It looks like it's headed for Zantetsu, but he dodges in the last second, and the ball instead hits Ryo, which ends up knocking him down. The clock hits the limit. Nagi remarks that it looks like he won't be going home just yet, while Ryo gets eliminated. Everyone is stunned by the two's crazy strategies. As Zantetsu stands up, he insists he's not an idiot. Ryo then jumps onto Nagi's shoulders, cheering and teasing him, asking if Nagi had been trying to lose on purpose. Nagi smirks and asks how Ryo figured it out, explaining that if the glasses guy had dodged, Nagi would have saved Ryo and gotten himself sent home all in one move. Ryo clenches his teeth, telling Nagi that he can't afford to let his guard down around someone as lazy as him. Suddenly, Onri appears on the screen. She calls it a high-level game and compliments Nagi, Ryo, and Zantetsu. Ego, however, interrupts her, asking why she's praising 3 players when only one can become the world's #1 striker. He reminds her that the Blue Lock experiment is designed to create that very thing, the world's best striker. Onri, taken aback, apologizes for her mistake. Ego brushes it off and tells her that this is only the beginning. Today was just the entrance exam, and the true battle for survival starts now. He orders the Blue Lock players to clash and sharpen each other as they fight to survive this hellish environment. Ego explains that through these intense battles, they will forge an ego, the likes of which the world has never seen. He promises that from this environment, they will create players capable of bringing forth an egoist who will devour the world. As the rules appeared, Zantetsu remarked that he understood the objective of the first selection: score 10 goals and trade points using the bonus system. He briefly entertained the idea of using a one-day pass to escape, but Ryo quickly dismissed this, telling him he was completely mistaken. Meanwhile, Nagi expressed boredom, asking Ryo if there were any board games, or even a deck of cards to pass the time. His disinterest was evident, but Ryo reminded him that this was just the first selection, suggesting that tougher challenges awaited them. If Ego's plan was to create the world's best striker, they would all inevitably become rivals. But for now, their priority was to survive and advance. Around them, Team Vi members were preparing their beds, readying themselves for the competition. Ryo, seeking to build a team around his playmaking abilities, addressed the group, asking their thoughts on his strategy. One member noted that since they were Team V, stronger teams surely lay ahead. Ryo, relishing the challenge, smirked, noting that this only made things more exciting for him. In contrast, Nagi sat dejectedly, thinking about how he just wanted to lose quickly and return home to play video games. Zantetsu, still enthusiastic, commented that their opponents seemed like they would be a worthy challenge, but the others quickly dismissed his comment, with Ryo even calling him an idiot. Their conversation was interrupted by Ego, who addressed the team to announce that Team X and Team Z had just kicked off their match, and soon it would be time for Team Phi to face Team Y. Ego stressed that the first selection would determine their fates as strikers. He asked them to consider whether they would prioritize personal goals or the team's success, hinting that this selection process was designed to rebuild their soccer abilities from the ground up. As they prepared for the match, Ryo told Nagi to get ready, but Nagi, still unmotivated, suggested that he play goalkeeper instead. Ryo, growing frustrated, told him to stop being lazy and focus on scoring goals. Nagi, indifferent, pondered how to slack off during the game. Once the game started, Ryo took control of the ball, determined to demonstrate his strength. He quickly analyzed Team Y's strategy, confident in his ability to exploit their weaknesses. However, before he could act, one of his own teammates suddenly charged forward, shoving him aside. Ryo, taken aback, questioned the players' actions as they were on the same team. The teammate, smirking, explained that the top scorer would survive regardless of the team's victory. He had no interest in the team's success and was focused solely on proving himself as the strongest striker. Another player soon joined the fray, asserting that he too was determined to be the best. They began competing fiercely, paying no attention to the team's overall performance. Rio, initially shocked, soon realized the reasoning behind Ego's second rule for the first selection. The rule was designed to push each player to focus selfishly on their own goals, forcing them to compete against one another in a test of individual strength. Teamwork was cast aside as their egos clashed, each player desperate to outshine the others. Rio marveled at Ego's twisted approach, recognizing the brilliance behind it. He couldn't help but smile, thinking to himself that while it was a brutal setup, it was going to be a fascinating and intense challenge. Ego had successfully made the players forget about teamwork and pollution, instead pitting them against each other to test who among them was the strongest individually. Rio couldn't help but smile, realizing just how twisted this approach was. He never thought Blue Lock would be this much fun, with everyone fighting each other. As the game progressed, a player from Team Y named Nico took control of the ball. He expressed his disdain for the rough play, quickly assessing the situation. Rio realized that Nico had deliberately positioned himself away from the crowd to capitalize on loose balls. However, Rio was still able to come in and sweep away the ball from Nico. However, Zantetsu then intervened, stealing the ball away from Rio and asking if he would still call him that. Rio was shocked by Zantetsu's speed. Zantetsu, confident, declared that he wasn't foolish and aimed the ball toward the goal. The goalkeeper made an effort to stop it but failed, allowing Team 5 to score their first point. Team Y was thrown into chaos, panicking and fighting among themselves as Zantetsu basked in his success. Rio, feeling a surge of anger, clenched his fists and confronted Zantetsu, questioning who he thought he was messing with. Zantetsu taunted him, and when Rio urged him to keep talking, he remarked that he was like a moth flying through the air. While Zantetsu and Rio were arguing, Nagi went over to the goalkeeper and asked him to switch places as he wanted to chill. But as they resumed their positions, both teams began fighting among themselves, each player determined to score. Rio realized that this chaos was inevitable and decided that instead of trying to stop it, he would take advantage of the scrum. He prepared to break past everyone and score for himself. Just then, Nico approached Rio, acknowledging his impressive balance of physical and technical ability, but pushing him aside while calling him a goody-goody. Rio countered, insisting that the other player knew nothing about him. As they grappled, Zantetsu interrupted them again, apologizing for the disturbance. Nico confirmed that Zantetsu used the right words, but reminded him he was in their way. As they clashed, Rio seized the opportunity and managed to score, shouting that he was a super elite and telling the others to remember that. He taunted them as lowly peasants. Zantetsu sat bewildered, unable to grasp Rio's words, stating he would need to Google them later. Meanwhile, Nico observed the speed of the players, realizing that Rio and Zantetsu were on a different level entirely, representing the caliber of egoist strikers. Rio continued to mock Zantetsu for claiming to be the strongest, but Zantetsu ignored him, still confused by Rio's vocabulary. Nico felt the pressure building as he realized his usual strategies were ineffective against these two. He acknowledged that this was what ego meant when he spoke of players capable of creating something from nothing. Faced with the impossibility of scoring against Rio and Zantetsu, he decided to focus on stopping them, using his eyes and brain to crush their momentum. Before he could act, however, Team V scored again. Rio celebrated loudly, thrilled to have scored a hat-trick, and asked Zantetsu if he was satisfied yet. Zantetsu reminded him the game wasn't over and there was still unfinished business. Frustrated, Rio told him to leave him alone since he had no time to waste, wanting to team up with Nagi instead. He noticed Nagi slacking off, lounging on the goal net, and asked when he had become a goalkeeper. Nagi, enjoying his rest, claimed they had already won and congratulated Rio. Rio sighed, realizing that if he was the only one scoring, there was no point in their efforts. Even if they advanced to the next stage, there was a good chance Nagi would be eliminated if he didn't improve and prove his worth. Determined to motivate him, Rio had an idea and asked Nagi if he wanted his phone back. Nagi eagerly replied that he did, eager to play games. Rio proposed a deal. If Nagi could score 3 goals, he could use those goals to get his phone back. Nagi agreed but suggested they trade his 3 goals for the phone. Rio angrily retorted that he wouldn't do that and insisted Nagi needed to earn it himself, questioning his ego. Nagi found the whole concept of ego annoying but reiterated his desire to play video games. He then asked Ryo if he could slack off after scoring the 3 goals, to which Ryo begrudgingly agreed. With that, both players prepared themselves to chase the ball. Meanwhile, the opposing team was preparing their next move, with one player calling his teammates to position themselves, declaring that they were total noobs. They aimed to execute a perfect attack through coordinated passing. Okawa, one of the players, announced that he would confront them head-on. As he charged toward Ryo, however, he was unable to do anything against Ryo. Ryo sees Nagi up on the field and says that he is fine with doing all of the groundwork and helping change Nagi's 0 into a 1. He claimed that this was how they would become the best players in the world. Nagi focused intently on scoring, determined to complete his mission. Nico realized he couldn't let Nagi score and vowed to catch up. But Nagi, immersed in thoughts of video games and his 3-goal target, executed a flawless bicycle kick. The crowd gasped in awe at his skill, labeling him as the friggin' cheat code. As he fell to the ground, Ryo cheered for him, calling him an ultra genius, and helped him up, reminding him they only had 2 goals left to score. Nagi requested a moment to rest, but Ryo wouldn't allow it. On the other side, Nico watched in disbelief as he felt hopeless against them. As the game continues, Team Vi leads with a score of 7, while Team Y remains at 0. Nagi is continuously making goals, astonishing everyone, including Henri, who watches in awe as he effortlessly scores 3 goals in just 10 minutes. His sense of finding the net seems to operate at a genius level. Observing this, Ego instructs Henri to take note of Nagi's accomplishments, explaining that for geniuses, it's often necessary to dangle the right bait to unlock their full potential. By taking advantage of the goal bonus system, Nagi quickly redeems his 3 goals to regain access to his phone. Back in his room, he becomes absorbed in his video games, which he finds endlessly enjoyable and entertaining. Meanwhile, Ryo is growing increasingly frustrated as he lies on the uncomfortable futon provided to them. He complains that if bed quality were rated like goods, these futons would receive an F-tier rating, fitting more corpses than living people. Feeling the futon's discomfort, Ryo calls out to Nagi and suggests that, since Nagi helped him get his phone back, perhaps he could help him secure the high-quality bed bonus next. Still preoccupied with his phone, Nagi dismisses the idea as a hassle, saying it would be much easier for Ryo just to ask Baya to help. Ryo points out that she isn't around, leaving everyone in the room puzzled, wondering who this mysterious Baya is. After a while, all the players make their way to the Blue Lock cafeteria, where meals are distributed according to each player's ranking. Ryo, being a cunning strategist, sees an opportunity to improve his meal. He stands up on his chair and announces to the group that he's willing to trade his hamburger meal. He invites anyone interested to raise their hands, sparking a chaotic reaction as players begin shouting for a chance to make the trade. One player offers to trade his hijiki for half of Ryo's hamburger, but others quickly mock him, pointing out that nobody would accept such a terrible offer. Ryo agrees internally, recognizing that the hijiki trade wouldn't be worthwhile. Thinking quickly, he decides to adjust his offer, offering 1/5 of his hamburger instead. The other player accepts this final offer, leaving the entire room in shock that Ryo actually managed to make the trade. Ryo proudly declares that from now on, the player's nickname will be Hijiki. Smiling to himself, Ryo reflects that this type of economic maneuvering and bartering skill is something he's honed through his experiences with his corporation. He believes that employing this type of strategic communication will help ease some of the envy that lower-ranked players feel toward those above them in the rankings. Ryo's efforts don't stop there. He continues to barter, offering additional portions of his hamburger, each time creating a bidding frenzy among his teammates. As Ryo watches players scramble to trade their meals for a small piece of his hamburger, he reflects on the social hierarchy at play within Blue Lock, knowing that his skill in negotiation not only improves his situation, but also establishes his influence over others. He again stands, mentioning that a lot of hamburgers are still left, and everyone again shouts for that, ready to trade their whole meals with it. On the other hand, Nagi is busy playing his game, thinking that they have a crazy appetite and are going nuts. As he looks at Zantetsu, he mentions that Ryo's crazy tricks wouldn't work on him when Ryo mentions that he might also want to join the negotiation, as he will be already tired of his yakisoba by now. Zantetsu did not give importance to him, mentioning that his taunts were meaningless, as they were really delicious. Ryo gets angry, mentioning that in that case, he also doesn't care, as he only likes cool and interesting guys anyway, and he doesn't give a damn about a stubborn idiot like him, especially if they were going to ignore his benevolence. Zantetsu shouts at him, asking him what benevolence even means. to which Ryo mentions that it is the reason that he is an idiot. Calling him an idiot again and again makes Zantetsu angry, shouting at Ryo not to call him an idiot and asking him what that word means. Nagi on the other side is being tensed by their fighting, thinking of running away and going to the bathroom to take a bath. He is using his low-effort body washing technique to wash his body to make bubbles over his entire body at once and wash them away in one go, and then he is finished. He didn't think that even though it's a pain to wash his body, soaking in the bath is great. He then thinks that Ryo has already made everyone on the team loyal to him, but according to him, he was like that. Even in high school, popular guys are amazing at being able to manipulate everyone like that, but it seems like they will win even if he doesn't do anything, so maybe he will be able to avoid playing any football and he will play a bunch more video games. He is excited about it when suddenly someone jumps in the tub, brushing his teeth. As he looks at him, he is Zantetsu, as he is dripping the water from his mouth. Nagi is getting frustrated, asking him not to brush his teeth in the bathtub as it is gross. As Zantetsu looks at him, he apologizes, mentioning that it's his family's motto that even if they forget about everything else, they will never forget to brush their teeth. This motto surprised Nagi a lot, as he mentioned that his family might be pretty smart. Zantetsu tells him that it's because his whole family is a dentist, and other than him, his entire family is smart. Nagi questions if his family constantly calls him an idiot for not being smart, to which Zantetsu replies that it's not the case, as truly intelligent people have the grace to not call an idiot an idiot. Nagi didn't like his way of asking him not to make such weird idioms with such a straightforward face when Zantetsu told him that they were his own words. But like he said, the people around him all treated him like an idiot, and he didn't get it. He hated being treated like an idiot, so he avoided public transportation. Instead, he ran. At some point, he realized that he was especially fast, so he decided to devote himself to sports. According to Nagi, it looks like a dramatic story, but he couldn't understand what made him choose football, to which he replies that it's his intuition. Nagi thinks that he is really an idiot. When Zantetsu further mentioned that he is going to give all his effort to soccer and become a pro, and become the #1 striker, and become the world's most esteemed moron, and that's actually his dream. His words were like Nagi mentioning that it's a pretty cool idea. Zantetsu asks him why he is playing football, to which Nagi replies that it's more like Ryo's fault. According to him, all he is doing is tagging along, and he doesn't have a dream or anything like that. Zantetsu asks him what's so great about Ryo, to which Nagi mentions that he wonders. Maybe it's because it's the first time someone has ever been interested in a slacker like him. Zantetsu tells him that he is really a weirdo, and Nagi agrees with him as he gets this comment a lot further, mentioning that he doesn't seem like a bad guy. After that, Team V gathers in the room, and Ryo tells them in the next game they're facing Team V. Like them, they also won their first game. The core of their team is the Wanima brothers, and if they can stop these two, they will definitely win. And they will set up an offense with them at the center, just like they train and position themselves to split up the two brothers. So their ultimate goal is to get high-quality beds for everyone. He shouts to motivate everyone to win the game. Nagi is impressed by Ryo, as he is like he has built a cult around himself, as all of them reach the match field. Ryo asks Nagi to continue their hot streak when Nagi mentions that since his whole team is united, he doesn't need him anymore. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's not allowed and he needs to fight, and Nagi agrees with him. As the game continues and they kick off the ball, the main goal of Ryo is to crush one of the brothers completely, so they will pick one and focus on shopping him, and it's to steal the ball and target the younger brother, thinking that he will shut down the younger brother himself, while everyone else works together to shut down the older brother. And if everyone goes according to the plan, it will be a piece of cake for him. But he freaks out as everyone gets wrong, and Team W comes to stop him. They block him when one of the boys mentions that he was the replay of his last match and figures out that his team is going to revolve around him. And if they stop him from leading Team V, deformation will become stagnant, and at the same time, their explosive combination attack will rip their defense to shreds. He smirks, mentioning that it's what his older brother ordered him. Ryo is freaking out as they're playing pretty well, and the Ryo team is not able to stop them. Nagi is impressed by their playing skills, telling Ryo that these two are pretty sick. After that, they make the first goal, and they are ecstatic about it. Ryo thinks that they won't beat the team if they play like usual, so at this rate, they are going to lose, and they need to start playing as a team too. But Zantetsu refused, and mentioned that he was not going to do that, which sounded like a pain to Nagi also. Ryo then smirks, asking them to do as he says. As Ryo's plan begins to fall apart, Team W effectively seals him off and starts shutting down his team. Realizing that if things continue this way, they'll lose the neat combo, Nagi asks Ryo why they need to win so badly. Couldn't they just afford to lose one game? But Ryo disagrees, saying that the two of them have to continue their legacy as the strongest. Nagi questions if Ryo isn't being too inflexible as he tries to gain control of the ball, only to be quickly covered by Team W. Ryo realizes that, as expected, they're marking him relentlessly. If Team W is going to close off all paths to Nagi, he'll have to use his surroundings to connect with him. Nagi catches on to Ryo's plan, thinking it's a good idea. However, things don't go as Ryo hoped. Instead, Nagi passes the ball to Zantetsu. Surprised, Zantetsu asks why Nagi gave him this treasure. Nagi simply replies that it's a pleasure and tells him to go for it, calling him Mr. Dentist. Zantetsu accepts the challenge and takes off with the ball, with Team W players chasing after him but unable to keep up with his speed. However, one of the Wanima brothers blocks him in the middle, causing Zantetsu to panic. He attempts a shot, and Team W yells for their goalkeeper to stop it. Unfortunately, Zantetsu doesn't make a perfect shot, and he misses the goal. Ryo rushes over to Nagi, demanding to know why he passed the ball to that idiot instead of to him. Nagi explains that Zantetsu said he wants to be the #1 striker and has the same dream, so he figured he'd let him try scoring while he slacks off. Ryo cringes, wondering why he would share his dream with a four-eyed dumbass. Zantetsu retorts that it's his dream too and refuses to back down. Nagi, looking a bit lost, asks Ryo why he's so set on this, adding that Ryo is actually really talented. Zantetsu admits that Nagi is right about Ryo's talent, but insists that he can't stand his attitude. As Ryo tries to argue, Nagi steps between them, suggesting it's a waste to argue, especially when Ryo has acknowledged Zantetsu's speed. Ryo sighs, finally admitting that Zantetsu is indeed faster than him. Deciding to cooperate, Ryo tells the others that he'll share what he's observed to help them win, urging them to listen up. Though Zantetsu grumbles in disagreement, Nagi encourages him to go along with it. Ryo then mentions that his real weapons are his extreme acceleration, explosive speed, and his powerful left-footed curving shot. And if he had to go towards the goal from the right and shoot, he would curve in an angle that the goalkeeper couldn't touch. But if he shot from the left side as he did just now, it would become a very effective middle-range shot. The angle increases the chance of the goalkeeper reaching the ball, cutting its effectiveness in half, asking him to aim from the right, and if he has to get a good feel for what range and angles, he will make his weapon more powerful. Zantetsu is still angry, mentioning that you won't listen to someone who calls him an idiot, and even his words are boring. This angers up Ryo, and mentions that it's the reason he doesn't like to fight with such a person as he is really an idiot, when Nagi tells them not to fight, as they will really make a good pair. Ryo tells Nagi that if he doesn't agree, in the end, they will have to do it with just the two of them. Ryo then thinks that with Nagi trapping, he can envision all sorts of goals, and the hardest one is the one that no one can touch, the one where Nagi shines the brightest, so he will make it happen and win. But as he shoots, 3 guys were covering Nagi, making it difficult for him. But Nagi didn't take it, mentioning that it's Zantetsu's range is further, mentioning that rather than using his head, he is better at running, asking him if he isn't, asking him to do what Ryo said and use his super acceleration. The team shouts, asking his members to stop him, but this time Zantetsu agrees, mentioning that if Nagi says that he will listen, I'll shoot that curve at an angle the goalkeeper can't reach, and it will make his weapon even more powerful. Ryo is shocked as he agrees to his observation, and in the end, after all, Zantetsu makes the goal. Everyone is so happy praising Zantetsu for it, when Zantetsu runs towards Ryo, asking him to tell him more. Ryo is shocked when Zantetsu mentions that he wants to win, so how can he make his microwave go? Ryo smiles, mentioning that he finally decided to listen, when Zantetsu tells him that he still doesn't like him, but he has come to like his wisdom, so he should use his dumbass in his plans. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's okay, as it's a win-win relationship. Nagi, looking at them, wondered, why can't he just say thanks? Ryo then tells Zantetsu what their next strategy is, and as both of them start gossiping, Nagi mentions that it looks like they feel good about the relationship. On the other side, the brothers are boiling up with anger when one of the brothers mentions that the real game starts now, and Ryo replies to him that it's him at the start of his crushing defeat. In the end, Ryo and Zantetsu got the brother by pressing in sequence, to which Ryo smiles, thinking that with his speed, defending is a piece of cake for them, so now they should push forward towards their range. Everyone shouts to block this route and cut off his shot. Zantetsu remembers that Ryo told him that when enemies enter his range, he should not rely on his feet, and go on in alone and send it to Nagi. Nagi taps the ball without dropping speed and without giving them any time to think and present the offering to the king. And as they decide in the end, Ryo makes the goal. Nagi asks Ryo how many goals they need, as now the three of them have made a high-level triangle, which is freaking the two brothers out. Moreover, by putting their complete faith in those three, the rest of the team is falling behind their lead, and he can't believe such a perfect team was only just formed in Blue Lock. Even though they crushed the Ryo-Nagi duo, all the work of Zantetsu is paying off over here, and Nagi is also feeling happy, as there is someone who says he is cool, and someone who understands his real strength. So now Blue Lock have become an interesting thing for Nagi. The brothers shout at them, asking them how long they think they will be fooled by their old trick. But as Nagi got the ball, he thought that Blue Lock was still a pain in his ass, and he easily made the goal, and the team won the game. As they win the game, all of them are dancing and jumping in their elite beds, and as Zantetsu also jumps in to enjoy the bed. Nagi notices that he is not wearing his glasses, asking him if he can see without them. Zantetsu upside down tells him that they're just fake glasses, asking him if the goggles during the match are fake too. To which Zantetsu replies that he wears them to look smarter. Ryo mentions that he is a fucking idiot. When one of the guys from the team calls three of them, asking them about the meeting as he has summarized the data on their next opponent's Team X, and their ace is this guy, Baru Shuei. His weapons are his exceptionally charged dribble and long-range middle shoot when Ryo asks them not to worry, mentioning that the three of them are undefeatable and they are peerless. He starts shouting, asking everyone to win. Nagi, lying down, thinks that now he doesn't need to work hard, and now as both teams reach the ground, Ryo asks them to quickly wrap up this game with a win when Zantetsu mentions that they're peerless, and Nagi agrees with him as Baru shoots the ball off. Zantetsu gets the idea that he tends to act on his own, so with both his physique and speed, he grabs his body, thinking not to think too much, and just gets in his way, but he can't stop him as he is so powerful and has crazy charging power. Ryo runs towards Zantetsu, saying good work to him. Ryo takes the ball and asks Baru if he really thought that he could defeat all of them by himself. The ball goes over to Nagi. Ryo asks him to pass it to him, and as the ball reaches Ryo, he shoots the ball right into the goal. The Baru team gets angry at him, asking him how stubborn he is going to be and how much longer he will drag them down, as if he doesn't help them win, they will be eliminated. The team further requests him to be united like others, asking him to strengthen the team. However, Baru then looks furious and asks them if they think that he would give a fuck about some lowly peasants like them, as why should a king like him take care of his servant corpses, further mentioning that they all had no issues leeching off his talent when the going was smooth. But now that the ship looks like it's about to sink, it's suddenly the king's fault? According to him, they don't deserve to be called humans, as they have come this far because of him. Everyone was angry at him, and some even started crying. After that, Zantetsu mentioned what a tyrant Baru is, and said that he is glad that he isn't on Baru's team. Ryo chuckles, mentioning that it's egoists like him who will survive in Blue Lock. And according to Nagi, this guy looks like another pain in the ass as the game restarts. Team X mentions that they will win against this team without Baru. Nagi and Ryo are confused, as they had started working together, but according to Ryo, it's still an easy win for him, as even if they are working together, it's just a bunch of nobodies. On the other hand, they have the three of them make up the core of their team, and their bond is not so weak that they will lose to some spur of the movement, and the second goal is made up by Zantetsu, and the third one by Nagi, while Team X is still on 0, and now it's become impossible for them to win the game, and while they were at their end, Baru asked them not to give up as long as there is a sliver of hope they shall fight on, but Ryo stopped him, mentioning that you can't create something out of nothing. He passed the ball to Nagi, mentioning that it was a bonus time so he should get his deluxe bed too, but it still looked like a pain for Nagi. However, Baru came in between, mentioning that he has some nerve, calling him a lowly peasant. Ryo apologized to Nagi for being careless, but Nagi asked the king Baru to give the ball back, but the king didn't agree, mentioning that he is just a slave who can't even do anything without being ordered to. Nagi tries to take the ball away from Baru, but he sweeps past Nagi, which shocks him. Ryo is also shocked by Baru's move. However, he knows that he has Zantetsu beside him, so it will still be an easy win for them. So he decides to first make Baru slow down, then Zantetsu will press him, but Baru accelerated, which was the thing he was aiming for when they switched their positions. Ryo is freaking out, as even though he let his guard down, only someone with solid insight and soccer IQ could have seen that blind spot. So this guy is not just another selfish player, and he is a rare talent who lives for the sake of the goal, and when he stands out, He is an existence that easy to destroy. But when left unmarked, he begins to shine talented lies, invade in the shadows. He shouts at him, telling him that he is not a king, and that he is just a goddamn joker. Baru scores the first goal for Team X, and looks furious at Ryo, as he asks him if he still thinks that it's an easy win, and calls him a fucking peasant. Nagi tells him that he is not a slave or a peasant, but instead, that he is just Ryo's partner. Nagi tells Baru that he is not a slave, as he is Ryo's partner. Baru responds by asking why Nagi doesn't just scram before he gets his ass kicked, calling him a peace-loving softy. He insists that to be one of the world's best players, it means standing alone as a king, so his buddy-buddy act isn't going to cut it at this level. He is just like a bottom-feeding slave. As Baru stops, Nagi tells him that, to be perfectly honest, he doesn't care a single bit about football. And the reason he got pissed off is that Baru has been talking all kinds of trash and beating up Ryo with his violent methods. Baru gets fired up, asking Nagi if he wants to get beaten up by him. Ryo asks Nagi to stop and calm down, reminding him that they're still winning. He urges Nagi to forget about that good-for-nothing king and show him he is stronger in the second half, asking him to kick off as the game resumes. Ryo thinks that all Nagi has to do is look at him, score just 2 more goals, and get his own high-luxury bed. Nagi takes the ball, telling Ryo that he gets it, and that he just got sidetracked a bit, and that's all. Nagi makes the goal. Baru asks him if he is satisfied after scoring a boring goal like that. Nagi replies that who cares, as a goal is still a goal, and it doesn't matter if it's boring. This causes Baru to think that Nagi is just an idiot with nothing more to offer. As the game restarts, Nagi asks Baru what he means by that, to which Baru replies that all of Nagi's goals are meaningless and that he is just scoring because the purple-haired player over there is controlling him like a slave. Baru pushes him back, telling him to listen up and mentioning that the world's first striker always stands alone as a king. He pushes the other guy down, stating that he would rather die than be someone's slave. After pushing them all back, Baru makes the goal, and now the score of Team X reaches 2. The eyes of Team X sparkle, thinking that they still have a chance to win. If they get the ball to Baru, they can definitely win, when one of the guys mentions that they already tried that, calling him an idiot. He adds that if they do that, the defense is going to key in on Baru, and the game is over. They ask each other what the hell they are going to do, but they have to win, or they are done. They are freaking out due to this. Ryo looks at Nagi, listening to their conversation, asking him not to worry about them, as he thinks Team X is finished. He points out that no matter how strong a player might be, a team with no unity quickly falls apart. He passes the ball to Nagi, asking him to score 1 more goal and end this game once and for all. As the game starts, he calls out to Nagi, who is stunned. It's rare for him to take the initiative. Nagi is running faster, not giving anyone a chance to find him. Ryo cannot understand what he is thinking, as instead of choosing the logical option, why is he electing for a riskier option? Ryo's eyes pop out as he realizes that Nagi is deliberately running after Baru. Baru calls him a bastard when Nagi tells him that the slave is coming through. Ryo shouts at Nagi to show him his real strength and demonstrate how much of a genius he is. Ryo uses a high-speed ground pass. Ryo shouts at him, telling him that the pass is coming. Nagi, staring into Baru's eyes, asks Baru if he still thinks he is boring. Baru gets up, saying that he deliberately went for the back heel to show him up. He tries to push Nagi, but Nagi kinda dodges it. Ryo shouts at him, mentioning that it was a foul and a penalty, but Nagi punches Baru back, saying that he is pathetic for letting a slave get the better of him. He scores from behind Baru, mentioning that he is not a king, but rather a fool. Now the game finishes with Team V scoring 5 points, and the match is closed. Team V becomes excited. Ryo praises Nagi for his goal, saying it was really unexpected from someone like him, and Zantetsu also praises him, saying he is amazing and really skinned Baru for a new one, after that people made fun of him for saying the wrong sentence, calling him stupid. Baru is boiling, telling Nagi that he is just a lazy person and that he has a scary ego. He calls him an egoist, mentioning that the next time they face each other, he will make him his slave. In the cafeteria, Nagi is sitting with his head down, mentioning that he is so tired when Ryo passes him the meat, saying he wants to eat meat, so they use their goal points to get him some. Zantetsu mentions that if he didn't want to eat that, he shouldn't have wasted his points on it. They both start eating together, mentioning that they can't stop because it's delicious. Ryo asks Nagi to eat some, but it feels like such a drag for Nagi. Seriously, he can't understand why he tried so hard against Baru. As Zantetsu eats Nagi's portion, Ryo asks him not to finish it all as it is all for Nagi and says that he is serious. Nagi cannot figure out if he acted that way because of anger or ego, but he mentions that who cares, as even thinking is tiresome. Suddenly, a guy approaches the three of them, introducing himself as Kwon from Team Z and asking if they are interested in making some sort of deal. Zantetsu asks him what he means, and Ryo asks him who the hell he is. Kwon mentions that it's a super great deal for Team V. Zantetsu asks him if it's a win-win, to which he replies that it's really a type of win-win deal. Simply put, he will tell them all of Team Z's strategies and data, while Team V wins via a clean sheet. Nagi cannot understand what is wrong with him, wondering if he is so desperate, or if he really wants to survive in Blue Lock this much. Kwon starts laughing, asking them what they think about his deal, and if they agree to team up with him, but the three of them don't agree. Nagi tells Ryo to finish up this conversation, as even chewing is a pain, so he should carry him. Ryo carries him, mentioning that they brought him here because he wanted to eat. Nagi apologizes, mentioning that it's over now. Zantetsu, on the other hand, is confused as he wants to eat the steak since it looks delicious and will be wasted, but he feels it would be stupid to ask for leftovers. Kwon shouts at them to hear him out. When Nagi asks him why this guy is so desperate, Ryo mentions that he wants to win. Nagi tells him that weak guys who have to try hard to win are such a pain. He would rather just give up, asking Ryo if football is so interesting that he wants to play it so desperately. Suddenly, a guy approaches from behind, asking Nagi not to underestimate football. When Nagi looks at him, he remembers that he is the guy from back then. He then thinks a bit and says that someone who is never alone cannot be labeled a genius. Only when there is something to be found does its outline start to take form. He then introduced himself as Isagi from Team Z, the team that will bring them down. And this is the story of the genius Nagi. As Nagi is busy playing his games, Nagi then thinks that ever since he came to Blue Lock, he has been kind of weird, as he couldn't understand why he tried so hard. It might be because Baru makes fun of him and Ryo, or because Baru just pissed him off, but feels like that doesn't quite explain this feeling. Ryo tells Nagi that this is their last match, as they've won all our matches so far, so they're definitely moving on, but they're still going all out to win this. Zantetsu agrees that they shouldn't let their garden go with the wind, but Ryo shuts him down instantly, as he tells Zantetsu that he wasn't even close to saying the right thing. Nagi thinks that he feels so hazy. Ryo is so excited as this is the time for the first selection's last battle, but it's just a pain, and Zantetsu is hoping not to let his garden go still, not realizing that he is saying it wrong. When Ryo asks him why there are only 10 of them, when Zantetsu mentions that the trader's guy is off in the corner because even if they win, he will still advance as the top scorer, so he is planning to slack off. As Nagi kicks off, Ryo mentions that they would have still won even if they were 11. Nagi is wondering if everybody here likes soccer. After that, Isagi shouts Igarashi's name. Nagi still couldn't understand what soccer was to them. If that dream of theirs was life itself, Team Isagi tried to make a goal, but it didn't work. Ryo thinks that their goal attempt was so interesting asking Nagi to try it, but it still looks like a pain to Nagi. Ryo takes control of the ball and shoots it up on the field. Nagi still in his mind can't understand what soccer is to him, as he doesn't understand if it's just a way to kill time or just going along with what Ryo wants, or if it's just a game. He has no idea. And now he makes the goal look like a piece of cake to him, asking the guy how he had missed something like that. Even thinking about it is such a pain, but he can't help it. Ryo praises Nagi for his skills, mentioning that it's just like he pictured it. Nagi looks at Ryo, asking him if he can slack off, when Ryo asked him not to, and to get 5 more goals first. Nagi asked if 4 would work, but he didn't agree, and 5 more was still a pain for Nagi, asking his team to hurry up and finish the game. Isagi was freaking out when Nagi scored the second goal again. Team Z asked his members to calm down as it was just the start, but Zantetsu did the third one too. All the Team Z members are now totally worn out. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's all over, as in the end, all the teams were the same. Nagi also thinks to himself that Team Z is just like every other team. However, he still has this hazy feeling to him. Ryo is so happy thinking that they will finish the game, but as the game restarts, Bachira takes over the ball when his team members ask him not to take it all to himself, but he smirks, mentioning that the monster inside him is saying that when things look dire, don't get scared, get excited, in fact. Ryo's eyes pop out to see his determination, as it's a faint spin. As now he reaches Zantetsu, he mentions that there is no way he is letting him leave, but he manages to do it with a mid-air elastico. Nagi was so shocked, thinking about how in the hell Bachira was as he made the goal. He smirks, mentioning that they should look as the things are getting interesting. Nagi looks at them celebrating and wonders if that's what fun is. Ryo mentions that it looks like they're getting kindred spirits, and Zantetsu tells him that it looks like it's not over yet. Ryo later says that it's interesting and that it means that they have to crush them completely. But it's still the pain for Nagi. Nagi looks at Isagi and Bachira and says that to them soccer is fun, but he never thought it was fun. He wonders if Team Z knows what these hazy feelings are, but then he takes a total spin as he wonders why he is getting so heated all of a sudden. Now Team Z gets the ball, trying to score the goal. Isagi shouts at him not to lose nerve. He looks at Kunigami with determination and asks him to fight as he's going to be a superhero. And now that he has done the second goal, Kunigami shouts with happiness. Zantetsu is getting stunned as they're winning even if they have 10 players. Ryo mentions that they're catching up, asking them to give him a break. But Nagi's still confused, trying to figure out the reason they were fighting so hard. As the team takes the ball, a guy shouts at Gagamaru to give him the ball. Nagi still wants to know the egos of all the strikers. Now Isagi took over the ball, and Nagi thinks back to the time when Isagi told him not to look down on soccer. Nagi runs after Isagi, asking him, why don't they just give up gracefully, as those guys are totally different from everyone else they have beaten? And why do they keep trying, asking him if he is stupid, as he just doesn't get it? Saying that if he had Isagi's level of talent, then he would have quit soccer by now, asking him to tell him what the reason is behind it. Isagi asks him to shut up, calling him Sherlock, and mentioning that he is on a roll right now. Nagi couldn't understand him, as he just got mad instead of explaining. He couldn't understand what's his deal now. Chigiri from Team Z gets the ball from Isagi. Zantetsu runs after him to catch up with the ball, but he loses at top speed, which makes Nagi more stunned. And then Team Z makes their third goal, and after they start shouting with happiness. And now both teams have the same score. Team Z's Quan shouts at Team V that what are they doing as they should get it together, calling them idiots, asking them if they were not embarrassed to be losing to a team that is short of a player, calling them dumbasses. Nagi thinks that Ryo is getting worried, thinking if he, Zantetsu and Ryo are going to lose. As the game restarts, Reichi asks Ryo if he is really that scared of losing, calling him an undefeatable, sheltered dweeb. Reichi clenches his teeth, mentioning that he is going to provide him with his first loss. Ryo is freaking out. Nagi thinks that even though Ryo looks like something is wrong, Nagi decides to ask Ryo to give the ball to him. Ryo looks at him with shock, and then Nagi takes it. He thinks that he is actually trying again, even though it's a pain. He tells Ryo that he is going to give it a try, and he runs towards the goal. And now his body is moving faster than he thinks, and his spirit is accelerating faster than his body, and he wants to verify this curiosity. Team Z shouts to block the attack, but it's too late as the ball goes straight to Nagi. Nagi thinks that he wanted to prove himself with soccer, and after that, he did his spectacular and mind-blowing goal. He falls down, thinking that he's getting so heated, and he feels a bit better. After that, he calls Ryo, mentioning that soccer is fun, and he stands up. As of now, the score of Team Vi is 4, and that of Team Z is 3. Team V is shouting and praising Nagi as they take the lead again. Zantetsu hugs him, calling him a genius and fantastic, to which Nagi mentions that it was a nice pass and agrees it's correct. Nagi then asks Ryo how many more points they need, who looks at him in shock. On the other side, Team Z is freaking out, mentioning that if they don't take the lead in the next 15 minutes, they have screwed up, so they should attack until they die. A man known as Reichi is holding Isagi by the collar, while Zantetsu looks at them, mentioning they're not out yet. Ryo tells Nagi to get one more point, saying that if the score gets one more point, they will win. Nagi still cannot understand why everyone is getting so heated, thinking that it's such a pain, so he agrees with Ryo's instincts. As the game starts again, Zantetsu tells the guy that this time he will stop him, but Chigiri calls him stupid Four Eyes. Nagi looks at him, thinking that the redhead is planning to rush in again, so in that case, he will go to the point where he will pass Zantetsu and stop him. He goes further, telling him that he will take this, calling him princess. However, out of nowhere someone else comes by. It's Isagi who tells Nagi that he is too naive. Chigiri calls Isagi a good boy and mentions that he will give Isagi a pat on the head later, but as he goes to shoot the ball, it hits the post. Ryo gets hope as he couldn't make the goal, but the ball later falls to Kunigami, who was standing a bit away. The ball falls perfectly, and Kunigami does his own wave attack, which flawlessly goes into the goal. They shout in happiness as the score is now equal. Nagi is still standing confused as he witnesses the heat from them fighting with all they have. Team Z shouts to get one more goal. They know they are going to win as the game restarts. Nagi thinks that he has no idea that this kind of world existed, and if he scored a goal amidst this fanaticism, how good it would feel. He wonders as Zantetsu gets the ball. Chigiri shouts, mentioning that he is not going to let him pass, but Zantetsu mentions that it's too bad, as right now they have an eager prodigy on their side. Nagi says good to Zantetsu, and now Isagi is running after Nagi. It's again a pain for Nagi as he is waiting for the moment to trap it. He could not guess if he should go right or left or if he was planning to defend based on a split-second judgment. He could not understand if he should do it, so in the end, he felt that he would improvise his response and do the trap with his back. He freaks out as he actually grabbed it with his back. Team Z shouts at Isagi to stop him, but Nagi is feeling surprised, thinking that he is amazing and he didn't know he could do this stuff. This feels incredible to him, but to his surprise, Kwon grabs his face, causing Nagi to fall and commit a foul for malicious interference with a scoring opportunity. Kwon gets a red card and now he is out of the game. Nagi asks him what he is doing. Ryo shouts, asking Nagi if he is okay. He runs towards Kwon, asking him what his problem is when Zantetsu asks him to stop, warning that he will be out too if he gets a yellow card again. Nagi tells Ryo that he is actually fine. He says that he was pretty amazing before that and never imagined anything like that. It just keeps rushing out of him. Soccer is something he has never seen this side of himself before. Now he is changing. It feels weird, but it's fun as he wonders what kind of him is waiting ahead of here. Ryo asks Nagi if he is hurt, and now he just wants his own goal. Team V gets a free kick. Team Z asks their members to form a wall a little more to the right. They have got to stop them as this is do or die, and they should watch out for Nagi. Nagi is waiting for Ryo to pass the ball to him, but Ryo decides to shoot for the goal on his own, but ultimately misses. Nagi freaks out, as he cannot guess that in the end, Ryo is playing for himself too. Zantetsu shouts, stating that now it's his territory, and he shoots the ball, but Team Z has made a wall. Nagi gets the ball, hoping for 1 point. He tries to make the goal, and as he shoots, thinking he has won, but not yet. Gagamaru in the absolute last second manages to come in and stop the ball. Nagi freaks out, as he could not guess this could happen. Isagi is looking, seeing that it's their last chance. Team V tries to stop him as he is making a counter. Bachira has the ball and sees Isagi in the goal zone, and he sends over a pass to Isagi. As Isagi sees this, he calls Bachira the best. However, Nagi comes by his side and tells Isagi not to think that Nagi is letting him go, and tells Isagi that right now he is the most dangerous one on this field. Nagi thinks that Isagi will touch the ball first, but before he shoots, he always has to grab the ball to position it in a favorable spot, so he will steal it when Isagi does that. And then once again, he will counter him and end this with his own goal, asking Isagi now to bring it on. He thinks of soccer in this heat, knowing he can't be beaten as he will swallow Isagi as a whole. But before he can even try and take the ball from Isagi, he actually shoots the ball right as it comes to him, which is something that he usually doesn't do. However, in this insane moment, the shot from Isagi goes into the goal. In that moment, Nagi definitely sees it, a shining light, and a moment when a person is reborn. He freaks out, picks up the ball, and asks Ryo if there is still time, and if they can score 2 more points, they can win. Ryo is shocked to see Nagi in this condition, but before he could do something, the game is over and Team Z wins the game. Nagi's eyes pop out. It's over, and this feverishly hot time is ending. He might have been able to be reborn too, but the reason that got Nagi so heated was the thought of his own goal. But now everything has been stolen away by Isagi. Nagi calls Ryo, thinking that losing after giving his all is something which he has never felt before, but now that he knows how it feels, he says that it feels so frustrating. 10 days later, all the members of Team 5 are practicing hard, while Nagi watches them, enjoying his drink. Zantetsu is completely worn out, and asks Ryo how long they have to keep up this intense training. Ryo replies that Ego said they have to do it until the next selection round, so they've just got to keep at it. As both of them sit down, Zantetsu mentions that, according to him, something seems different. He's noticing that the one for whom everything is usually a pain is now practicing more seriously. After the exercise, they go to their room to enjoy their sleep when, after a little bit of time, the ring bell sounds. An announcement states that at this time, all the Blue Lock's first selection rounds have been completed for all wings, and all players who cleared the first round should now put on their training suits and proceed to the underground central area from their respective wings. When they reach the area for the second selection round, everyone looks shocked, and Nagi glances at Yoichi Isagi. However, Ryo thinks that everyone here is from the letters V to Z. Ego appears on a screen, waving at them and calling them lumps of talent, congratulating them for their physical training. He mentions that here, 125 players from all 5 wings have gathered, and all 125 of them cleared the first selection round. Ego notes that he's sure the clever ones among them have already realized that only 5 wings exist in Blue Lock. By making them think they were in teams 5 to Z, he tricked them into thinking they were at the bottom, so they fought like madmen in the first selection round. All the members are angry and fired up, demanding to know why he lied to them. Ego smirks, saying he wants to kill half of their confidence to create the hunger needed to become the best in the world. He then tells them to prepare themselves for the second selection round and to enter the gate one at a time, wishing them good luck. Nagi wonders if they're going in alone, while Ryo smirks, thinking that this Jinpachi Ego guy is clever, so what could they expect from him? Suddenly, a guy steps out from between them and starts kicking the football, showing excellent technique. Nagi and Ryo are shocked, and Nagi thinks he's amazing and wonders who this guy is. The guy speaks up, mentioning that he's done his stretching, then goes inside the room. Ryo looks at him, stunned, remarking that there are still some badasses left in Blue Lock. Zantetsu urges them to go in, and Nagi announces that he'll go first. Ryo tells Nagi that he'll be there by himself, so he shouldn't slack off. Nagi enters, mentioning that he will be fine as he is fired up right now. In the monitoring room, Henri looks at the guy with shock, noting that he is the AI hologram goalkeeper. Blue Lock Man further explains that they have to score 100 goals within 90 minutes against such a strong opponent, and that's just the first stage. Plus, the system adjusts the quality and challenge of each ball based on the individual, creating training that can draw out a player's unique style and weapons. A solitary environmental test to turn their individual abilities into turning 0 into 1. According to her, Nagi's stance towards soccer has changed. Ego looks at her, agreeing, as he notes that things are getting interesting, and it seems the prodigy has awakened his ego. Nagi easily finishes his 100-goal task, mentioning that it was a piece of cake for him, and his first stage is now clear. He exits the gate to the next stage, looking at the 3-man teams advancing. Ryo also passes the stage, smiling at Nagi, noting that it looks like he cleared it too, and that he's proud of him, asking who else they should pick for their team. Nagi ignores Ryo, saying he thinks there's somebody he wants to wait for. Ryo agrees with him, asking if he's talking about Zantetsu. Nagi considers that if he tells him about the guy, Ryo might get mad, so he decides to introduce him when he arrives. Suddenly, as Isagi enters the room, Ryo and Nagi both look at him. Isagi is chatting happily with Bachira. Nagi observes them, thinking they seem close, so Isagi must be someone indispensable to Bachira, and maybe they are like him and Ryo. Nagi approaches Isagi, asking if he wants to team up with them. Isagi looks at him in shock as Nagi asks him to join their team. Ryo questions Nagi, asking if this is the person he was waiting for. Nagi replies that Isagi is the most amazing guy in that match, so he wants to try playing soccer with him. Bachira asks Isagi if he's going to join them. Isagi responds that of course not. He's teaming up with Bachira and apologizes to Nagi, explaining he can't join him by himself. Ryo asks Nagi if he heard Isagi's response. Nagi thinks that he will be selfish, but announces he will join their team. The 3 of them look shocked, as Nagi further asks Isagi if he's fine with that. Ryo looks at Nagi in disbelief, asking what he's talking about, as they were supposed to team up. So what about him? Nagi explains that Ryo taught him about soccer, and that both of them are going to be the best in the world, and that's a fact. But if they lost, then they were not the strongest. Nagi wonder if he enjoys being with Ryo because it's not a pain, it's comfortable and fun. But the dream Ryo showed him about becoming the world's best, it ended in that moment. So he's not fine with things as they are, and that's what he tells Ryo. Nagi then expresses that to understand this new feeling called frustration. He wants to play soccer with Isagi, thinking that to dream again about being the best, he wants to change. So he tells Ryo that he wants to try making an effort. Ryo, looking frustrated, tells him to do whatever he wants. Bachira asks Isagi what he thinks, but Isagi remains stunned. He looks into Isagi's eyes, hoping that Isagi chooses him, and in the end, the 3 of them make the group. The system asks the 3 of them to advance to the next stage. Before entering, Nagi stares at Ryo, mentioning that he will be waiting for him, his gaze intense and determined. Bachira is so excited to play with Nagi, telling him that Ryo actually looks sad and wonders aloud if Nagi is actually the super cold type, someone who hides his emotions. Nagi glances at him, mentioning that he would be lying if he said he didn't feel bad about it, but he knows that he can see Ryo again at some point. He tells them that playing alongside them is more exciting than he thought, and asks if Blue Lock is really that kind of place, where excitement builds through challenge. He tries to calm himself, acknowledging that right now he and Ryo are not yet good enough and must change to get stronger. Isagi watches him, encouraging him to go for it, and Nagi agrees. Bachira smirks, playfully calling them the ultimate team. When they reach the third stage meeting room, the screen activates, and Ego appears, welcoming them. Ego explains that it's time for some 3-on-3 team battles for this third stage. The 3-man teams they've formed will have a mini-game battle with Blue Lock men serving as the goalie for both teams, and the first team to score 5 points will win. The winning team will select a player from the losing team, steal that player, and form a 4-man team. With each stage advancement, they add a new member. Once they create a 5-man team and advance to the 5th stage, they will have cleared the second selection round. Bachira is amazed, starting to say it looks like something, and Nagi completes his thought by saying it resembles Red Rover. Ego continues, explaining that if a team loses at any point, they return to the previous stage with their remaining members. Finally, when a team loses a 2-on-2 match, the unchosen player who ends up alone will be forced to leave. He adds that in this second selection round, they will steal rivals, making it a true rivalry battle. Nagi realizes that the rules mean he might encounter Ryo mid-battle. Ego tells them all that they have the ability to turn 0 into 1 on the field, and smashing those ones together will elevate them. Whoever can control the chemical reaction of competing egos will be the strikers who seize the ticket to the next stage. To win, they must use any means necessary. Bachira remarks that it's another harsh rule. Nagi clarifies that they simply need to gather 5 players to win. Bachira agrees, saying there's no rush to pick an opponent, and asks Isagi what he thinks. Nagi glances at the other team, where Rin tells his members it doesn't matter who they play with, as they are only here with him to fill the place. He declares that they should win, and earn the chance to represent Japan in the U20 League. Rin reveals his purpose is to surpass his brother. Soccer's meaning to him is to crush Sai Itoshi. Bachira observes that Rin is the little brother of that prodigy midfielder, and remarks that he looks like a true egoist. Isagi apologizes to Bachira and Nagi. Nagi asks him what's wrong, and he replies that it doesn't matter who they play, right? He then calls out to Rin, challenging him to a battle, fully committing to face Rin. Nagi mentions that he has the same idea as him, thinking that he will experience the monster known as Rin Itoshi. Nagi thinks that he never thought he would get to play soccer on the same team as Isagi, hoping to become one of the top 3. As the announcement happens and the game starts, both teams jump onto the field, kicking off the ball. In the matching room, Ryo sits silently on the side, thinking that he has lived his life always getting the things he wants, so he is sure that Nagi, the prodigy, is the first treasure he hasn't been able to make his own. He grinds his teeth in anger, further thinking that if he hadn't come to Blue Lock, maybe he wouldn't have had to know this feeling. He tells Nagi in his mind that the truth is he realized something back in their previous match, seeing Nagi entranced by and heated up about soccer. When he lost to Isagi, Nagi became aware of his own talent and learned about frustration, so seeing Nagi like that made him so happy. But he thinks he wasn't the one who changed him, as he felt that if he accepted that, he could not stay by his side. So he tried to pretend he wasn't moved and put a lid on his own feelings. But even so, Nagi didn't stop. While remembering the scene when Nagi told him that he wanted to play soccer with Isagi, his eyes shone like a child's as he tried to change and move forward. Ryo just could not bring himself to say, "Okay Nagi, go ahead, let's meet again beyond our dreams," with a smile on his face. Ryo bangs his head, thinking that he feels if he had said that, Nagi would never have come back to him. He felt like their dream was going to disappear completely, and he was so scared that he would be lonely, realizing he was so weak. He doesn't want to know that people changing can be this cruel. His eyes start dropping tears as he grinds his teeth in sadness. On the other side, as Team White now has 2 goals, Nagi looks at Rin, thinking that he is seriously overpowered. Isagi shouts at Nagi and Bachira to stop Rin from making the goal. Nagi dashes after Rin, challenging him to bring it, calling him a cheat code monster. Rin, however, tells him that he already mentioned this game is over, calling them mediocre amateurs. Now, as both of them face off, Rin suddenly slides to leave Nagi behind. Nagi watches his dribbling, kicking, and soccer IQ, marveling at his sheer skill, thinking that Rin excels in every parameter, even as though he's at 100% or 200%. Nagi acknowledges that he is a prodigy, yet Rin doesn't even seem to covet it. He's supernatural. Nagi mutters in disbelief that Rin isn't even human. In the end, Rin succeeds in scoring the last goal for his team, winning the game. Nagi is left in utter shock as they lose. Rin's teammates ask him who they should steal, and Rin replies nonchalantly that it doesn't matter. All of them are the same. Nagi stands there in complete shock, struggling to grasp that he teamed up with Isagi, yet they still lost. In the end, Team Red decides to take Bachira, asking him to join them. Bachira stares at them in disbelief, frozen in shock. Rin notices and snaps at him, telling him not to space out and calling him Bullcut, reminding him that his fate is in his hands. Bachira's face falls, and with a heavy heart, he tells Isagi that he wanted to stick with him till the end. As he says this, Nagi remembers the promise Ryo made to stay with him till the end. Isagi calls out Bachira's name, his voice filled with desperation, but Bachira sadly tells him that he's leaving because it's the rule. He further adds with a bittersweet smile that he won't wait for Isagi. If Isagi truly wants him back, then he should steal him. Nagi finds himself wanting to tell Ryo that there's someone even more incredible than him and Isagi here, that the stakes are high, and it's all over if they lose again. Yet Nagi can't quite put this feeling into words, and even so, he wonders, why is he having so much fun right now? He doesn't want to leave yet. He wants to keep playing, to keep winning, to get stronger. He realizes that he never would have discovered this side of himself if he hadn't come to Blue Lock. He clenches his fist, overwhelmed by emotion, thinking he wouldn't have gained this if he hadn't met Ryo. In his mind, he tells Ryo that if they meet again, there are so many things he wants to say. He never thought that changing could be so thrilling. On the other hand, Isagi is freaking out with anger due to his loss, as he is not ready to accept it. Now, as Nagi and Isagi enter the matching room, Nagi sits down with a sigh, noting that it looks like they're the first ones there. He asks Isagi what they should do, mentioning that it seems there's an area to rest, and suggests checking it out. Isagi firmly tells him that they can't rest now. If they lose, it's all over for them. Nagi reassures him that they'll win the next match, as their opponents were just too strong this time. But Isagi, fuming with frustration, tells Nagi that it's not that simple. Unlike Nagi, he couldn't do anything against the top 3, and if they lose again, he'll be the one who gets stolen and won't be chosen. He adds that even if he were in their shoes, he wouldn't pick himself. Nagi, frustrated, grabs Isagi's hair and tells him to cut the crap, demanding to know what he's supposed to do if Isagi acts this way. Isagi looks at him in shock as Nagi explains that he teamed up with him because he thought he'd get stronger if they played together. But if Isagi wusses out, it'll be a problem for him. Calling him a dumbass, he tells him to get himself together. Isagi, irritated, asks Nagi to let go of his hair and accuses him of making it all his fault. Nagi tells him to try harder, pointing out that Ryo wouldn't whine like this. Isagi, now fired up, grabs Nagi by the shirt, shouting at him to team up with Ryo if that's how he feels, and demanding that Nagi not compare him to his ideals. Nagi explains that he can't help it, as he's only ever played soccer with Ryo before. This only angers Isagi further, who accuses him of blaming him and suggests that Nagi can't do anything without Ryo. Nagi retorts that, similarly, Isagi can't do anything without Bachira. They stare intensely into each other's eyes. Isagi then pushes Nagi back, admitting that he knows that's true, and that's why he's so angry. Nagi looks at him, realizing that even Isagi gets scared and lashes out sometimes. Isagi, still fired up, declares that he's going to prove he can fight on his own. Nagi watches him in surprise, thinking that Isagi can indeed prove he can fight independently, and that's what Ryo and he need to do too. He realizes he's being tested. Nagi then asks Isagi how he got rid of that feeling of frustration. Isagi apologizes, saying that winning is the only thing that will cool this fever. As the two continue talking, 2 other players enter the room. Baru looks at them in confusion and asking why there aren't any strong guys here, while his teammate Naruhaya is equally surprised. On the other side, Kunigami asks Ryo if he's okay. Ryo angrily tells him to shut up and leave him alone. Kunigami, concerned, asks him what's wrong, and Chigiri chimes in, saying it looks like Ryo got rejected by Nagi, who he thought was just his pet dog. He adds that it's the same for them. They want to kick Isagi and Bachira's asses after being left behind. Kunigami then asks Ryo if he wants to join them. Ryo looks at them in shock, asking why they'd want him on their team. Both of them respond together, telling him that it's because he's incredibly clever. Ryo looks at them in shock, mentioning that he knows he is skilled and incredible, and that having him on their team adds value they can't get anywhere else. Yet Nagi had to leave him and go to Isagi, calling him a stupid whiny baby, as the thought just pisses him off. Kunigami tells Chigiri that it feels like they've stepped on a raw nerve, but they are complimenting Ryo. Chigiri tells Kunigami that their interests align, and he asks Ryo to take his hand. He points out that both of them want to beat Isagi, and Ryo wants to beat Nagi, so how about they form an alliance of revenge? Ryo shakes his hand, saying that it sounds good to him and it's a pleasure to work with him. He adds that now they should take down the bastard who betrayed them. Kunigami chuckles, warning him not to get too violent, while Chigiri declares that they'll defeat all the elites. On the other side, as Nagi and Isagi's match continues, their team wins. Isagi is thrilled, celebrating that he scored the goal and their team won. He then asks Baru to join them, insisting that he's not someone destined to end here. Naruhaya tells Isagi to keep winning, smirking and challenging him to win until he dies. As they leave, Nagi feels that this time is different, wondering if he would look like Naruhaya if he pushed himself more. Nagi reflects on how much he wants to talk with Ryo. Later, on the training field, Ryo and his team sit down after practice. Kunigami mentions he's going to take a bath, and Chigiri asks Ryo if he wants to join. Ryo tells them to go ahead without him. He watches Kunigami and Chigiri chatting happily, memories of himself and Nagi flashing in his mind. He doesn't want to remember, knowing that they've moved into different teams now. He tells himself he should cut his feelings short here, as all he's doing is dragging it out. Heading to the shower, Ryo sits under the water, lost in thought. He wonders if he'll advance to the next level and what would happen to Nagi if he washes out here. He remembers his promise to stay with Nagi until the end, but Nagi left him. He bitterly thinks, what if he's living his best life with Isagi and is already forgetting about me? He tries to silence these thoughts, but they keep running through his mind over and over, and he hates himself for it. Suddenly Isagi appears, asking them why they are still in the third stage. Ryo is shocked to see him. Kunigami and Chigiri look at Isagi and jump at him, asking him why he didn't wait for them. Isagi replies that he wanted to, but Nagi insists. Nagi, floating in the bath, interjects, asking if they're talking about him. Baru gets annoyed, telling him to stop blowing bubbles because he's spitting in the tub. Ryo watches them, realizing they've won one match and lost another, and he wonders if he can face them. Despite his doubts, he thinks it doesn't matter because he's determined to beat them anyway. He's ready to evolve and vows that he'll defeat Nagi. Chigiri then asks if they've decided on their next opponents. Isagi and the others reply that they haven't yet and ask about his team. Ryo tells them that they're going to fight against Isagi's team next. That's the only reason he joined forces with Chigiri and Kunigami. When Nagi sees Ryo, he runs up to him, attempting to give him a high five, excitedly telling him about all the practice he's been doing. But before he can continue, Ryo slaps his hand away, telling him to stop. Ryo coldly reminds him that they're rivals now, thinking to himself that things can never go back to the way they were, as Nagi didn't choose him. Ryo tells Nagi he's going to crush him, determined to pursue his own dream single-mindedly. Both of them, with fierce resolve, continue to believe in their dreams as they brace for their confrontation. In the meeting room, Isagi's team is deciding who to bring in after winning the match, and Nagi suggests that Ryo would be a good choice. Isagi starts freaking out as all of them seem to want different people. Baru mentions that he already knows the kind of soccer he wants to play. Nagi tells them that they don't need to decide now, because if they lose, one of them will end up being chosen by the winning team. Nagi remembers Ryo's words, realizing this must be how Ryo feels now, and he knows he has to accept it and fight him. He recalls the promise the two of them made to win the World Cup, knowing Ryo hasn't forgotten it either. Meanwhile, Ryo's team prepares for their match. Ryo thinks to himself that he's going to shut down Isagi, win this match, and prove to Nagi that he made the wrong choice. He's convinced that once he does that, Nagi will definitely come back to him. As the 3v3 Blue Lock battle begins, the whistle blows and Ryo steps in, single-mindedly determined to crush Nagi. Nagi steels himself, thinking it's time to win. Ryo intercepts Isagi, declaring that Nagi is the treasure he found, and in this match, he's going to take him back. Isagi, fired up, challenges him to try, shouting at Baru to pass the ball. Baru, however, snaps at Isagi, telling him to back off because he'll handle it his own way. Ryo smirks, realizing that the king is never going to pass. He's playing just as Ryo expected. Ryo rushes to take the ball from Baru, commenting that no matter how many talented players Isagi gathers, if he doesn't know how to use them effectively, it's all wasted potential. He notes that the same is true for Nagi. As Chigiri takes control of the ball, Nagi runs in, trying to intercept it, but Chigiri speeds up, taunting him. Ryo observes this, thinking that when it comes to speed, Nagi is simply mediocre. Chigiri successfully scores a goal for Ryo's team. Ryo watches with satisfaction, thinking that Nagi and Baru are clashing, and Isagi has no choice but to act as the intermediary. But Ryo knows that Baru isn't the type to rely on anyone else. As the game restarts, Kunigami manages to steal the ball from Baru, commenting that he's trying too hard to take on everything himself. Kunigami scores another goal for Ryo's team, and Ryo smirks, thinking that it serves Nagi right. Nagi glares at Baru with frustration, while Ryo feels a dark satisfaction, determined that even if Nagi cries or apologizes, he won't forgive him for leaving. The game restarts, and Isagi and Ryo face each other once again. Ryo notices that Isagi seems more focused, using his vision differently. Chigiri then rushes after Nagi. Nagi points out that no matter how fast someone is, humans can't instantly go backwards. And to everyone's surprise, Nagi pulls off a reverse back technique, leaving everyone stunned. Ryo is shocked, realizing that Nagi never used this move when they were playing together. He watches in disbelief as Nagi scores a goal, all while sporting a confident smirk alongside Isagi. Ryo looks at them both, feeling a pang of sadness, silently begging them to stop making those victorious faces. Kunigami asks Ryo if he also thinks Nagi is different from before and is more amazing now. Ryo clenches his teeth, mentioning that he will not accept it, implying that Isagi's influence has caused Nagi to level up. His eyes pop out with anger as he wonders what makes the difference between him and Isagi. Fired up, he thinks he will make Nagi understand that he is far more superior than Isagi. As the game restarts, Ryo faces Isagi and mentions that there is something he can't understand. Why did Nagi choose him, an imbecile who can only make direct shots? Isagi looks at him in shock, telling him to buzz off and questioning how he could even know that. Ryo takes the ball from him, mentioning that he doesn't have weapons like Kunigami or Nagi, and that's the reason he is so focused on winning. By winning, he will repudiate him, asking Isagi in his mind to be on guard against him, thinking that his brain is superior to Isagi's. Ryo is determined to prove himself, thinking that he will make Nagi understand his superiority. In the midst of this, Kunigami scores a goal with his head, causing Ryo to smirk, mentioning that this is how he can win the game and questioning if Nagi understands. Ryo believes that Isagi's speed and physicality are nothing special, and that his ability to use his teammates is likewise unremarkable. If Isagi is split off from Nagi, he is nothing more than a small fry. Suddenly Ryo is stunned as Isagi's aura seems a little different, and Isagi shouts Nagi's name, stating that the two of them will win this game. Nagi agrees with him, and Ryo realizes he hasn't discouraged them enough. Determined, he vows to completely sever their connection. As the game restarts, Ryo is confused as Isagi pretends to pass towards Baru instead of Nagi. Ryo can't understand what Isagi is after. Kunigami makes a move, and Ryo shouts at him, mentioning that he did a good job, as now he and Chigiri will handle Nagi somehow. However, Ryo freaks out as Isagi suddenly returns, leaving him unable to comprehend how. Nagi tells Isagi that he understands him, and Ryo realizes that Isagi has used Baru as bait to create an opportunity for his own goal, devouring his own teammates. Isagi scores, and Ryo wonders if this is Isagi's true nature. The way Isagi is playing right now feels completely different from before, as if he just thought it up and changed his style on the spot. Ryo thinks that Isagi's strength cannot simply be described by saying he's good at soccer. To win, Isagi isn't afraid to destroy himself completely, making him a monster. The talent Ryo lacks is what draws Nagi to Isagi. It's Isagi's light. Nagi asks him to catch up, and Isagi agrees, telling Baru not to get in their way, calling him a loser. Ryo realizes that if he can't keep up with Isagi's awakening, he will just get devoured. Ryo looks tense, thinking that he has to keep it up. Otherwise, things are going to end here, as only those who can keep up have the right to survive in the blue lock. After Nagi scores, both teams have the same score. But before he can take it, Isagi comes in between, anticipating the pass with perfect timing. He slides to kick the ball, but it rolls away just out of his reach. Baru and Chigiri race after it, and Isagi calls out, asking Baru to pass it to him. Baru hesitates, almost shuddering. Ryo is shocked at how precisely Isagi is positioned to demand the pass, urging them to stop. Ryo thinks it's no use, as Baru has already been completely devoured by Isagi's relentless energy. Isagi tells Baru that it was a good pass, calling him a loser and commanding him to move and support his goals. During the break, Chigiri tells his teammates that Isagi was a real badass just now, clearly impressed. Kunigami mentions that the next point will decide the winner of the game. Ryo, catching his breath, tells his teammates that they will not let the others have the ball. They'll score and finish this. He emphasizes that if they lose the ball, they lose the game. Chigiri agrees, suggesting that in that case, they should utilize his speed, as he currently has the highest chance of scoring. Kunigami nods in agreement, and Ryo mentions that if they're betting it all on this last play, then this is their best shot at winning. the final point will decide everything. Ryo, calming his emotions, tells himself to stop being tossed by his feelings. He needs to logically and realistically work out the best move, mentioning that he is superior. He is superior, and he should use his head and trust his skills. He plans to start with the ball and make Chigiri cover a wide distance, disrupting the enemy's formation. Afterward, when they're in disarray, he'll slip behind and increase their odds of scoring. Their methods don't matter anymore, only the results do, and all he cares about is winning, stealing back Nagi, and destroying their light. He will make Isagi see reality, mentally challenging Nagi to give up on the bright future he's holding on to, and he'll smother it with his own hands. As the game restarts, Ryo realizes that Isagi is guarding his pass to Chigiri, with Nagi marking Chigiri closely. They've perfectly anticipated his strategy. He thinks about another move, but the risk of it being stolen is high. They would lose, and they would be devoured. He freaks out, thinking that this can't be happening, as he is the super elite. He tells himself he will defeat Isagi, fighting him one-on-one to pry open the pass route to Chigiri. All he needs is a single moment. The path to Chigiri opens, and Ryo shoots the ball in his direction. He looks at Isagi, thinking that it's his victory, but to his surprise, Nagi intercepts the ball. Isagi tells Ryo it's a nice pass, as they were waiting for it. Ryo is in disbelief as Nagi charges toward the ball, intercepting instead of racing against Chigiri. If Nagi misses, their failure is assured, but the two set up a major gamble. Ryo shouts, urging them to stop, thinking their hope is pointless. There's no way their dreams will come true, and they should accept it, give up, and fail. Suddenly, he remembers his father's words, that he couldn't become a soccer player and that Ryo is destined to be his successor. Ryo is shocked, realizing he has been holding on to those words for so long. Meanwhile, Nagi has found his own dream and has used those words to propel himself forward. As Nagi tries to score, it's so close, and Ryo desperately shouts for a rebound. Isagi tells Baru to go for it. Ryo is stunned as they lose the ball in the worst possible way. Baru is going to pass again, but Ryo can't tell to whom. Baru then performs a chop feint on Kunigami, and everyone is astonished by his new technique. Ryo is floored, realizing that the once hopeless Baru seems to be having an awakening, devouring Isagi and everyone else on the field, letting go of his past life and throwing away his ego. Unlike Isagi, Nagi, and Baru, Ryo realizes he still lacks the courage to let himself be destroyed and reborn. Instead, he's been pretending, acting as if he's figured it all out, saying things like he'll make them face reality and telling Nagi to give up. Right now, he's just trash. Baru scores the goal and Isagi smirks. Nagi welcomes Baru back, calling him king, and Baru shouts in triumph and anger. Ryo stands there, utterly defeated, feeling that right now, he just wants to disappear. Now Isagi's team wins the game. Nagi looks at his teammates, asking them who they should choose. Baru replies that he wants number 50 Kunigami. As with him, they'd have more opportunities on the front line, allowing Baru to score more goals with Kunigami's presence. Nagi tells him he's wrong, arguing that Ryo would be a better choice. With Ryo as an anchor, he could set up shots, balance out the defense, and ultimately be the best choice for allowing all three of them to play as they want. Baru sighs, conceding that Nagi has a point. Then Isagi speaks up, mentioning that he wants someone who will push all three of them to greater heights. He looks at Chigiri, smirking, and says that he's the only one who wouldn't disappear in this chemical reaction. Chigiri looks at him, stunned. Ryo watches this exchange in shock when Nagi approaches him, mentioning that his last play was only possible because he was up against him. Nagi tells Ryo he has amazing abilities, and that he trusted him enough to gamble on the possibility of making a pass in such an impossible situation. Nagi admits it could have gone either way, and that Ryo is truly impressive. But he continues, telling Ryo that he's moving forward now, though he believes they'll meet again. Ryo smirks, saying that if that's the case, Nagi should just pick him. Ryo insists that he doesn't need Nagi's reassurance, and that he should just say what he means without caring about him. At this moment, Nagi feels a sense of disgust, while Ryo continues, mentioning that Nagi has changed. Ryo accuses Nagi of saying things he shouldn't, and asks how he could forget their promise to become the best in the world together. Ryo tells Nagi that if he's going to abandon him, he should just go through with it. But in his mind, the thing he truly wants to tell Nagi is to never give up. Nagi remains calm, asking Ryo if he'd be satisfied if he joined the team now, even though they're not excited about it. He asks Ryo if he thinks becoming the best in the world is that simple, and accuses him of being the one who forgot their promise. Finally, he tells Ryo to forget it, calling him a pain. In his mind, Ryo thanks Nagi, acknowledging that Nagi has finished him off emotionally. Nagi tells Ryo he no longer cares, and Ryo, silently, thanks him again, recognizing that they're both done. As they part ways, Isagi looks at Ryo and tells him he shouldn't aim to be chosen, but should work toward being the one who chooses. Isagi stares at him, questioning his purpose in Blue Lock. Only those capable of becoming the world's best striker can survive in Blue Lock. Kunigami approaches Ryo, telling him that if he takes his eyes off them now, it's over for him. Afterward, both Ryo and Kunigami return to the second round. Meanwhile, Isagi's team qualifies for the fourth stage. Nagi lies on his bed, thinking about Ryo's words, recalling how he changed. But now, Ryo's words about abandoning him and their promise to become the best together echo in his mind. Nagi lies there, frustrated, as he wrestles with these unfamiliar emotions. He can't quite understand what he's feeling, or why Ryo has made things so complicated. Unsure which of them is right, he tells himself he doesn't care, and will deal with it later. As all four of them reach the battlefield, Nagi calls Isagi, asking if he can say something selfish. He wants to battle the number one. Nagi thinks that if he doesn't pursue what's exciting anymore, then leaving Ryo behind would lose its meaning. Right now, he will ignite and let out everything he has. Isagi smirks, asking Bachira to let's go, and as they start the play, the ball is kicked off. Isagi gains control of the ball, thinking that he'll make it count. Bachira smirks, sensing Isagi's determination. Meanwhile, Nagi feels that the ball can only be in a certain position and executes a back kick, which goes to Chigiri, who scores a goal. Bachira and Rin's team are taken aback, realizing that Isagi's team has grown stronger than before. As the game restarts, Rin taunts Isagi, saying they're playing such mediocre soccer that it doesn't move him in the slightest. He kicks off the ball, bringing the score to 1 goal each. Nagi observes Rin, thinking he's really nuts, but he also realizes that the entire opposing team has leveled up and is now moving with sharper, more coordinated plays. As the game resumes, Rin asks Bachira to take the ball to the goal box, and Bachira agrees. Sprinting toward Isagi, he taunts him, before he sends away the pass to Aryu, who heads it, calling it his wild dance, and scores another goal. Isagi and Nagi are stunned, realizing that things are getting intense. Nagi thinks that adding Bachira has sparked new creativity in their team's chemical reaction, and acknowledges that these guys are seriously strong. He reflects that it's a pain that he still feels so unsettled, and he's burning to crush them. As the game restarts, Nagi wonders why he's feeling like this, remembering Ryo's words that he didn't know anything and never truly felt driven. He wonders if he's changed since joining Blue Lock, realizing that the person he was, the one who met Ryo, is gone now. Now, he just wants to get stronger, and even if Ryo isn't there, he wants to be able to fight on his own. But as he pushes himself to reach the ball, Ryo's words echo in his mind, and he momentarily loses focus. Rin catches on to this, and now, as they're facing each other, Nagi is still hearing Ryo's words, shouting in his mind that he's not Ryo's toy, and that he can't go back now. He gives it his all, and everyone watches in shock as he performs a 2-stage feint, followed by a volley shot, and scores. Isagi shudders, asking him if he's some kind of sick god. Nagi, still feeling anger and frustration toward Ryo, apologizes to him in his mind, realizing he really has changed. Soccer now feels so damn good to him, more than he ever thought possible. Both teams are back to an equal score. As Henri watches from the screen, she remarks in amazement that it's crazy seeing both teams going all out, neck and neck with the score tied. She laughs with happiness, marveling at the sheer intensity, commenting that every play in this match is at an incredibly high level. She turns to Ego, asking if he agrees. Ego, however, cuts her off, telling her to shut up, reminding her that this isn't a game she's just watching for fun, as if she were at home. Embarrassed, Henri quickly bows, apologizing, explaining that she couldn't hold back her excitement. Ego then muses, wondering aloud whether the prodigy will wrench things his way or if the genius will sweep the victory away. Henri notes that it's time for the final goal, which will determine the first team to clear the selection. Nagi is laser-focused, thinking that crushing Rin is the ultimate objective. Isagi echoes his thoughts, declaring confidently that they're going to crush Rin's team and prove that the four of them are stronger. Nagi glances over at Bachira, finding it odd that he's so calm in such a heated moment. As the final kick is about to happen, Bachira is caught off guard when Chigiri steals the ball, taunting him for being too slow. Nagi looks at Bachira, telling him that his behavior seems off, asking if he's trying to lose on purpose, questioning if he really thinks that'll help him get chosen. Nagi sharply tells him he's still living in a dreamland, admitting it kind of annoys him. Nagi continues, saying bluntly that he doesn't need him the way he is now, and if they win, he'd rather have Rin on their side. he suspects that Isagi feels the same way. Nagi reflects, feeling a familiar frustration that reminds him of Ryo, of how Ryo always pulled others into his dreams, eventually coming to rely on him. Nagi thinks about how, when Ryo felt betrayed, he lost everything and completely fell apart. It was annoying after Ryo had finally gotten fired up. Now, he realizes he doesn't want weak players on the field, and the energy he felt after his defeat to Isagi is coming back with renewed force. This intensity, he thinks, is what he needs to be reborn through this game. As the whole team is shouting to secure the final goal, Nagi tells them they're going to clinch it with this last play, thinking that no matter what it takes, he will defeat Rin. Isagi surges forward, pushing himself to score, but Rin counters fiercely, his own determination ignited by Isagi. Nagi catches sight of Bachira, whose vibe now feels entirely different. Nagi realizes Bachira is struggling but trying to change, just as he is. Nagi feels drawn to Isagi's light, and it drives him to evolve. Suddenly, Bachira seizes the ball and charges toward the goal, leaving everyone in shock. Nagi tries to block him, but Bachira won't stop, entirely centered and embodying the fire of the field. As Bachira shoots the ball, Isagi comes before the ball, and Isagi shouts out to Bachira, saying that he believed in him. The ball then goes high up into the sky before it falls down to Rin, who scores the last goal of the match. Nagi feels his heat and the spotlight stolen away, realizing how weak he feels in that moment as the other team takes the game-winning goal. The match ends, and the red team claims victory. Isagi grits his teeth, overwhelmed, admitting to himself that this is the first time he's tasted defeat since coming to Blue Lock. Rin approaches, telling Isagi to stay close, saying he'll be the one to witness him becoming the best in the world. Bachira smirks, while Isagi apologizes to his team, saying they were just a step away from defeating the top 3. He adds that the last goal came down to luck and that they didn't fully lose to them. Chigiri interrupts, telling him to save his words, reminding him that Rin chose him, so he should accept it and move on. Baru glares at him, warning that if he keeps looking so down, he'll kill him, and tells him to hurry up and get going. Nagi turns to Isagi, acknowledging that he really was the star of their team, and says that the supporting players are the ones who got the bill. He adds with determination that next time, they'll crush him, and that they'll come back even without him. Isagi challenges them to bring it on, as all 3 of them burn with anger and resolve. Nagi collapses to the ground, frustration washing over him, feeling like he still doesn't have enough. He looks up at his teammates and declares that he's not done yet. He still wants to play soccer, and he promises them that they'll get their revenge. As the 3 of them lie on their beds in their shared room, Nagi thinks about his plant, Choki, wondering if it's doing okay. He remembers asking Gran to take care of it when he left and hopes it's growing well. He thinks maybe Choki will grow really big, thanks to Gran's care, or perhaps because of Ryo's father's corporation's fertilizer. Nagi reflects that he himself has changed bit by bit since coming to Blue Lock. Before, all he did was play games, never truly feeling motivated to do anything. But now, he's fired up, having met so many people, especially Isagi, who pushed him to feel frustration and drive. Now, he's playing soccer to get the chance to face Isagi again, realizing he still has a lot of growth ahead and wants to surpass him. Ryo's words echo in his mind about how much he's changed, asking him how he could forget their promise and throw him aside. Nagi shakes off the thought, deciding he doesn't want to think about Ryo right now, telling himself he doesn't need him anymore. But deep down, he thinks that if they do meet again in Blue Lock, it would be nice to play soccer together once more. Meanwhile, Baru glares at Chigiri, shouting in annoyance for him to put his clothes and towel in the washing machine, instead of leaving them around, and not to leave his toothbrush and other things lying out. He adds that Chigiri should also wash the cup he used. Chigiri, stretching, looks at him and mockingly calls him maid, saying he'll get to it. Baru bristles, demanding how he dares to call him that. Chigiri simply laughs, saying Baru is really a fussy king, the type whose girlfriends all run away after living together. Furious, Baru throws his slipper at Chigiri, but Chigiri easily dodges. Chigiri then comments that he himself gets along surprisingly well with people he likes. Nagi, annoyed by the bickering, asks them both to shut up, thinking that if Isagi were here, he would have handled all of this by now. Baru snaps, asking why Isagi isn't there. Chigiri, stretching, says they're relying too much on Isagi, asking them who Isagi even is to them. Baru declares that, to him, Isagi is the loser he wants to pulverize. Nagi chimes in, saying Isagi is the last boss, and Chigiri adds that he can't let things end after losing to him. But now that Isagi has already moved on to the next stage, he questions how the 2 of them plan to move up from here. Baru defiantly replies that he doesn't care who they fight as long as he can keep advancing, vowing he won't lose again. Chigiri remarks that the last match was against a strong team, and if it weren't for Rin, the three of them could have beaten anyone. Nagi counters, saying it's impossible as they are now. They would still lose to both Rin and Isagi. He points out that no matter how many times they try, there's something they lack, a vital quality holding them back, and asks Baru if he understands. Baru retorts, asking how Nagi plans to solve that by lying down and forgetting. Nagi replies, saying he wants Baru to use his head if he has one, and to actually think if he wants to grow, calling him an idiot. Baru mentions that he can only evolve during an actual game. Chigiri looks at them annoyed, so he decides that's enough for today and says goodnight to them. Suddenly, Zantetsu and Nico enter the room. Chigiri looks at them, asking why they're there. Nico explains that he noticed the hallway was wet and assumed it was because Nagi had been walking around with a wet towel, so he followed the trail. Nagi then asks if they came over for a reunion, to which Baru replies he'll pass. Nico clarifies that's not the reason, mentioning that they actually have someone who wants to meet them. A guy enters the room, asking for Nagi. Nagi looks at him in surprise, asking who he is. He introduces himself as Reiji, and says he's on the same team as Nico and Zantetsu. Reiji says that it might be a bit sudden, but asks if they like fortune-telling. Chigiri responds that he does. Reiji then invites them to play a tarot card reading, explaining that it's his hobby, and that this app he has is fantastic. He suggests it could be a nice change of pace and asks them to relax, have fun, and pick a card. All three of them choose a card, and Reiji begins the reading with Chigiri. Reiji tells Chigiri that he picked the Devil card, which signifies seduction, betrayal, and ruin, warning that there are trials waiting for him. He suggests that the best thing for Chigiri is to interpret it however he wants. He adds that the bomb Chigiri is chained into is on a countdown to destruction, and before that time comes, he should think about what's truly important to him. Then he turns to Baru, calling him Mr. Scary, and tells him he drew the Hanged Man card, which signifies endurance, growth through trials, and training. He warns Baru that an external problem is anticipated, something distressing and uncontrollable. The only way to overcome it will be through endurance, carving his ego in the midst of destruction, which will become the key to a new self. Finally, he turns to Nagi, revealing that his card is death, symbolizing endings, separation, and game over. Reiji shows Nagi the card, which depicts a one-winged angel at its feet, and asks what he sees. He then replies that it obviously lost one of its wings. Reiji then challenges them, asking if they'd be interested in playing against his team in the next game. Baru, irritated, asks if that was their goal all along, calling out Reiji's nonsense about endurance and accusing him of picking a fight. Reiji grins, admitting that they're right, but reiterating that the fortune does suggest they'll need endurance. When Zantetsu mentions that the one they want is Nagi, everyone agrees. Baru then threatens to kill them, calling them losers. Chigiri chimes in, agreeing that the fortune might be right, saying that they're all in a rough place right now, and having an enemy they all dislike works out well. Reiji then asks Nagi what he thinks. Nagi, irritated, takes the mobile from Reiji, picks a new card, and declares that he'll read Reiji's fortune, saying he's picked the Fool card. Nagi smirks, calling Reiji a dumbass, who's about to get beaten by the one-winged angel. Reiji smiles, acknowledging that sounds pretty good. With that, they settle on their upcoming match. Nagi wonders to himself if he can truly win without Isagi and Ryo by his side, but he knows he's ready to get even stronger. He wants to push himself to new heights. As all of them reach the ground for their 3-on-3 match, Nagi thinks about climbing back up and challenging Isagi. Chigiri kicks off the ball and considers that their strategy is clear and simple. He will challenge Zantetsu with speed, Nagi will challenge Nico with height, and Baru will face Reiji with breakthrough power. By creating these matchups, they aim to face ideal opponents using their strengths, allowing them to secure an early advantage. After that, they can use their numerical advantage to ad-lib a goal. Nico calls Zantetsu for help, and Chigiri is shocked to see both of them covering him now. Before he can reach his top speed, Nico tells him that he won't let him have a speed battle. Zantetsu chimes in, asking Chigiri how he likes this pincer press. Chigiri, realizing that these guys anticipate what he's trying to do, and have come to nullify his strong points. Reiji smirks as he takes the ball from Chigiri, asking if he knows that the foundation of fortune-telling is statistics. He further explains that by analyzing personality traits and movement patterns through large amounts of data from someone's history, he can use probability to predict their future. Hitting the ball forward, he states that no matter what type of person it is, by applying their personality to the accumulated data, he can narrow down their possible future outcomes. He even suggests that prodigies are nothing more than another pattern. He smirks at Nagi, telling him to see that he's the type who snaps at times like this. Nagi's eyes widen as he contemplates who Reiji thinks he is when Chigiri warns them that the ponytail boy isn't bluffing. The ball then goes towards Zantetsu, who takes it and scores the first goal of the match with ease. Baru, Nagi, and Chigiri are visibly annoyed by this. However, Baru then snaps back and tells them that they will win. The match then restarts and Baru goes up against Zantetsu. He tries to make a chop feint to get behind him. However, he realizes that Zantetsu predicted his chop and turned his charging power into a battle of speed. Reiji takes the ball, admitting that his brain has frozen up. Nico notes that this is a piece of cake without Isagi or Ryo around. They only have individual skills, making their plays easy to dismantle. Reiji smirks, confirming that with this, they can sneak through the gaps in their wobbly formation. But Nagi intervenes, questioning Reiji if he thinks it can be so easily fortune-told, telling him not to think he can win just with his brain. Reiji smiles, informing Nagi that he is wrong and that he has his own weapon too. Nagi is shocked, contemplating if it's a running trap, but he can't understand it as the ball is still up in the air. Reiji explains that meeting a natural intuitive prodigy like him and crushing him with logic feels fantastic. He pats Nagi on the head as he makes the goal, telling him he's a smart but nasty deputy director type. Nagi is stunned as they score their second goal, leaving his team at 0. Nagi ponders that such a rational playstyle resembles Isagi's, thinking that Reiji's weapon is trapping, which means he is like him, but essentially, his abilities are a hybrid of himself and Isagi. He wonders what Ryo or Isagi would do at a time like this. Chigiri tells Nagi that at this rate, they will lose the match, to which Nagi agrees, expressing his desire to win. Chigiri advises him that they've been thinking too much about their strong points, insisting that nothing will change unless they alter their way of thinking. Nagi acknowledges this, noting that no one wants to contemplate their weak points. Chigiri encourages him to use their brains too, suggesting they try a weak point framework. Nagi asks him what that means, and Chigiri explains that he's heard about it before. For example, he says, if someone doesn't like spicy food, there are many varieties, like curry, kimchi, wasabi, or spicy polak roe. He realizes it's not all spicy food that he dislikes, he just doesn't like chili peppers. This shift in thinking leads him to the essence of the problem. Nagi finds this a good point, noting that people analyze things they like, but rarely ponder what they dislike because they don't like them. Chigiri affirms this is the essence of a weak point framework. If they think this way and determine the limits of their soccer weaknesses, he believes they can overcome them. Baru turns his face, urging Chigiri to do it by himself. Nagi adds in, as he calls it a pain. Chigiri thinks that unless one of the three overcomes their weaknesses, they won't have a breakthrough. If they can't do it, then it will all just end there. As the game restarts, Chigiri anticipates that Zantetsu will come to cut off his speed, and then Nico will be waiting behind him to ambush him, reading his movements to crush him when he tries to break past. He realizes he won't be able to fight one-on-one at top speed as he desires. For him to consider his weak point, he reflects on times when he can't reach his top speed or finds himself in a 2-on-1 situation. He realizes he needs to refine his understanding of his weaknesses to go deeper and deeper. On the other side, Baru is also grappling with his weak points, thinking that he hates considering them, as if his charging dribble style doesn't work. Reiji smiles at him, noting that the Naked Emperor is so obstinate. Zantetsu gets the ball from Baru and it lands towards Nico, who tells Baru that his greatest weakness is his personality. Even if Baru understands that, it's not something he can fix. Baru looks at Nico, shocked. However, just then, something clicks for both Chigiri and Baru. As Reiji stops Nagi, he declares that Nagi's greatest weak point is that he is a prodigy, and therefore ignorant. Nagi's eyes pop wide open when Reiji goes on to explain that Nagi doesn't know enough about soccer, offering to educate him if he loses and joins them. As Reiji scores a goal, Chigiri tells Nagi that they won't give up, and Baru agrees, urging him to fight, stating that it's time to overcome their weaknesses. Zantetsu asks his team members if they have figured out how to return from the drink of death, to which Nico corrects him, asking if he means the brink of death. Reiji, smiling confidently, tells them that there's no way big data and statistics can be overturned that easily, and he proposes they mercilessly sink their trio of fools. As the game restarts, Nico is shocked to see Chigiri running straight into a crowded area instead of taking advantage of the wide open spaces where he typically excels. Nico wonders what Chigiri is thinking, and Chigiri explains that since they won't let him run freely anyway, he'll draw them all in and face his weakness head on. Nico is stunned by this jungle jam approach and Zantetsu admits he didn't expect something like this from Chigiri. Nico asks Chigiri if he's thought this through, realizing that Chigiri's speed is a threat to them, so he's trying to lure them into the center, clustering everyone and opening up both sides. Nagi seizes the moment, taking control of the ball and calling Chigiri's move a nice bait and switch, playfully referring to him as the princess in distress. Nico thinks that now Nagi and Baru have more freedom to move and shouts to Zantetsu, telling him they're good here so he should go. Zantetsu, ready to race, runs after Nagi, but Nagi dismisses him with a wave, saying goodbye. As Baru takes control of the ball, Reiji realizes that Chigiri has turned his weakness into a strength by confronting it head-on. He urges Baru to show how he, as the king, overcomes his own weaknesses. Baru, sighing in frustration, kicks the ball decisively. Reiji is shocked that Baru made the pass, and as Chigiri takes the ball, Baru remarks to Reiji that he thought his weakness was his personality, playfully calling Reiji a fortune-telling fraud. Baru declares that he isn't easily contained by big data, boldly stating that he's the most unexpected mutant in human history. Reiji cautions Baru not to look at him that way, implying that Baru just chickened out and passed. Baru, now angry, admits he doesn't want to pass. His insides are churning, and every cell in his body is furious, pushing him closer to the edge of a meltdown. He insists that he will only pass as long as it's not to Isagi, adding that he's currently at rock bottom. Reiji is taken aback, as Baru grits his teeth and proclaims that if he can return and defeat Isagi in the future, then passing is no big deal. He feels that this approach eliminates any weaknesses he might have. Reiji reflects that Baru resembles a nomadic lion that has lost its throne, abandoning his pride in pursuit of reclaiming his position as the starving, counter-attacking king of beasts. On the other side of the field, Chigiri prepares to break through their defense, urging the king to join him. Together, they unleash a powerful combo, and as Baru kicks the ball over to Chigiri, Chigiri gets the ball and scores with ease. However, it doesn't just stop there, as almost right away afterwards, Baru scores one goal for himself, and then Chigiri scores another one, which makes it so that the scores are tied again. Nico reflects on his earlier decisions, contemplating that perhaps he picked the wrong team. Initially, he had assumed he could advance by utilizing his brain, which led him to choose players he could easily collaborate with. He believed they needed enough ego to survive, even if it meant shaming themselves or abandoning their pride. But at this rate, he worries that he'll be destroyed before he can face Isagi. To win and advance in Blue Lock, Baru scores again, and Nagi's team achieves their fourth goal. Reiji urges his teammates to circle around him as they attempt to break through the center. However, Reiji quickly adapts his strategy, deciding that at this point, he can only rely on his own data and mental acuity. Chigiri acknowledges Reiji's skill, but Baru dismisses it, urging Chigiri to crush him. Meanwhile, Reiji plans to demonstrate with one swift move that his data equates to a goal, believing that this will inspire his teammates to regain hope, shift their attitudes, and restore their motivation. He's determined to control them and position himself as the hero by embodying the power of data. However, Nagi intercepts Reiji's advance, leaving Reiji stunned and questioning his own strategy. Nagi taunts him, asserting that his weakness lies in being a prodigy and therefore ignorant. He calls Reiji a tarot liar guy, admitting that while he finds it frustrating, he cannot afford to flaunt his lack of soccer knowledge at this moment. He must focus on overcoming his weaknesses. Chigiri calls for Nagi to pass the ball, but Nagi hesitates, wondering what Isagi would do in this critical moment. Nico shouts that if Nagi scores, it will be over, while Zantetsu mentions that they'll need to hold him back. Nagi reflects that no matter what he does, he keeps thinking about Ryo and Isagi, and he realizes that might be his true weakness. Reiji shouts at his teammates to stop Nagi, insisting that there's no data indicating Nagi can break through alone. Nagi, comparing Reiji's intelligence to Isagi's, recognizes a vital difference. Reiji employs data to control others, forcing them into his own viewpoint, while Isagi believes in people enough to transcend that approach. Ryo had also believed in someone as unpredictable as him when no one else did. Until now, someone was always there to believe in him, but now he feels isolated. So, from now on, he resolves to believe in himself. Reiji, recognizing his approach has failed, declares that Nagi is as good as death for defying data. But Nagi scores, thinking that even without Isagi and Ryo, he can fight on his own and overcome his weaknesses. Team Red wins the game. Nagi reflects that he has overcome his weakness, but Chigiri jumps on him, playfully arguing that he hasn't truly overcome his weakness and merely forced that goal through with talent. However, Chigiri concedes that it's fine by him. Nagi asks Chigiri if he doesn't think he has grown stronger mentally in his own way. Baru interjects, claiming that mental strength simply meant getting defiant, and Nagi isn't going to change that easily. When Nagi replies that Baru himself has also just become defiant, Baru becomes angry, asserting that he is growing while Nagi is stagnating. Chigiri tells them to knock it off since they won, and asks whom they should select next. Nagi says he wants that idiot, and Baru agrees, adding that he wants a fast guy they can use however they want. Chigiri smirks, mentioning that they finally agree on something, and calls out to Zantetsu. Zantetsu looks at them in shock, wondering if they truly chose him, admitting he'd figured they might. Nagi bids farewell to the other team, saying they're moving ahead. On the opposing side, Reiji slams his head against the floor, asking Nico what they were lacking. Was it his fighting or his data? Nico responds that those guys surpassed his data, adding that there's no way someone with such miraculous skill could exist so conveniently, and that's their answer. Nico further reflects that someone with a prodigious talent that defies data will be born here in Blue Lock, and they misjudged that, becoming the Joker. He tells Reiji that unless they change their core thinking, they won't be able to advance further. Nico encourages Reiji to become an egoist who defies conventional wisdom, asking what's wrong with being foolish, and declaring that he'll be reborn as a fool from here on out. Meanwhile, Chigiri excitedly shouts that they're back in the 4x4 room. Baru agrees, stating that they're here for revenge, and adding that this time, they'll win and clear the second selection. Zantetsu, curious, asks if they have lost here before. Nagi explains that they had Isagi on their team, but they lost, allowing Rin's team to advance and sending them back. Zantetsu is stunned, realizing that Isagi was with them, and yet they lost, concluding that Rin must be incredible. Zantetsu remarks that this is their second attempt, to which Chigiri asserts that this time, they'll win. Zantetsu then asks who their next opponents should be, and Chigiri suggests picking small fries, as losing again would be tough to recover from. Zantetsu rebuffs this, arguing that anyone who made it to this round can't be considered a small fry. Baru concedes, adding that while that's true, no one here compares to Rin. Baru doesn't care, confident that after overcoming their weaknesses, they'll succeed this time. Nagi, reflecting on his own development, notes that he won't face an opponent who pushes him if he doesn't keep growing. Zantetsu notices the change in Nagi's demeanor, exclaiming that he seems different. Nagi asks if it's odd, to which Zantetsu replies that it's actually cool, and Nagi thanks him. Later, Nagi heads to the training grounds, contemplating how Reiji's moves had impressed him. Although he'd been copying them, he realizes that's just Reiji's way of using his body. He's now determined to find his own movement style that feels right for him. Nagi reflects that he can fight on his own without relying on Ryo or Isagi, and feels a desire to develop both a body and mindset that will let him play independently. He wants to deepen his understanding of soccer, gain techniques to challenge Rin, and leave a lasting mark. He feels an intense longing for a new weapon, a skill he can rely on when he's alone on the field. Suddenly a stranger appears, startling Nagi, and he wonders why such a pipsqueak is there. The newcomer calls Nagi a white-haired beanpole and orders him to move, accusing him of hogging the room. Bewildered, Nagi questions if this is some kind of mugging, as the stranger seems like a delinquent, and wonders what's with this tiny extortionist. They start battling, and Nagi is stunned by the boy's nimble moves. The stranger challenges Nagi to leave if he loses, and Nagi replies that it's his line. Both of them charge, with Nagi attempting to take the ball. However, when the stranger strikes, Nagi is shocked, noticing that even on all fours, the boy doesn't falter. Nagi realizes that although small, the boy has remarkable strength, and the stranger scores a goal. Suddenly, another guy enters, addressing the small one as Kiora and asking what he's doing in this room. The newcomer explains that they actually reserved the practice room next door. Kiora looks embarrassed and steps aside, while the newcomer apologizes to Nagi and hands him the ball. He mentions that Kiora tends to jump to conclusions. The guy, however, smirks and suddenly kicks the ball at Nagi, who is surprised by his boldness. He laughs, taunting Nagi, and notes that he looked frightened. Nagi is taken aback by his brashness, especially as he reveals his split tongue. Just then, another person smacks him from behind, calling him Himizu and asking what he's doing picking on weaker players, calling it something only a weakling would do. The newcomers introduce themselves as Karasu and Otoya. Himizu points a finger at Nagi, claiming Nagi started the confrontation, which Nagi internally denies, thinking Himizu is lying. Karasu approaches Nagi and apologizes for his friend's rude behavior, explaining that his friends are jerks, but adds that if Nagi lost to Kiora, he must really be a bungler. Nagi is speechless, struggling to understand the audacity of these players. They suddenly start to leave, saying that they should return to their practice as they're only one win away from clearing the selection and have no time to mess with hopeless losers like him. Determined, Nagi thinks to himself that he wants to crush them. Calling after them, he tells them that he's been searching for opponents who make him feel excited. He challenges them, calling them delinquent punks, and demands a match to prove himself and show that he's capable of fighting anyone who tries to mess with him. Kunigami asks Ryo if he's okay, and Ryo reassures him that he is fine. Inwardly, Ryo is struck by Kunigami's fiery spirit and kindness. Despite his own defeat, Kunigami remains determined to encourage Ryo, helping him face the challenges ahead. Ryo reflects on Kunigami's character and decides that it's time for him to make a change as well, to toughen up and find his own path forward. As they approach the gate to the second stage, Ryo is surprised by what he sees. Several players are gathered near the gate, and Kunigami, curious, asks them what's going on. One of the players explains that beyond the gate lies the 2 versus 2 matching room, but warns them that a freak is inside going wild. He adds that if anyone dares to refuse to play with this guy, they risk getting socked in the face. Concerned, Kunigami questions them further, asking if they're okay. One player clarifies that there's still someone inside, a high scorer from the first selection stage named Shidu. He then addresses another player, Igarashi, telling him that since everyone else has left, they should probably do the same. Igarashi, looking distressed, begs to be released as he feels like his head is about to split from the pain. Ryo, observing this scene with shock, wonders what could possibly be wrong with this player. When Igarashi is finally freed, he mutters that nobody will want to team up with Shidu if he's this violent. Igarashi recalls that in a previous match, Shidu attacked the other team so aggressively that he received a red card, leaving their side outnumbered and causing them to lose. Shidu, seemingly unfazed, explains that he couldn't feel his heart pounding the way he wanted, so he tried to ignite it by pushing himself harder. Igarashi, visibly shaken, regrets ever teaming up with Shidu. As Shidu raises his leg to strike him, Kunigami intervenes, blocking him with his arm and telling him to back off, calling him a messed up bastard. Shidu, unfazed, smirks and asks Kunigami if he wants to play soccer with him. Kunigami then turns to Ryo, and Ryo agrees, saying that he won't get stronger by running away from a fight and admitting that he still has unresolved issues of his own. Ryo thinks that in the second selection round, he can win back his confidence and reclaim his dream. As the game begins, Shidu goes towards him, and Ryo is taken aback by his speed. He quickly realizes that Shidu is a high acceleration player, someone who can make explosive moves on the field. Ryo passes the ball to Kunigami, who advises Igarashi to get ready. But then suddenly, Shidu comes and says that Kunigami's movements are too predictable and won't work. Ryo confidently thinks he can read Igarashi's movements, particularly his scissors dribbling, and steal the ball. However, Igarashi leaps onto Ryo, and the system calls a foul against Team White. Ryo, astonished, insists that it wasn't a foul because Igarashi was the one who crashed into him. Rising from the ground, Igarashi tells Ryo not to underestimate someone with a background like his, explaining that his temple upbringing has given him a unique weapon to fight his own battles. He grins and adds that strategically drawing fouls is part of his plan to survive and succeed in Blue Lock. He apologizes with a smirk, revealing that his future depends on his performance here too. As the match restarts, Shidu calls out to Kunigami, addressing him as Hiro-kun. Shidu taunts him, saying that he's not playing the kind of soccer Kunigami knows, but rather treating it as a life or death activity. He kicks the ball to Igarashi, insisting that the field is a canvas of life where his version of soccer has no rules. Then, Shidu performs an impressive maneuver, directing the ball toward Kunigami's goal. Kunigami realizes that the ball is loose, and with the goal behind Shidu, he shouts that such a shot is impossible. Shidu scoffs and asks who decided it was impossible, then makes a bicycle kick and lands the shot. Ryo is left speechless, realizing that Shido has skills comparable to Nagi's individual prowess. Igarashi, thrilled, exclaims that it was an extraordinary superhuman move. Ryo, reeling from the intensity, wonders if there really are people like Shidu in Blue Lock, players whose abilities are demonic and beyond ordinary prodigies like Nagi. Shidu smirks, challenging them to push him even further. Meanwhile, in another part of Blue Lock, Baru argues with Nagi, frustrated that Nagi decided their next opponent without consulting the team. Nagi, drying his hair, tells Baru that he's fine with any opponent, and questions if Baru is afraid of the other team. Baru snaps back, vehemently denying any fear, instead expressing his anger at having choices made for him. Chigiri, observing the scene, asks what's going on, while Zantetsu comments on their unison in conflict. Baru, holding up the others' dirty laundry and toothbrushes, furiously questions who owns the items. Realizing he can't endure much more of this, Baru states that they'll complete this next match so he can be rid of this stressful lifestyle. He declares that he'll determine their formation, warning he'll kill them if they don't follow his lead, and the others reluctantly agree. Baru thinks to himself that he can't afford any more losses, and that it's time for him to reassert his place as king. Chigiri looks down at his leg, praying it won't fail him now, feeling that he's come so far and can continue growing stronger. He tells himself that his right leg can sustain this raging fire within him. Zantetsu resolves to give his all, convinced that if he does, someone incredible might recognize him, as he's grown to appreciate Blue Lock's atmosphere. Finally, Nagi gears up for the upcoming showdown, determined not to hesitate. He feels an intense new drive, resolving that in this match he'll find himself reborn, aiming to reach Asagi's level. As Himizu taunts Nagi, calling him a white-haired beanpole and making fun of his supposedly weak-looking face, his teammates quickly step in, asking Himizu not to go overboard, warning that he'll end up making Nagi cry before the match even begins. Otoya chimes in, half-jokingly questioning if they're all mental weaklings. With the banter heating up, Kiora intervenes, urging everyone to get focused since it's time for the final match. Chigiri, visibly irritated, demands to know who they think looks weak, only for Baru to counter by declaring that every single side of his face looks fierce and that they're going to kill their opponents on the field. Zantetsu, realizing he's missed his cue for the final match, nervously asks Otoya if he wants to jump in with him, but Himizu stops him, questioning where his loyalty really lies. Nagi, sensing the energy, rallies his team, declaring that they're going to win and dominate this final match, fueled by a new fire within him. Karasu, smiling in response, challenges Nagi to bring his best. With that, the second selection rivalry battle, a high-stakes 4v4 match, kicks off, and the ball is launched into play. As the game unfolds, Chigiri quickly assesses their team's formation. With Baru and Nagi positioned at the top, their basic tactic is for Zantetsu and him to cut in from both sides, moving the ball with swift, high-speed passes and charging directly into the center. The aim is to deliver the ball to their twin strikers up front. This approach forms the foundation of their Quartet Raid rapid attack system. Nagi signals for Baru to come forward, but Baru, holding the ball, coldly tells him to drop dead left wing. Both Nagi and Chigiri look on, shocked. Nagi had expected a pass. However, Baru continues to run, and he mutters that he's learned from the last match that even if he passes to those jerks, they never bother passing back. Observing his frustration, Nagi realizes that Baru is sulking, while Chigiri grins, almost apologetically, as Zantetsu calls Baru the mentally weak king. Smirking, Karasu notes that their opponents seem to have hit a gridlock and dares Baru to take a shot. Annoyed, Baru challenges him right back, daring him to stop him. As Baru attempts a powerful kick towards the goal, Otoya compliments his strength, but Kiora intercepts, remarking that he successfully limited Baru's options. Karasu agrees, acknowledging that he anticipated Baru's shot, which made it much easier to counter. Now, he signals it's their time to launch a counterattack, and his teammates all get into position. Kiora sprints down the field toward Nagi, and Himizu playfully asks Kiora to pass, adding a "pretty please." When Kiora passes, Baru steps forward, saying he won't allow it. Yet Otoya uses Baru as a decoy to slip behind him, catching him completely off guard. Otoya takes the shot, even surprising his own teammates with his rapid move. Zantetsu, still stunned, labels it a meat shield technique, but manages to intercept just in time, signaling it's their turn to counter the counterattack. He passes the ball to Nagi. Chigiri then reassures his team that if he can't break through the center, the sideline is his domain. As Chigiri speeds forward, Himizu blocks his path, commenting on his incredible speed. Chigiri thinks to himself that since his direct route is cut off, he'll have to maneuver around him. However, to Chigiri's shock, Himizu matches his feint perfectly. Himizu cheers Chigiri on, taunting that his main strength has been shut down, leaving him powerless. Growing frustrated, Chigiri realizes that Himizu's timing is spot on, almost as if he's reading his every move. He decides to force his way to the goal box by trying to pass to Zantetsu instead, only for Karasu to intercept, thanking Chigiri sarcastically. With a smirk, Karasu comments that desperate weaklings are easy prey for the strong. That's just the way the world works. At that moment, Nagi appears, exuding a dark, intense aura. He confidently tells Karasu he's wrong, mockingly calling him Cocky Crow-san. Karasu, taken aback, watches as Nagi deftly outmaneuvers him and prepares to shoot. Nagi then performs a breakdancing shot, scoring a stunning goal. The opposing team stands in shock at Nagi's incredible skill. Even Nagi is surprised at his own feat, realizing he anticipated the enemy's moves and positioned himself accordingly, all on instinct. For the first time, he feels he's playing soccer with his own mind, marveling at how he did it and wondering if he can replicate it. But no matter how, he did it, and he feels more energized than ever, pondering if he really is a soccer prodigy after all. Karasu, however, smirks and advises Nagi not to be so proud just yet, hinting that this match is far from over. Nagi wonders if he truly is a prodigy, recalling the words of Ryo and Isagi and thinking it's time to confirm their meaning. Chigiri praises Nagi for his goal, and Zantetsu confidently states that they'll be the first to reach 5 points. Himizu congratulates Nagi, while Kiora playfully suggests that his teammates join him for a dance battle. But Karasu remains focused, determined to crush the prodigy that is Nagi. As the game restarts, Nagi is surprised by Otoya's high-speed infiltration. Chigiri warns Zantetsu that Himizu's preparing to pass, and as Otoya heads toward the net, Chigiri steps in to intercept him. Nagi watches, realizing that Himizu is passing with purpose, and then looks over to Karasu and calls him Mr. Kanzai. Karasu smirks and replies that he's here for Osaka, not Kanzai, then stops Nagi's advance. Nagi is amazed at Karasu's positioning as he skillfully uses his hands to prevent Nagi from closing the distance. Karasu slips past, mentioning he has no intention of harming anyone unnecessarily. Nagi marvels at Karasu's skills, realizing Karasu hadn't shown his true nature before. Karasu, someone who is deeply moved by ordinary things and feels pain from ordinary things, understands his own mediocrity and wants to hide it. To protect himself, Karasu has developed a habit of analyzing those around him, spotting weaknesses to keep others from discovering his true nature. Karasu respects the exceptional, individuals with unique sensibilities, brilliant plays, intelligence, or ruthless ambition. Meanwhile, Otoya lives life with a relaxed approach, rolling with each situation. He never lingers on the unpleasant. Instead, he replaces it with something fun, finding worry pointless. For him, overthinking is a waste of energy on things beyond his control. He enjoys focusing on what makes him feel cool and popular, aiming to be the best in his own carefree style. When Karasu and Otoya first met during Blue Lock's entry exam, they immediately recognized something in each other. To Karasu, Otoya's calculated approach and cool confidence are impressive. To Otoya, Karasu's straightforward, what you see is what you get nature feels refreshing, sparing him from guessing games. Their synergy is strong, with Karasu's control in the midfield paired with Otoya's ability to slip through defenders and attack from the center. Together, they complement each other's styles perfectly, creating a dynamic partnership that enables them to thrive within Blue Lock. Karasu then asks Otoya to form a team with him, one without passionate promises or cold betrayals. Yet Karasu feels that Otoya can still weave right through them, moving with a grace that makes him hard to read, as if his shadow is steeping in mystery. Otoya remarks to Zantetsu and Chigiri that there's more than one kind of speed. Nagi observes, realizing that if Chigiri and Zantetsu's speed is a straight-line type driven by raw leg strength and ideal for open spaces, then this ninja guy's speed is a curved line type, weaving through narrow spaces with agile and delicate footwork. However then, out of nowhere, an irritated Baru comes and screams at Karasu, telling him that he can't pass if he's crushed and calls Karasu spiky-headed tool. But Karasu, unfazed, calls him mediocre. Nagi reflects that, despite everything, in pass accuracy, shot success rate, and cooperation, the reason Otoya and Karasu are so effective in Blue Lock is because both of them truly know themselves and don't rely on anyone else. They are both self-reliant egoists. As Chigiri and Zantetsu attempt to stop Otoya, they can't keep up with his speed, and Otoya scores, bringing both teams to an equal score. Nagi's eyes widen, thinking that Otoya and Karasu's teamwork is on another level. Unlike his and Ryo's coordination, which relies on spur-of-the-moment inspiration, their partnership is built on a mature synergy, each knowing exactly how to elevate the other's abilities. Karasu smirks at Nagi, mentioning that those who casually refer to themselves as prodigies aren't the real deal. Otoya agrees. Nagi then asks if they were friends before coming here. Karasu corrects him, saying that their interests are simply aligned, while Otoya describes their partnership as one of convenience. Nagi reflects that he's not the only one who came to Blue Lock, met someone new, and grew stronger as a result. He tells them it's intense, just as Chigiri steps between them, noting that they formed a mutually beneficial relationship. He adds that if he and Nagi were classmates, he doubts they'd get along. Nagi is taken aback as Chigiri grins, also teasing that Zantetsu wouldn't even be in the same school as them, academically speaking. Zantetsu yells, demanding to know if he's being called an idiot. Otoya comments on the discord in the ranks, while Karasu smiles, saying it's too bad. Chigiri smirks, correcting them and explaining that they're mistaken. This partnership works because they've all come together for the sake of this match, and he adds that they still have one powerful combo left. Nagi looks at Chigiri in shock, asking if he really wants to go for it, and Chigiri turns to Zantetsu, asking if he's on board. Zantetsu agrees, saying they can pull it off. Chigiri states that he's fired up, declaring it's time to show their ultimate speed zone and change the game. 12 hours earlier, Zantetsu and Chigiri are thrilled when training together. However, Baru points out that there are still too many attack patterns they need to refine, asking if they really think they'll be able to execute them in tomorrow's match. Nagi nods in agreement, recognizing the challenge in making it their main strategy. Chigiri, however, suggests that this new tactic will be their secret weapon to turn the tide, the Chigiri X Zantetsu projectile. On the opposite side, as Karasu asks his teammates about their strategy, the game kicks off, and Zantetsu takes immediate control of the ball. Otoya is momentarily thrown off, noticing Zantetsu advancing through the center rather than sticking to the side, prompting him to ask Karasu to intercept him. Karasu reassures Otoya, stating that he has Zantetsu in his sights, smirking, and adding that no matter how fast Zantetsu moves, they'll catch him. But Karasu is shocked as Zantetsu and Chigiri abandon their usual positions on the sides, crossing paths in the middle in an unpredictable formation. Zantetsu speeds up with a double wing boost, with Himizu close on his heels, stunned at their impressive speed. Otoya observes, realizing that they're using short-range passes while sprinting at top speed. Karasu urges his team to stay calm, noting that, despite their speed, the passes lack precision and urging them to shave down the pass course to intercept it, rather than trying to match their pace. Chigiri laughs, calling them fools for thinking they need to follow a set passing course. At that moment, the dual activation kicks in. Otoya acknowledges that even if they kick recklessly, Zantetsu and Chigiri have the speed to catch up to it. He admits he can't predict which one will reach the ball next. Nagi thinks to himself that while it's a straightforward tactic, they have the raw speed to pull it off. Zantetsu and Chigiri urge each other to go faster, pushing to their limits. Chigiri notes that this tactic emerged from the fusion of their contrasting speed types, forming a unique hyper-speed combination. Just as they're about to pass, Kiora intercepts, challenging Chigiri. Chigiri quickly tells Zantetsu he'll get to the ball, and Zantetsu encourages him to strike hard. Zantetsu covers him, and Chigiri leaps, using Zantetsu's shoulder for leverage, and successfully scores. The two celebrate their teamwork, shouting in victory. Himizu watches in disbelief, asking aloud how they're supposed to counter that, while Otoya wonders if their green lights are fading to yellow. Karasu, however, remains calm, explaining that although it's a powerful technique, it consumes massive energy, making it a double-edged sword that will wear them down if they overuse it. Nagi praises the two, asking about their stamina and if they can keep it up. Zantetsu jokes that he's on the lactic acid elimination committee, and Chigiri adds that he can still manage a few more attempts. Determined, Karasu tells his teammates it's time to change tactics, warning them not to underestimate the opponents any further. He adds that now it's their turn to retaliate, calling for an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. As the game resumes, Karasu passes to Kiora, urging him to take charge. Nagi quickly covers him, determined not to repeat past mistakes. Kiora grins, challenging Nagi to a dance battle. Nagi evaluates Kiora's strengths, his nimble movements, and perfect balance. He knows that if he takes the bait and charges recklessly, he'll lose. But as Nagi hesitates, Kiora executes a fast switchback, his feet maneuvering the ball so swiftly it's impossible to predict his next move. Kiora shoves Nagi, taunting him, asking if that's all he's got. Nagi, now doubting his ability to match Kiora in a one-on-one, is rattled, even if he knows what's coming. At that moment, Baru appears, telling Nagi to keep the pressure on Kiora, promising he'll crush him. With renewed confidence, Nagi realizes they now have the advantage in a two-on-one situation. But Kiora remains unfazed, teasing Baru by calling him a black-haired gorilla. Kiora then pulls off a flawless twister pass, getting the ball over to Himizu. Both Nagi and Baru are taken aback, unable to fully comprehend Kiora's technique. Himizu takes possession, smirking as he declares it's time for the final dance in front of the goal box. As Chigiri rushes to defend him, Otoya taunts him, noticing that Chigiri's speed has waned. Himizu scans the field, assessing which teammate to pass to, and sees Zantetsu's pace also beginning to drop. Himizu grins, contemplating his options, before sending the ball over to Kiora. Baru tries to block it, declaring he won't let Kiora through, while Nagi insists he'll catch him. Yet, Kiora surprises everyone with a grounded backspin acceleration shot, scoring a goal. Nagi is stunned by Kiora's versatility, realizing he's more than just a skilled dribbler, but a grounded specialist with unparalleled control, balance, and shooting ability, all optimized by his compact build. Karasu points out that they're now tied and declares it's time for the second half. He taunts the opposing team, advising them to start using their brains since they can't solely rely on their physical abilities or sheer force. Baru, annoyed, demands to know who they're calling empty-headed, asserting that they do indeed have brains. Nagi backs him up, admitting they may lack cunning but have imagination. Himizu chuckles at the mention of imagination, challenging them to prove it, as he wonders to himself if they can even imagine that Chigiri is on the verge of breaking down. As Zantetsu and Chigiri work together on the same trick, Karasu shouts at his team members not to charge in and to hold the line. Chigiri is taken aback, realizing that their opponents changed their defensive strategy after just one play. Instead of trying to counter Zantetsu and Chigiri speed with speed, they've decided to draw back, patiently waiting to see what they'll do. To Chigiri, it's a clever move. They've anticipated his and Zantetsu's plan to bypass defenders one-on-one using pure speed, and now they have to break through a solid, unified defense. Nagi steps in, urging Chigiri to use him and his creativity. Chigiri sees Nagi charging the defensive line, sparking a new option. He passes to Nagi, thinking Nagi's height advantage will help him make a lob over the defenders. Karasu critiques the idea, calling it not bad, but mediocre. Nagi, surprised at Karasu's insight and the nickname Crow Guy, realizes that Karasu is sharp and has a solid read on the situation. Still, Nagi believes he can beat him, but just as Nagi moves to attack, Otoya suddenly kicks his leg, causing him to lose control of the ball. Otoya points out that Karasu's move was a last-minute ground-level slide attack. Nagi, watching them, realizes Karasu and Otoya are an incredible defensive duo. He shouts, alerting his teammates to go for the second ball, and Himizu immediately jumps with it, smirking and teasing the others by asking if they're ready for his next move. We then get into his flashback, where it says that Himizu has a unique gift. He can see through lies. When he was a child, his parents' love had faded, but they put on a happy act to keep up appearances. Growing up in this environment taught Himizu to scrutinize people's facial expressions, doubting what he saw, and learning to decode their true feelings. This skill has turned into his source of enjoyment, seeing through the lies people tell, whether they're kind lies, defensive lies, or self-assured ones. Human personalities, he learned, are built on these facades. Chigiri, undeterred, challenges Himizu to bring it on, even calling him forked tongue. Himizu takes control of the ball, calmly stating that Chigiri is lying. Chigiri observes Himizu's movement, thinking he's about to perform a step-over feint, followed by a pass. But as Himizu rolls the ball, Chigiri is surprised. It's actually a rolling feint, and Himizu executes it expertly. Normally, Himizu would have enough distance to avoid him, but this time, he's closer, and Chigiri realizes he can reach the ball. Sensing Chigiri's reaction, Himizu changes direction, executing another feint. Chigiri is thrown off when Nagi intervenes, telling him to stop, warning that chasing Himizu could lead to an injury. This leads Himizu to getting free on the field, and then with ease he scores a goal for his team. Chigiri sighs, apologizing to Nagi, and explaining that, although Himizu wasn't targeting his knee, the maneuver was risky. His stamina is waning, and the feeling in his knee hasn't fully returned, but he insists he can manage a few more sprints. Nagi looks at him in disbelief, and Chigiri counters by asking what's more important, his legs or their shared dream. Nagi is taken aback as Chigiri declares that being concerned about injury isn't a reason to accept defeat. He's committed to beating Isagi and refuses to let it end here. Chigiri knows he can't win if he's too considerate of others, and he's aware that survival in Blue Lock demands living for one's own ego. He doesn't mind pushing himself to the limit for the sake of his dream, so he encourages Nagi to follow whatever fires him up. Nagi, still processing, is interrupted by Baru, who scoffs and calls them naive. He asserts that dreams and good intentions aren't enough to win. If they were, he'd already be the king of the world. He questions whether this game is their last stand to prove themselves, or if they're merely supporting each other's success. Baru bluntly calls them losers who happen to form a team. He raises his voice, demanding they face reality. They're at a disadvantage and nearly out of options. Imagining the bitterness of losing here, Baru urges them to realize that if they lose, they likely won't find a team with more talent or skill. He insists they set aside ideals and fully commit to winning, even if it's uncool. With the score at 2-3, he stresses that despair must fuel their drive to avoid their worst future. Zantetsu, admiring Baru's intensity, finds it cool. Nagi concedes, saying they'll adapt Baru's approach to break through reality. As the game restarts, Zantetsu and Chigiri take off together. Himizu, seeing them, notes it's the same move but with a twist as they split up. Karasu warns his teammates to monitor both sides as Chigiri plans his next steps. He knows he can't keep up a series of full-speed sprints, so he'll use his speed as a diversion, waiting for the right moment. Himizu positions himself, saying he won't allow Chigiri to get past. But Chigiri abruptly stops, deciding to pass to the open far side. Zantetsu, uncertain about the most logical move, decides to give his best effort, even if it seems uncool. He's willing to be a pawn for the sake of the goal. Baru and Zantetsu trade passes. Otoya, surprised, notes that Baru could have taken the shot himself, but chose to set up another play. Zantetsu takes control, noting that such straightforward tasks are his forte. Otoya shouts at his teammates to cover the center, but Nagi steps in, seizing the ball. Nagi, determined to focus solely on winning, sees Kiora anticipating a knee trap and dismissing the possibility of a shot. However, Nagi, choosing to prioritize their worst-case scenario over personal pride, passes to Baru. Baru, feeling the pressure, acknowledges they can pull this off, while Nagi admits it feels wrong but urges Baru to go for it. Nagi understands that this is how underdogs can break through reality and turn the game around. Baru takes the shot and scores, and the team bursts into joyful celebration. Kiora observes that they set aside their individual egos and aligned their goals purely to win. Karasu, recognizing the achievement, suggests they're now even and poised for an exciting final match. This setup, he remarks, is perfect for an epic showdown. Nagi, watching his teammates bask in the victory, reflects on what it means to be part of a team and to win as a unit. Though he understands intellectually, this reality still doesn't fully fire him up. Baru screams that it's on and that they will get the last one. However, Otoya tells him that they are still tied at 3-3. We then see Nagi, who says that this reality doesn't fire him up, and just like that, the match restarts with Karasu being in control of the ball. However, it doesn't stay with him for very long as he passes it to Kiora, who absolutely bodies Nagi. But as he gets behind Nagi, he sees a wild Baru rushing towards him with all that he can, so he's forced to pass to Himizu on his right side, who directly passes it back to Kiora. As the ball is going back towards Kiora, Zantetsu tries to use all of his speed to intercept it, but he falls just short, and Kiora gets off his pass towards Karasu. Karasu starts looking wild as he is in front of the goalkeeper and says that he will take it and that the goal is his, but just as he's about to shoot, Chigiri comes in like a rocket and steals the ball, which shocks Karasu to his core as he realizes that Chigiri isn't going for a goal, but that he's using up all that speed while on defense, thinking that he's almost out of stamina. This leaves Karasu in awe as he thinks that Chigiri killed his own ego. Chigiri then passes the ball to Zantetsu, who tells them to do a super fast counterattack as he runs forward on the field. To stop him, both Himizu and Otoya come, but Zantetsu luckily realizes that it's too much for him as he passes over to Nagi on the left side. Nagi gets the ball, and Kiora is in front of both Nagi and Baru. To try and shake Kiora off him, he fakes a pass towards Baru, while in reality he makes a mid-air feint and instead sends it over to Zantetsu, who has Himizu running after him. But that's nothing for our turbo train, which meets up with the ball and scores, which puts Team Nagi in the lead. All of them are ecstatic, and Baru looks at them and tells them that they just need one more. We then get to Himizu, who's freaking out and says that they are going to lose and asks them what they should do. Karasu then steps forward and apologizes, as he says that his read of things was dead wrong, saying that with all the egoists here in Blue Lock who rely on their own skills, he never expected them to suppress their own egos this much to focus on winning as a team. Himizu, Kiora, and Otoya agree with him. Karasu then starts looking more determined as he explains that thanks to that discovery, he can see a way to win this make-or-break match and asks his team to lend him their extraordinariness. We then see Nagi, who's alone and thinks that at this rate they will win and that it will end without him getting fired up, which makes him doubt if he really needs Isagi around to get fired up. The match then restarts again, and Team Nagi is in total shock as Kiora's team isn't playing like before, as they have the ball, but they're not trying to attack. Baru gets annoyed by this and asks them if they have lost their nerve and tells them to come on. Karasu, on the other hand, thinks to himself that Team Nagi only has enough stamina for one more goal, and by them dodging and passing around the ball, they can save their own stamina while draining theirs, explaining that this is their fortified siege defense formation. Zantetsu finally realizes what they are up to and says that he'll go for it, so he rushes towards Kiora. However, Kiora tells him that it's a bad move as he makes a pass over Zantetsu, which goes to Karasu. Chigiri thinks that he won't let Zantetsu's efforts go in vain and rushes for it. However, Karasu starts taking his arm to block Chigiri and asks him if he's realized that his first step is now a bit slower than at the start of the match, looking furiously at Chigiri, and tells him that he won't make it with that mediocre speed. Chigiri is in shock as he thinks that Karasu is picking up on minuscule changes that he himself hasn't even noticed, and says that his observational abilities are monstrous. Karasu gets behind Chigiri and thinks to himself that it's at times like this where he wishes that he could be a striker hero, and admits that getting heated up doesn't suit him as well as staying cool, because when it comes to facing reality, he's way ahead of them. The ball goes to Himizu, who right away just gives it back to Karasu, who thinks that he'll become an anchor and suppress his ego to control this game, as that's the best way for them to win, saying that Nagi's team made him realize that his cool-headed personality, which keeps him from getting heated at crucial times, and this habit of trying to understand people intellectually. Karasu then manages to hold his own, even when getting pushed back by both Baru and Nagi. He then sends the ball up, and we then right away see Otoya jump over him to get to the ball, and while having one arm on Karasu's shoulder, he manages to score a goal, which makes all of them get extremely hyped as the scores are now tied. Team Nagi looks at them in shock, and Zantetsu asks them what they should do now before he looks over to Chigiri and asks him if he's alright. Chigiri kind of ignores it and says that their strategy won't work anymore and that they need to think of another approach, but Baru cuts in and tells him that there is nothing else and that they have to push through, saying that they will start with the next ball and that they will attack right off the bat and score before they can steal the ball. Chigiri and Zantetsu agree with the plan, but Nagi says no way and that he's sick of this method. Baru gets a bit mad and asks him if he has a better idea, to which he says that he doesn't. Baru then grabs him by his jersey and tells him to get real and that to have an opinion without logic just makes him sound like a whining stray cat. But Nagi doesn't back down as he says that this doesn't feel good and that he'll be bored even if they win. Baru only gets more and more angry at Nagi's comments, but Nagi then tells him that he just saw reality, saying that he thought that maybe the method would let them win, but it didn't work. They tried to face reality and play logically, but if they do that, then they will never win against Karasu. Nagi then grabs Baru's jersey and tells him that they should win with a dream, explaining that all of them want to go towards what fires them up. They want to be the world's coolest. They want to crush their worst future, saying that whether they win or lose, this next goal will be the last time the four of them fight together, and because of that, they should live in a dream as they say goodbye. Nagi then thinks back to Ryo and says that it's thanks to him that he is also someone who can talk about dreams. Anyway, after Nagi's heartfelt speech about dreams, he turns around, and that's when Baru picks up the ball and throws it at Nagi's head, which leaves Zantetsu and Chigiri in awe. Baru asks Nagi why someone like him is talking about getting fired up. Nagi just asks Baru if he wants to go, but Baru then gives in and says that he'll start playing this soccer you can win with dreams. Nagi then begins to walk and thinks that his fire is spreading to others and that everyone else is also changing. And it's kind of funny how Chigiri and Zantetsu's dream is to become the best in the world while Baru just wants to crush Isagi. Anyway, Nagi then turns around and asks them what they should do, which gets Baru angry, as he thought that Nagi had a plan. Chigiri then steps in and says that for now, they should scale down their dreams a bit, asking them what they want to do in this match, for the sake of their dreams. All of them just says that they want to score a goal or win the game, which makes Chigiri adjust the question, as he asks them what they have left undone in this match. Nagi says that in that case, then he wants to beat Kiora in a one-on-one. Baru says that he wants to blow past Karasu, and Zantetsu also want Otoya to eat his dust. This all works out perfectly, as Chigiri wanted to crush Himizu. It then looks like they are doing some sort of ritual, as they says that they will combine their dreams to win and make them all come true. Chigiri says that they will each complete their own objectives and get the ball to the goal, and then the last shot will go to whoever can make it, which they all agree on. Chigiri then continues and says that this is the only sound strategy for a bunch of individualists like them, and then asks Nagi, or Captain as he calls him, how this all sounds, and Nagi says that it all sounds good and that they will crush them with dreams. However, it's not only them who are fired up, as we see Kyora's team looking crazy as they are ready to give them a taste of reality. Before the matches starts, Nagi thinks to himself that he can't lose as he needs to go to Isagi and the fiery place that he still don't know. And with that, the match begins. The ball goes to Nagi, who sees Kiora going for him. Nagi knows that in a close quarters fight he can't visualize a way to beat Kiora. Instead, he makes a spin trap as he gets the ball, followed by a backspin, which goes into a lob pass. However, Kiora is following this closely, as Kiora tells him that he is too naive and tells him that they should get physical, and he tries to bash into Nagi. However, this was Nagi's plan all along, as he uses Kyora's body and slides over him, while coldly telling Kiora that he got the dance battle that he wanted. And then, while being on top of Kiora, he passes the ball. It looks like the ball is heading to Otoya, but suddenly, Zantetsu comes by his side and tells him that he will get to it first. It's an extremely close battle as they are neck and neck, but in the last second, Zantetsu manages to get to the ball first and screams Motocar as he passes to Chigiri. Chigiri gets the ball and announces that he will keep it rolling, but that's when Himizu gets in front of him and calls him a liar and tells him that he's only got one all-out sprint left. Chigiri internally tells him to shut up and that he's going to use it right here and now. He starts to sprint towards the ball, but his chains then appear, and he thinks that if you're too busy thinking about consequences, then dreams never come true. And he says that as he starts sprinting for all that he can, which makes Himizu wonder if he's trying to destroy himself. He even goes as far as trying to drag Chigiri down and get a tactical foul. Chigiri very well knows that if he falls, then their play will stop, but he's still determined not to let his last sprint and this fire go to waste. So with all that he can, he uses his strength to just barely kick over the ball to Baru. Baru gets the ball and compliments Chigiri's work and tells him to rest now. Karasu gets in front of Baru and says that he knows his range. However, Baru doesn't even respond as he gets right to business as he tries to shake off Karasu with a couple of chop feints. Karasu then tries to take his hand on Baru, but Baru slams it away. Suddenly, Nagi comes on his side and screams Baru's name, which makes Karasu look over, and because of that, Baru is able to shoot a shot without him interfering. However, it's sadly not over yet, as Kiora is behind him and jumps up and slightly touches the ball, which makes the ball hit the post and not go into the goal. The ball then falls into the hands of Otoya, who looks fired up and says that it's time to show his final counter ninja technique, and all of them rush towards the goal, which leaves Team Nagi frustrated. But the one who takes it the hardest is Nagi, who says that dreams aren't enough to win, and that only those who have dreamed know the pain of when they don't come true. He then thinks back to Ryo, and says that he now understands how Ryo felt back then as his dream with Nagi was disappearing, and this makes Nagi realize that what he said to Ryo was cruel to him. Just then, however, Baru screams at them all to move back and gives them the last push, which they desperately needed. Nagi also thinks to himself and apologizes to Ryo for being stupid, saying that he needs to see him again and tell him that. But first, he needs to win here, because otherwise, he has no right to see Ryo. Anyway, Team Kiora is swiftly beginning their counterattack, which makes Chigiri worried that if they don't stop them, then they are done for. But suddenly, as he is running, he can feel something in his knee, which makes him stop. He wonders if his dash from earlier pushed his right leg to his limit, and he thinks that at this rate he might seriously break down. However, suddenly he remembers Isagi's words telling him that nobody can achieve their dream if they aren't prepared to fail. We then see Otoya, who passes the ball over to Himizu, who is against Baru, and out of nowhere, he bashes into Himizu's body, who just barely manages to get off the pass towards Karasu. He gets the ball, but he has Zantetsu right on his tail, and he knows that this isn't going to work, so he makes some crazy karate trick and jumps up and passes the ball over to Kiora to finish the job. But just as he gets the ball, Nagi comes rushing towards him and tells him that he will stop him. Kiora tries to get behind him with his quick and nimble moves, but this time, Nagi reads him like a book and bashes into him, which forces him to pass the ball forward to Otoya. They didn't expect that Kiora would be able to get off that pass and is now a bit in shock as they don't know what to do, and Nagi realizes that he's yet again going to sink down. But just then, we see the goat of Blue Lock, Chigiri, sprinting with all that he can, thinking that even if he falls apart, he will run to what fires him up, and with the help of some miracle, he manages to head away the ball from Otoya. However, because of that, he falls down to the ground and rolls on the field. The ball goes up towards the sky, and Karasu tells his team to get the second ball. Chigiri lies on the floor and says that it's really messed up, but that this is as far as he goes. He looks at his team and tells them that they all better score and not waste his leg, because after all the four of them are going to survive and beat Isagi. And I just have to point out that Chigiri looks like a freaking demon as he says that. Anyway, Chigiri's words get all of them pumped up to the max, and Zantetsu catches the ball, and they together then rush forward in their final attack. However, Karasu knows that Chigiri is broken and that they just need to stop this to win. Suddenly, as Zantetsu is running, Himizu comes in his way and tries to tackle him while being prepared for a foul. But even if that were the case, and Zantetsu is beginning to quickly fall to the ground, he's still not going to give up, as he manages to get the ball over to both Nagi and Baru, who are running side by side, and he tells them to take it from here. We then get into Karasu's mind as he thinks that there's a 3-on-2 situation, and they just have to chill out to calmly hunt them down. Both Nagi and Baru are laser focused on beating Isagi after the numerous times he's crushed them, which only makes this attack so much more important. Nagi passes Baru the ball, and Kiora tries to get it from him. However, Baru keeps him at a steady distance before he sends over the pass to Nagi, who's already battling with Otoya. Nagi gets the ball, and as Otoya goes for it, he, like always, takes out his magic tricks as he makes some sort of insane trap before giving the ball back to Baru, who's using all of his strength to get ahead of Kiora. But after Kiora lies Karasu, which leaves Baru in a super sticky situation as he has Karasu in front of him and Kiora behind him. Baru makes a chop feint, and because of that, Kiora tries to go for the ball. However, Baru then makes another feint, which gives him the opportunity to shoot against the goal. Both Karasu and Kiora know that they are in big trouble, but just as Baru looks towards the goal and is about to shoot, a silhouette of Isagi suddenly appears in front of him and calls him a loser. Baru is shocked to see Isagi's phantom, who asks Baru to come on and to fight him. This makes Baru come to his senses as he thinks that he will never surpass Isagi with a simple shot like that. So instead of shooting, he makes a chop feint, which goes into a pass towards Nagi, which leaves both Karasu and Kiora in awe, and Otoya is determined to stop him. Nagi gets the ball and instantly makes a direct heel lift, which Otoya can't even believe, as this is something that he's never seen before. With the hesitation from Otoya, Nagi manages to get behind him, and that's when all of Team Kiora realizes that they've lost. But even though Nagi can finish this match, he isn't going to do it right away as he sees Isagi's silhouette appearing on his side. Isagi looks furiously at Nagi and tells him not to look down on soccer, and Nagi just simply says, "Okay." He then jumps up into the air with the ball practically glued to his feet. Isagi tries to take the ball from Nagi in order to push him even further, but that's when Nagi shoots the ball at the ground and makes it bounce over Isagi. No one on the field can believe what is going on except Baru, who asks Nagi if he also can feel him. As Nagi then gets into shooting position, he says that this fire and the pleasure, those are the things which have led him to getting fired up, as he thinks that, right now, he's the most fired up in the world, and he says that as he shoots a wonder goal towards the net, and thanks to that team, Nagi wins the game. Nagi goes down towards the field again, and Isagi's silhouette is in between both Baru and Nagi. Both of them look at each other, and as Isagi's silhouette starts to disappear, they make an awesome fist bump with each other as they have finally won the game and beaten Isagi's silhouette. We also see Chigiri, who's ecstatic and celebrates on the field alone. Meanwhile, Zantetsu screams and runs over to Nagi and Baru, and Team Kiora is just in pure awe by the fact that they lost. Zantetsu and Nagi head over to Chigiri and ask how his leg is and if he needs a doctor. Chigiri laughs, thanking them for worrying. However, he says that he is fine, and that he just can't move it right now since it's cramping, but then asks Nagi what that last shot was, saying that he could have just shot, but he pointlessly showed off by himself at the end. Nagi tells him that it wasn't pointless, and that it was just the shape of their dreams, which leaves both Chigiri and Zantetsu a bit in shock as they don't know what he is on about. After that, Chigiri gets into the interesting stuff as he asks them who they should pick. Zantetsu says that he votes for Karasu as he is the smartest. Chigiri agrees, saying that they are idiots, so having Karasu would make them complete. Baru, on the other hand, just says that he doesn't care. Just as Chigiri is about to go with Karasu, Nagi from the side tells him no, and that he doesn't want to split up him and Otoya, which leaves everyone confused. However, Nagi explains that they were the most amazing players in this match, and that he wants them to get even stronger so that he can fight against them again. Otoya and Karasu tell him that they don't want their pity, but Nagi says that it's not pity, but instead that if they are frustrated, then they should come and crush him, telling them that it's their privilege as the victor. Chigiri looks a bit scared and asks Nagi who they should pick. He then looks at them and knows exactly who. He thinks back to the time he got crushed by Isagi, and Kiora looks exactly as Nagi did back then, which is why he tells Kiora to come on, and that he is letting him live, asking him if that isn't frustrating, which we very clearly can see is, and just like that, the 5 of them leave. Himizu is angry. Meanwhile, both Karasu and Otoya say that he's a real softie, with Karasu saying that his way of thinking is going to plunge him into despair someday, and the two of them are then determined to make him regret it. We then leave them and go 48 hours earlier, where we see the Ryo and Kunigami match, where Ryo thinks that he can't let it end here. He tries to hold off Igarashi, but he gets off a pass towards Shido, who gets into a fierce battle against Kunigami. Kunigami thinks that he can steal the ball, but that's when Shido rolls over Kunigami's back and tells him that stuff like common sense and justice only exists to get smashed up by Shido himself. And he says that as he makes the most mind-blowing goal and wins the game, Ryo gets down to the floor and calls Shido a monster, saying that he's a different type than Nagi and that he's a demon prodigy. He then starts to reflect and try to figure out what he could have done not to lose. However, it's all meaningless as he can't figure out what he could have done, and Ryo wonders if his time with Nagi and Blue Lock is over. We then get to Igarashi and Shido, where they discuss who to choose, but Shido tells Igarashi that he doesn't care. And just when Igarashi is about to pick Kunigami, Shido suddenly changes his mind and says that he will pick Ryo. He looks over at Kunigami and tells him that his fair and square is keeping his ego locked. He begins to walk and says that humans who can't destroy themselves can never make explosions. Ryo in an instant looks over to Kunigami, and he wants to comfort him as he has always done for him, but he can't figure out what to say. That's when Kunigami tells Ryo to go, thinking to himself that he's just a loser trash. We then get to Nagi and the others who are walking. Baru says that they have made it this far because each of them grew stronger in their own way. After that, they head into the second selection clear room. Baru wonders if Ego is going to make them wait, but that's when he suddenly pops up on the screen and welcomes them. Ego congratulates them on clearing the second selection, telling them that now that they have tasted defeat and climbed back up, he says that he's got a quiz for them, asking them out of all living creatures, what is it that only humans know? Kiora responds with love, Baru says that it's God, and meanwhile, Nagi says that it's dreams. After that, Ego says that even though they aren't totally wrong, there's something even more fundamental. The thing that only humans know out of all living creatures is the reality that they will die someday, explaining that animals know their companions die and can feel pain in their own bodies, but they don't live with the idea that it will happen to them someday, so they instinctually eat, sleep, and create offspring, simply acting out their destined program to carry on life. But humans know that their life is finite and that the end will come for them one day, which is why we create gods to save them from the fear of death, and any interactions beyond pure survival instincts are labeled love. Self-actualization and proof of existence are called dreams. That's an energy that only humans can possess. Ego asks them all to think back to how they managed to claw their way back up through the second selection after losing. Nagi says that it was because death was always close, and Ego says that he is spot on, explaining that this rivalry battle was more intense and urgent than the first selection. It was designed to make them feel the loss of their comrades and their own impending doom. If you got careless, you'd be the next to die. And in order to escape that fear, they were forced to change, adapt, and challenge, telling them that they are now standing here right now because they opened new doors to their egos, telling them not to forget that because they feel the fear of death, and they can grow the energy to actualize their dreams. Ego then encourages them to ask themselves what their dreams for soccer are. Nagi thinks to himself that he definitely got stronger in the second selection. He wasn't just chasing after a dream, but instead, when he was about to lose, he finally learned about his new feelings about Ryo and this fire. With that in mind, he says that now he can even beat Isagi. We then see Ryo, who's showering and says that he can't go on like this, saying that it was pure chance that he got chosen and that someone like him is just dust in the wind, thinking that this is the first time that he's been truly alone. However, this makes him realize that he's weak and that he needs to get stronger on his own. We then get back to Ego, who tells them that it's now time for the third selection, telling them that it will be a training camp with the world's top players, which of course was the 5-on-5 match against the world stars, which makes all of them stunned. And Nagi just thinks that he can test himself against the world and says that he's super hyped. We then change his perspective as we get to Ryo dominating alongside the rat, who makes a couple of 1-2s with each other and gets behind a couple of no-names. Ryo thinks to himself that he still can't say that he's fighting on his own. We then see Shido sneaking behind Sakura. Shido screams at Ryo to pass him. Ryo looks at Shido and says that his movements are perfect and that he hates to admit it. But this is really Shido's team, as Ryo is still not someone who can stand next to Nagi. We then see Ryo passing an outstanding cross to Shido, who shoots an even crazier shot, and just look at this drawing. like the dragon following the ball is completely wild. We then see Shido screaming out of excitement, while Ryo, on the other hand, says that in this second, he just became someone who can win and survive. We then see that Shido's team won with a 5-2 score, which I'm surprised the other team even managed to score goals on them. After that, we get to Nagi's side, where he's in the World All-Stars battle. We see Luna, who tells them to do this, and the other world-class players just agree. Nagi looks at them and thinks that this is really the real deal, and that the fire that made him feel like he was the best in the world, he'll smash it into the world, and just like that, the kickoff began. Zantetsu has the ball first, and Adam goes to stop him. He tells Zantetsu to just try and get past him and calls him a bottle-sucking brat, which is a bit weird, but sure. Zantetsu is sprinting with the ball and thinks that their World All-Stars are really good, as Adam is easily able to match his acceleration. Adam gets the ball away from Zantetsu and passes it to Pablo, who says that it's his turn now. However, Chigiri and Kiora aren't going to let that happen as they go to box him. Pablo notices this and gets out his Metavision eyes and sees Silva on the wing and makes a flawless pass towards him. Even Silva tells him that it was a perfect pass. However, to stop Silva we have Baru, who says that it's enough and calls him an old man. Baru goes to bash into his body. However, he gets a shocked expression on himself after he realizes that Silva didn't even budge an inch after his full power tackle. Silva only starts to smile and asks Baru what's with this wimpy tackle. Silva then gets a super scary expression on himself as he says that he thought that this was the land of sumo, and he then takes his hand on Baru's head and grabs him, which I don't even know if it's legal or not, but I don't think he cares about that. He then passes the ball over to Luna and tells him to score. Luna starts to smile and says that it only leaves Nagi to stop him and tells Nagi to show him what he got. Luna then takes his hand on Nagi's chest and shoves him away before getting closer with the ball and then makes a roulette around Nagi. Nagi is amazed by him, but says that he can still catch him. But Luna then takes out his other arm against Nagi and tells him that pure fire isn't strength. He then reads Nagi's move and stops him, telling Nagi that he is still young. Nagi is mind blown by this as he has never met someone like Luna. Luna then looks at Nagi intensely and tells him to train his heart and mind, calling him a little baby. And with that, Luna then shoots a shot against the goal, which goes in flawlessly. As Nagi is witnessing this, he thinks that Luna is a more skillful and adaptable version of Ryo in every possible way and says that this is a true world star. Loki then comes by and compliments him, saying that it's just what he'd expect from the world's best club, Real. As he says that, everyone else says that he's wrong and that it's them who's the world's best. Luna, clearly enjoying this, tells them to save it for after they've scored. Below them, we see Nagi's team, where everyone looks in disbelief, and Nagi wonders if all of the world stars believe that they're the best in the world, saying that the fire erupting up inside him in the last match, he wonders if they live with that as a fact of life all day around, thinking that this is world class, and in that case, then Nagi is just standing on the starting line to become the world's best. Baru looks irritated as he tells them to rumble. Meanwhile, Zantetsu says that they are just getting started and that they shouldn't let their guard down, and both Kiora and Nagi agree. But suddenly the worst possible thing happens as the future #1 striker of Blue Lock suddenly collapses to his knees. Nagi looks back and wonders if he's okay. Chigiri is on the ground and apologizes that he probably can't go on anymore as it hurts too much. We then see Luna and Pablo going over to him, and Luna asks him if he is okay and wonders if it's a muscle pain or in the bone. Chigiri says that it's in the tendons, and Pablo says that it might be Jumper's knee and asks him if he got injured in the last match. Adam on the side says that this is no good. Meanwhile, Silva tells them to pause the game and calls for the staff. In the middle of it, Nagi speaks up and asks the world stars how they can always feel like the best in the world. However, Luna just looks at him confused as they don't speak the same language. However, to help Nagi, Kiora comes and tells him to leave it to him as he learned some English from dancing. Kiora then tells them that their emotional strength is the best in the world and asks them what sort of egos they have. However, we then, very annoyingly, leave them and get over to Ryo's side, where he is going up against Corona and a bunch of randoms. Like, for real, who the fuck are these guys? Ryo then tells them to go as it's their last rivalry battle, and just like that, the kickoff began, and Ryo rushed forward while telling himself to calculate how to win and that he first needs to input the enemy's abilities. He thinks that number 24 is a total power type. Meanwhile, 25 is tall, but he's clumsy and can only use his right leg, and if that weren't bad enough, then number 35 only matches himself to the others. And because of that, Ryo knows that they aren't the reason that they made it this far, and that the nucleus of their team is the one moving precisely through their blind spots without losing speed, while constantly keeping up with the ball's movement, which is none other than the GOAT, Corona. Ryo knows that he has to stop Corona, and Corona just asks him if he wants to go. Corona then starts with a feint. Ryo then reads Corona like a book, as he says that the sort of showdown that he's good at is once they've closed the distance between them, and as soon as he's close, Corona is going to accelerate into a tight turn, which is exactly what happens as Corona does that, which makes it easy for Ryo to stop him. Even Corona is caught off guard, as he says that Ryo saw through him and calls him brilliant. Igarashi then compliments Ryo. Meanwhile, Sakura says that it's time for a counter. Ryo then thinks to himself that being skillful or fighting for his team won't lead him to scoring goals, thinking that he realized this after he started wanting to fight on his own, and that he's always thought of Nagi and him as a unified strength. However, the goals the two of them produced only happened because of Nagi's talent, and Ryo thinks that he can't make them without him, which is why now that he's alone, he wonders what he can do and what his ego is. Anyway, as he's thinking about all of that, Shido manages to score with Ryo's pass. We then get back to the World Stars, where Luna says that his ego isn't something that you can learn from someone else, and that it's something that he needs to realize himself. For Luna, it's like twisting his heart. Silva says that he wants to make a ton of money so that he can be happy. Pablo says that he just wants to be cute, and Adam says that he wants to do it with tons of women. Luna then asks them intensely if they would ask a bird why it flies, and says that one's ego is the flapping in your heart. Kiora on the side tells Nagi that basically they said that he needs to trust his irrepressible impulses. After that, we get back to Ryo, where all of them are running down the field excited. Ryo has the ball, and he knows that if they press now, then they can win. However, it won't be one of his goals. Shido tells Ryo to pass, but suddenly Ryo's eyes start to fire up. We then once again go over to Nagi, who says that he understands, and that if that's the requirement for becoming a world-class egoist, then in that case, what he wants to trust in is to face the world here and now to shape his destiny with his own goals. We also see that Ryo said the same exact thing. Meanwhile, Luna is surprised that Nagi still wants to go, and Chigiri tells him to go and get them. We then see both Ryo and Nagi looking completely insane as they continue their sentence from before and say that they want to shape their destiny with their own goals and then tear open a path with this surging emotion. Anyway, Ryo gets behind a no-name, and right there, the glorious Corona stands and tells Ryo to wait and that he won't get through him. Ryo tries to act cool in the presence of the mighty Corona and tells him to try and stop him and calls him a braid speeder. After that, the two go towards each other, and Ryo manages to use the move that Corona used on Ryo before to get behind him. This leaves Corona pretty much speechless, as he can't believe that Ryo managed to copy his move perfectly. Corona then looks back towards Ryo and tells him that he is good. As he does that, Ryo also embarrasses another no-name on Corona's team. We then see Ryo, who's completely locked in as he thinks about doing a goal in his own color and that he will win with his own goal. However, we then get over to Nagi, who's right in the match between the World 5, and he rushes forward without thinking twice. We see that he's almost surrounded. Pablo tells him that he won't allow any sneak attacks. Adam tells him to think twice, and Silva says that he will crush him. Nagi tells the world to come on as he makes an awesome backheel pass to Zantetsu. Zantetsu catches the ball, but is really caught off guard by this. However, he looks towards Nagi, and he sees that Nagi is signaling to him. Zantetsu is in shock by this, as he says that Nagi's ego is fine by him, and he calls Nagi selfish Seishiro as he makes a super awesome pass towards him. The pass from Zantetsu lands exactly as Nagi wants it to, and he's able to trap it with his heel, which leaves both Pablo and Adam a bit in awe. But it didn't even stop there, as he then flips the ball over himself, which helps him get behind both of them. But Silva is still standing, and we can clearly see that as he has a big smile on himself as he rushes over to stop Nagi. But too bad for Silva, as Nagi had already accounted for that, as he knows that he has to keep his speed up, and then he traps it with his foot before it goes up to his shoulder, and from there he pushes it forward, and I'm pretty sure that this is the first time we have seen a Nagi shoulder trap, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, Silva can't believe his eyes as Nagi gets behind him, and he can only wonder if Nagi is some sort of acrobat. Nagi's aura is out now, as he thinks that he will smash up the world. We then leave Nagi and get into Ryo, who thinks that he can't get picky about how to score goals, and then tells Igarashi to go with him. Ryo passes Igarashi, and tells him to think of Ryo as Shido. This first leaves Igarashi a bit in shock, but when he looks over and sees how determined Ryo is, he finally realizes that he means business, and after that, He passes the ball to Rio and tells him to go for it, calling him a jack-of-all-trades prince. We then get back to Rio, who now has the ball by his side, and he tells himself to focus only on the goal as he starts getting into his chameleon form. We also see Shido on the side, who's completely mind-blown by this, as he even wonders if it isn't his own move that Rio is using, which it of course is, as we see Rio using the same move Shido used to then score a fantastic goal. The GOAT Corona tried his best to stop it, but he unfortunately couldn't in the end. Rio's eyes lit up as he screamed out of happiness. Meanwhile, we then get back to Nagi, whose eyes are also on fire, and he thinks that he will also smash it in and tells them to eat his goal. But just as he shoots the ball, we can see that Loki is able to just in time block it with his foot. Nagi is completely in awe of this, as he himself even said that he thought that he got past everyone. We then see Loki, whose eyes are also on fire, as he tells Nagi that he was too slow with a smirk on his face. Loki gets the ball, and Nagi only thinks that Loki's speed is too fast, and he calls it inhuman speed. Loki stomps the ball down and says that Nagi is picking a fight with them on his own, and asks if he isn't afraid of anything. Luna adds in and says that he is the same as Loki, and says that Loki looks down on them. Loki tries to disagree and says that he respects them and that they were all amazing until he showed up. Pablo says that Loki is really looking down on them. Adam calls him a jackass. Meanwhile, Silva just starts laughing and says that it's what he likes about Loki. We then get back to Nagi, who thinks that Loki rushed in from outside his field of vision and calls him a monster. Loki then speaks up and says that maybe he and Nagi are the same, saying that they are blessed with talent and not afraid of anything. But to put it another way, he tells Nagi that when you learn fear, it will destroy him. Both of them just stare at each other, as Nagi then tells Rio to hurry up, as the world has so many unexpected creatures. We then get to Rio's side again, as they have just won the game. Igarashi rushes to him and says that they won. He quickly grabs onto Rio and says that it was one hell of a shot and tells him, "Nice going." Rio looks a bit annoyed, but says thanks. Igarashi asks Rio why he didn't tell them that he was hiding that weapon. Rio is just confused and asks what weapon he's talking about. He starts playing with his hair and says that he just copied what Shido did before, and says that he'll never catch up to the prodigies like this. Igarashi gets a bit caught off guard and just says, "Gotcha." Shido then thinks to himself that Rio doesn't realize that his copying ability is his rare talent. Rio then asks them who they are picking. Igarashi has a big smile as he says that they should pick Corona, as he was the coolest. Rio agrees and tells Corona to join them. Corona then thanks them. He's probably glad to leave his team of no-names. After that, Shido calls out to Rio and tells him not to misjudge his explosion and calls him Mr. Chameleon. But Rio just looks at him confused, and Igarashi then says that Team Brink of Death broke through in the end, and we then see that they cleared the second selection. We then get back to Nagi's side, where the players are having language study. We then see Zantetsu just being completely stupid, like always. He then starts to annoy Baru, who doesn't take any of his nonsense. After that, Kiora, Chigiri, Baru, and Zantetsu all start to friendly argue with each other. Meanwhile, Nagi is lying on his bed and thinks that everybody's so loud and that studying is such a pain. He thinks that when he sees Rio, he wonders what they should talk about first. He thinks that he might mention the amazing guys they fought, or how much he's changed since they met, or of course if he should apologize for the mean things he told Rio before. Just as he is thinking, Kiora interrupts him and tells him what Loki told him in the end, the thing about when Nagi learns fear, he will break. Nagi is a bit confused, but he thanks Kiora and thinks about what he is afraid of. He thinks that it might be that he'll never beat Isagi, but he says that it will be fine, as he could just chase after that goal forever. As he is continuing to think, the TV suddenly goes off, and the announcer says that the second selection has just concluded, and they now have all the players who will proceed to the third selection. He then tells everyone to please put on their scrimmage uniforms and gather in the central joint room. Zantetsu asks Chigiri how his knee is, but he says that it's just fine. Suddenly, however, Nagi thinks of something that he is scared of, which is that this fire will disappear, saying that Rio brought him along and he chased after Isagi and won his way back up here with these guys, thinking that Soccer and Blue Lock keep showing him new versions of himself, thinking that he wants to stay inside this fire forever and that he wants to stay excited forever, which, yeah, we know what happened to that. Anyway, the five of them walk into the room, and they all have a really dope aura around themselves, as Nagi again says that he never wants to wake up from this dream, and that he wants to stay fired up. We then see that Nagi and Isagi spot each other, and Nagi has fire in his eyes as he says hello to Isagi. We see Rio tying his shoes. He then looks up and says that he's sure that Nagi is just ahead. As he looks up, he also sees Igarashi, Sakura, and Corona before him. Anyway, back to Ryo, who thinks that his abilities still aren't on Nagi's level, thinking that even if they are reunited, he can't just rely simply on Nagi's talent. Ryo starts to walk forward while thinking that until he can become someone who can catch up and stand by Nagi's side as his partner, until they can become a strong duo that once again dreams of being the world's best. We then get to Nagi's side, who has just entered the third selection joint room alongside Chigiri, Zantetsu, Baru, and Kiora. Isagi looks a bit shocked, but Nagi just says, "Hello." Baru confidently says that he's here and calls Isagi a loser. Meanwhile, Chigiri smiles and says that it's been about 1,000,000 years. Bachira looks super happy to see them, as he even starts to wave. Aryu also comments that they came after all. Isagi then finally speaks up as he looks happy to see them. Nagi then asks him why he looks so relieved, and asks Isagi if he really thought that he wouldn't make it. Isagi tries to tell them that it's not like that, but Baru says that he's looking down on them, and Chigiri says that he's treating them like his supporting characters. However, Isagi reassures them that he's just happy to see them all again. Nagi thinks to himself that it's cool that he can say something like that, before he tells him that of course he would meet them again, and he tells Isagi that he won't stop playing football until he has beaten Isagi. Baru also says that he's gonna kill him, and that he still hasn't beaten the top 3 either. Chigiri is just cool as always, as he says that he guesses that it's just a fated reunion, and Isagi agrees, telling them to have another good fight. Suddenly, the announcer goes off and says that the next team will start to enter, and there we see Yukimiya, Himizu, Yuzu, Karasu, and Otoya. Chigiri is a bit surprised, while Nagi says that they made it and calls them the ultimate duo. After that, the next team enters, and there we can see Reiji, Shizuka, Nanase, Akira, and another no-name. Baru looks annoyed at Reiji and asks what he's still doing around here. Meanwhile, Nagi and Chigiri have forgotten who that even is. Anyway, we quickly move on to Ishikari, Nico, Hiyori, and Saramadara, who comes after Nico. Nico looks super cold, and Isagi looks super hyped as he screams his name. Nagi looks in shock and says that the ones who have gotten stronger have all won their way to the top. We then get to the 6th team, who legit falls into the room as Gagamaru, Raichi, and Wanima couldn't stop arguing. Isagi is super happy to see them, and Bachira says that they haven't changed a bit. Meanwhile, Chigiri looks nervous and says that there's only one team left. Nagi agrees and says that Kunigami and Ryo aren't here yet. But we don't have to wait for long as we see the last team enter, and we can clearly see Igarashi, Corona, and Sakura. We can also see how surprised everyone looks as Igarashi enters, as none of them probably wants him to be there. Anyway, it gets dark around Nagi as he wonders how he's supposed to play soccer without Ryo on the same world line as him, and that he would lose sight of everything, telling Ryo not to disappear, which works perfectly as Ryo is the next one to enter. They look at each other, and Nagi says Ryo's name before thinking that who knew that waiting for someone could be so painful and warm. Nagi then tries to talk to Ryo as he says that it's been a while, but Ryo just walks right past him without saying one word. Nagi is in shock as he looks back. He then thinks that Ryo must be really angry, but Nagi still knows that he needs to apologize for saying what he said, and that there's so much he wants to talk to Ryo about. He then thinks back to when Ryo said that if Nagi was going to throw him away, then he should just do it. Nagi then looks sad as he thinks that maybe it's just himself that wants Ryo to forgive him, and that if he forces his selfishness on Ryo again, then he might just end up hurting him. Anyway, then Shido walks out of the door while looking pretty cold. Isagi looks in total disbelief as he asks where Kunigami is, but suddenly the announcer says that these are all the players who cleared the 3rd selection. Isagi then turns to Ryo and asks him where Kunigami is, but Ryo can only look at the floor. Isagi then screams that Kunigami wouldn't let it end like this, but Shido then adds in by saying that he did, and that Shido put him on the express train to hell. Nagi looks at him and wonders what his deal is. Anyway, Shido continues to walk and says that the pure hero wasn't all that, and that in the grand scheme of his life, he was just a slime that wouldn't even help him level up. Isagi tells Shido to shut his mouth and asks him what he knows about Kunigami. Shido then looks back and says that he really doesn't care before he tries to kick Isagi in his face, which, luckily, the goat of Blue Lock Chijiri was able to stop. Suddenly Ego comes on the screen and says that it's enough, and tells them that they don't have time to spend worrying about those who fell by the wayside because their soccer lives and Blue Lock itself are on the verge of disappearing forever as so much worthless trash, saying that it seems the big shots of the soccer world want to annihilate Blue Lock and fast, which means that 3 weeks from now, there will be a battle for Blue Lock's continued existence in a special match between Japan's U20 team and the Blue Lock 11. telling them that if they win this match, then Blue Lock can steal the right to represent Japan in the U20 World Cup. Both Nagi and Ryo look in awe as they hear that. Ryo even thinks that a life-changing path will take him closer to a World Cup victory. Meanwhile, Nagi thinks that's what Ryo and he have dreamed of. Anyway, back to Ego, who says that the match is in 3 weeks and that the U20 Japan team, led by Sei Itoshi, will face the Blue Lock 11, telling them all to go and that they will be the ones who transform Japanese football. Isagi looks super fired up as Ego says that. However, Raichi interrupts the cold moment and says that he understands that they won't get a guaranteed spot, but he asks who's going to be in the Blue Lock 11. Gagamaru also adds in and asks if they have to pick midfielders and defense from this group. Ego asks if they take him for an idiot as he tells them that Blue Lock is going to assemble a team focused around the following 6 players, saying that these are the top-ranked players at present, and putting together a team in just 3 weeks will require a most rational gamble. He then asks the following players to please take a step forward. He starts with Rin and then Shidu. The third player is, of course, Karasu, who says that he already knew that. Number 4 is none other than Otoya, and the number 5 player is Yukimiya, who says that it's an honor. And lastly, it's none other than Nagi, who himself is even shocked by this. Ego says that first they will divide these 6 into pairs, assign them ranks A, B, and C, and create 3 teams. Next, the remaining 29 players must decide which team they'd like to join. Then 3 people will be randomly assigned to the team they chose to form teams of 5. After that, the newly formed teams will play a 5-on-5 game against each other, explaining that this is the revised final assignment of the 3rd selection, and to consider it tryouts for the right to represent Japan in the U20 World Cup. Ryu says that it's basically one game and to show Ego what they've got. Tokimitsu says that this is really like pro-level stuff, while the rat says that it's fine by him. Ryo, on the other hand, thinks that he needs to make a case for himself to get on the lineup. Ego then asks the top 6 to head into the next room. As Nagi is starting to leave, we see that Ryo is watching him closely. We then get to the top 6 VIP room, where we see Yukimiya saying that basically they will be the linchpins of their fighting power and that they're deciding on the formation that they will use against the U20 players. Karasu laughs and says that it's not like their spots on the starting lineup are guaranteed, telling them all that if they get careless, then he and Otoya will come for the number 1 and 2 spots. Yukimiya looks at them and says that they sure get along well. Nagi says that they sure are amazing, telling them to have another fun match and calling them the extraordinary ninja duo. Karasu says that he really is annoying, and Nagi just thanks him before asking Shidu if he can ask a question. He says that it looks like he was on the same team as Ryo. This leads Nagi to ask Shidu if he is doing well and if he's gotten stronger and better. Shidu is a bit shocked before he says that he doesn't care, and for Nagi to ask himself. However, he says one thing to Nagi, which is that everything about Ryo was broken and that he's now starting to change. Nagi looks shocked as he hears that, but he then thanks Shidu for the information. We then get to the training field, where we see Ryo shooting an insane shot. He then takes a quick break and apologizes to Nagi, saying that he was actually happy to see him too. However, he still doesn't have the confidence to face him. As Ryo is in his mind, Rin asks him how long they're going to be staying here, and Yukimiya tells them all to get out of here. We then once again get back to Nagi, who says that he's sure that he was the one who broke Ryo, but that Ryo got stronger and won because he started to change. He thinks that it's just like how Isagi broke him and made him fired up, comparing it to how Isagi views Rin and how he views Sei, and that setting your sights on the one who broke you and trying to change makes people stronger. You can call it an objective, envy, hatred, or even admiration. We then get back to Ryo, who looks at the choice of the teams, and he tells Nagi to just stay as a genius and to wait. After that, we once again get back to Nagi, who realizes that it must be how Ryo views Nagi, and that to Ryo, he's someone to set his sights on, which lets him get fired up. In that case, he thinks that he will wait for that fire to come. Ryo, at the same time, thinks that when the day comes that he can hold his head high and play soccer with Nagi. After that, I'm not sure what happens as they pretty much say this at the same time, but Nagi pretty much says that he wants Ryo to break him, while Ryo thinks that he wants to be Nagi's light, and that after that, they are sure that they can find a new way to relate. We start with the text saying that a prodigy is a creature that can never come into being on its own, saying that the one who discovers them first traces their outline. We then saw that it was none other than Ego who said that, and he continues as he says that it's nothing but an outline, and that the moment they get satisfied with being discovered and stop polishing their internal egos, a prodigy loses their glow. We then see Henri behind Ego, who asks if he is talking about Nagi. Ego says that he isn't, but is more importantly talking about both Rio and Nagi. Henri then says that those two are the ones she found and invited to Blue Lock, explaining that the best egotists in the world, she believed, were those two lumps of talent that matched that ideal. She then looks serious as she asks Ego to please guide them until they become the best. Ego looks back with a funny expression as he asks her if there isn't something else that she should be worried about. Henri then starts to look annoyed, and then it starts to beep behind her. We then see that it's Bachira who is running around in Blue Lock almost naked. But come on, just look at his face here. He looks filled with pure joy. Anyway, we can see that Baru and Kiora are chasing him. Meanwhile, Bachira is holding their voting cards for the third selection teams, and Bachira mockingly asks them which teams that they are going to pick before saying that he can pick before them. We then see Baru, who calls Kiora a pipsqueak but tells him to stop Bachira, and Kiora then throws a cleaning thing, while Baru throws soap against Bachira. However, Bachira is able to easily dodge it with his nimble moves before starting to again mock them. But just then, Nico and Zantetsu come from around the next corner, and Nico tells him that he is cornered and tells him to return their cards. Meanwhile, Zantetsu tells him that he has hit a bread end, and I just love that guy, like seriously, he's so funny. Anyway, Bachira leaps forward while he basically becomes a Beyblade and spins over Zantetsu and Nico. They fall to the floor and Zantetsu tells someone to stop him. Bachira looks back with a cocky expression as he asks them if they are done and says that they should play more tag. But just then, he looks ahead and sees that he is running towards a dead end. Just then, Rio appears and asks Bachira what he is doing. Bachira asks Rio if this wall has always been here. However, Rio explains that he thinks that it closed earlier and that it's a passage that connects to the top 6's room and that it's a wall to cut them off so that they can't interact with them during the tryouts. Bachira just says gotcha, and then right after we see both Baru and Nico screaming at Rio to grab him. However, it's too late, as Bachira jumps on the wall and goes into the ventilation. Rio, just amazed, calls him Monkey Bachira. Bachira looks super happy as he tells the others to come here and to tag him. Zantetsu then decides to just transform into a dog out of nowhere, but Nico then tells Rio that if he sees Bachira next time, to please catch him. After that, they start to look for him again, and Rio is just happy that his own card is safe. He then thinks back to Ego's words as he told them to decide for themselves which team that they want to join. He looks at Nagi's team before wondering which choice is the right one and just what his own ego wants. We then get to Nagi, who's training like a wild beast. He's sprinting with Yukimiya, and he notices just how insanely fast he is. Yukimiya is then finished and says that this will do for today. He starts taking off his glasses as he says that he can't be tired for the real deal tomorrow, not to mention that he is wiped after dealing with Otoya and Karasu. Otoya asks him if he called, and Karasu says that they are also wiped after talking with Yukimiya and calls him a sensitive four eyes. Yukimiya starts to drink from his bottle and says that he's too laid back and that being with the two of them makes him feel like his senses are dulling. Karasu then tells him that if that's true, then that's all his ego is worth and not to act like he can see others' resolves. Otoya adds in by saying that laid back is a compliment to him and that easy breezy fun is his ideal. Yukimiya then tells them that's the exact reason why he is different from them, and Karasu just tells him that it's why he is such a drag. Yukimiya then gets close to Karasu and says that it's not like he is going to fight him and that he is an adult, so he'll deal with things peacefully. Karasu adds in agreement that he doesn't give a damn about someone like that, and I love how Nagi is just in the middle having to listen to all of this. Anyway, he then thinks that the top 6 really is a collection of strong egos. Otoya then pats Nagi on his shoulder and says hello and that he is taking a break. However, before leaving, he says that matches against Nagi always fire him up. As Otoya leaves, Nagi looks back at him and just calls him a weirdo. Nagi then thinks to himself that if they went to school together, then they would have been all the weirdos. However, he says that it's okay and that only the ones who can bear their egos can survive in Blue Lock, and the one standing on top is the monster Rin Itoshi. As Rin shoots away the ball, Nagi speaks up and asks him if he wants to do a one-on-one with him. However, Rin looks furious and tells him that he doesn't care about him and that he can go and worship Isagi's shit. Nagi just thinks that it's like he thought and that Nagi doesn't even show up on his radar, but he still thinks that Rin is the same as Nagi and that he is also an egotist thwarted by Isagi's light. Nagi then thinks that Isagi is even starting to change Rin, and he calls Isagi the Blue Lock Shadow King, which just goes unnecessarily hard. Nagi then starts looking insanely cold as he says that he wants to beat him and that he wants to test himself and fight against him. thinking that right now all of what he is, he wants to smash it into Isagi again. We then see Isagi in the monitoring room where he looks at both Nagi and Rin, and he looks annoyed. Suddenly Ryo speaks up from the side and says that it's the same for him. Isagi looks back and just says Ryo's name. Ryo tells Isagi that he doesn't know which team to choose either. Isagi is kind of confused by this, as he says that he was sure that Ryo would pick Nagi's team without question. Ryo then tells him that he doesn't want to hear that coming from the guy who split them up, and Isagi then just apologizes, even though it wasn't him who split them up, but rather Nagi. Ryo then tells Isagi that he planned on choosing Nagi's team and playing soccer with him, but now he isn't so sure. Isagi asks him why not, and Ryo tells him that, well, Nagi picked Isagi during the second selection, and Ryo made it this far, thinking that he would make Nagi regret not picking him. However, after seeing him rise up to the top 6, when Ryo rationally compares him to where Ryo is now, it feels like he's just going further and further away, and Ryo doesn't feel confident that he could even fight with Nagi on even footing, further telling Isagi that it also feels like if he lets this chance slip away, then he won't get another, but that it also feels like he's just moving farther away, and if he sees how worthless Ryo is, then he might dislike Ryo. It gets dark around Ryo, as he says that he doesn't know what to do. Ryo then starts to think to himself, and he wonders if he has just said too much to Isagi, and that it's not like he's going to understand his pain or anything. But Isagi tells him that it's the same for him, and that Rin is like how Nagi is for Ryo. This shocks Ryo as he wonders if Isagi is the same as him, and that he never imagined that he and Isagi could think the same way. Isagi then tells Ryo that he is right, and that if he doesn't fight with him now, then he might go somewhere totally unreachable, and he doesn't want to regret that, so he picks Team Rin. Ryo, then still in his own thoughts, thinks that he has always just thought of Isagi as an enemy to defeat, but admits that Isagi is surprisingly earnest and a good guy. Isagi then thanks Ryo and says that he has made up his mind thanks to Ryo. He smiles and says that he is going to prove that the path that he chose was the right one. Ryo is in shock by this newfound side of Isagi, as he thinks that if they had met in other circumstances, then maybe they could have understood each other better. Ryo then just tells him sure, and says that they will see each other tomorrow. Isagi waves him goodbye and tells him that they will see each other on the field, which catches Ryo's attention as he thinks that Isagi really only thinks about soccer, but in a good way. Ryo then smiles and says that he feels like he finally understands a bit of what drew Nagi to Isagi, and admits that his heart feels a bit lighter. He gets up and says that he now feels like he just wants to fight alongside Nagi. We then get back to Anri, whose eyes are legit spinning, as she wonders just what she will do, and asks where Bachira went. We then see Bachira still in the ventilation, saying that he needs to get away, but that's when he gets hit right in his stomach by Zantetsu and Baru, and just look at Bachira, he looks so funny. Anyway, he then gets right into action as he swings out and tells them to catch him if they can. Anri then says that she has finally found him and that she will start to seal him in. However, Bachira then changes course, and Anri just starts clicking buttons as she is unsure what she is doing anymore. We then see Ryo, and the door behind him opens, which lets him go to the top 6 players. We then get back to Bachira, who is running for his life, but suddenly, as he changes corners, he spots a legit naked Shidu. Bachira asks him what he is doing, but Shidu tells him that he's doing naked radio aerobics to unleash his life force. Nico then screams that Bachira stopped, and Baru then locks in as he runs, and he tackles down Bachira and finally gets back their voting cards. We then see Ryo, who is going around in the top 6's place, where he goes past the training room, the door opens, and he spots Nagi. Nagi is training by himself, and shoots ball after ball, and most of them go into the net flawlessly. Nagi thinks that he wants to boost his reflexes more and make his shots stronger, saying that he will never beat Isagi like how he is now, and that he wants a new self. Ryo then walks into the pitch and watches Nagi more closely. He looks at Nagi's eyes, which are filled with pure determination, and he says that it's a good expression. Ryo then starts to smile as he says that if he can get fired up, then that's enough for him, and that he can feel that way now, all because they got separated and he made it this far on his own, which is why he feels like he can finally say what he couldn't do back then, telling Nagi to go on and that they will meet again beyond their dreams. We then get back to Nagi, who says that this isn't enough, and that he needs to be stronger, and that he needs to be a lot fiercer to transcend those egotists. We then see that a shadow of Baru, Otoya, Karasu, and Yukimiya has appeared right in front of him. A ball then comes to him, and he traps it, and he is able to get past all of the shadows before ultimately a shadow of Isagi appears right in front of him. Nagi thinks that it's still not enough to beat Isagi, But suddenly Rio says that they have got this together and that Nagi can get even more fired up as he passes him a pass. Nagi only looks at the ball and says that it's a good pass, but wonders where it came from. Rio then thinks to himself, telling Nagi to go on and not to turn back. Nagi's eyes then start to light up, as he thinks that with this, he can visualize it. He traps the ball, and Rio is looking intensely as Nagi starts going with the ball. He firstly hits Isagi with a feint, before he then goes into a shooting position where he is able to catch Isagi off guard. Rio looks at this with a smile as he tells Nagi to go on as far as he can. Nagi then scores the goal and says that he is a god and that the world is waiting for him. Nagi then falls to the ground and Isagi's shadow starts to disappear slowly. Nagi then looks up and says that he did it and that he has created a new technique. However, he wonders just where that pass came from, and as he looks back, he sees no one. We then see that Rio had already left, while thinking that it's enough for him, and that even if he forgets about Rio, then no matter what happens, or where Nagi goes, Rio will keep on finding him. He then picks Nagi's team for the third selection and tells them to meet beyond their dreams, and calls him a prodigy with a rather smug expression. We then get into Nagi's brain as he says Rio's name. We then see the Blue Lock Stadium and a ton of players screaming while we see Nagi's jersey flying in the air. He then grabs it and puts it on as he starts to run towards the light. His monster starts to appear, and he runs out towards the stadium while looking super fired up, and his eyes are glowing with an insane fire, and this is just wild.